The woman never could have imagined that the pulp novel she had casually made up would be taken by her junior disciple Evan Ye as a genuine, peerless cultivation manual. With a single moment of enlightenment, he awakened the legendary divine demon physique. He had once been just another burned-out office drone back on Earth. After crossing over, he spent 18 years buried in books, only to discover, the day before his imperial exam, that this world had immortal cultivators. But fate seemed to be playing a cruel joke on him. He turned out to be a complete dud, born without even a trace of a spiritual root. He collapsed flat on the ground, wallowing in despair. He had thought he was the chosen protagonist of some grand story. Turns out he was nobody. Young friend, do you wish to cultivate? Evan's eyes lit up instantly, and he scrambled to find where the voice was coming from. Cut 2, inside the Azure Cloud sect. Sect Master Taihua sat with a grave expression. Sterling, your master has an important mission to entrust to you. My dear disciple, you simply must help me. What kind of big deal could possibly happen in a backwater sect like ours? Sterling shook his head with a quiet laugh. Not long ago, the higher-ups issued a new policy. Sects like ours are to be dissolved, unless we gather 8 stable disciples within a year and rank up to a tier 3 sect. So we just need one more person, right? If only it were that simple. Every sect out there is scrambling for disciples right now, and the competition has driven the costs sky high. Some have even stooped so low as to use honeypot schemes. Even so, I managed to find one. He has no spiritual root whatsoever, a complete washout, but he seems like a decent kid. Most importantly, he's willing to work for free. A naive boy like that, well, a fine disciple like that, is hard to come by these days. My only worry is that he'll leave once he figures things out. But your master has devised a brilliant plan. Have your fellow disciples each make up some impossibly profound techniques in their own fields and teach them to him. As long as we can stall for a year, the sect is saved, then we let him decide whether to stay or go. And here I thought this was going to be something earth-shattering. So it's just about putting on a show. Master, do you happen to know what nickname my fellow disciples gave me? What? Master Taihua frowned, unable to help himself from asking. Your humble disciple is known as the Bluff King of Greenreach Province. When it comes to putting on airs, no one in all of Greenreach Province dares claim the top spot. I hold it unchallenged. Master, you've come to exactly the right person. Master Taihua cringed so hard he nearly curled his toes into the floor. When did this kid become such a self-important fool, and since when was that something to be proud of? Whatever, I don't care how you do it, just keep him from leaving for 1 year. Since I'm the one handling this, 1 year is far too modest a goal. When dealing with a greenhorn, like him, I'll make sure that for the rest of his life he'd choose Azure Cloud over any immortal paradise, and wish to be reborn into this sect in his next life too. Impressive, impressive, the Bluff King truly lives up to his name? Master Taihua found himself genuinely convinced and broke into applause. If I fail, I'll dip this sword in sauce and swallow it whole. Sterling thumped his chest as he made the pledge. If there's nothing else, your disciple will take his leave. Of course. Let me send you back on my sword. No need, Master. A lot can change in a few days. Your disciple is no longer the one who needed you. Could it be? Master Taihua couldn't help but widen his eyes in disbelief, murmuring in stunned silence. Sterling raised one hand toward the sky and uttered a low command. Sword, come. Impossible. This guy couldn't even get past the basics of a single sword technique after 10 years. How could he possibly be sword riding? A long, drawn-out silence followed between the two of them. The corner of Master Taihua's mouth twitched uncontrollably. You're not still. What a character. Let's hope the new junior disciple doesn't lose his mind around you. Master Taihua pressed his fingers to his brow and sighed. Cut 2, nightfall, at the peak of the back mountain. Sterling crouched at the summit, shivering in the cold, a spot he had deliberately chosen for maximum dramatic effect. Just as he was nearly frozen stiff, the footsteps he had been straining to hear finally echoed up the path. He's coming. Get into position. This mountain is so tall, immortals really are something else. Evan finally reached the summit, completely winded. Climbing was no joke. For an ordinary person with no martial or cultivation training, the winding path up was more exhausting than a full day of manual labor. Before long, a silhouette caught his eye. A man who appeared to be in his late 20s, hands clasped behind his back. He was strikingly handsome, adorned with a jade crown and draped in an embroidered robe. Sword immortal. The words surfaced in Evan's mind unbidden. The figure standing not far away fulfilled every fantasy he had ever had about what a sword immortal should look like. Dashing and refined, with sharp brows and bright eyes, the man carried himself like a peerless immortal of the sword. Those eyes in particular held a cold indifference to everything, as though all of heaven and earth were beneath his notice. Evan stood there in a daze. Honestly, before joining this sect, he had assumed the Azure Cloud sect must be pretty terrible. Otherwise, why would they ever accept someone with no spiritual root like him? But the moment Evan laid eyes on this young man, he suddenly thought he might have been wrong. Maybe this sect only appeared to be second-rate on the surface. Maybe it was actually a hidden powerhouse, every member a heavyweight who could effortlessly carry him to greatness. Take earlier today, for instance, when he first walked into the sect with Master Taihua. The rundown state of everything hadn't quite registered. But thinking back on it now, it did seem a bit much. This was a cultivation sect after all. How could it really be that dilapidated? And yet, for all its shabbiness, every corner was spotlessly clean, suspiciously so. Everything was just a little too deliberate. If it was all a front, a conscious effort to stay under the radar, then suddenly everything made sense. The thought stirred something in Evan's chest, and the words came out of him slowly, almost on their own. Of the 3 million sword immortals in heaven, even they must bow their heads upon meeting me. The line came straight from his heart, because only those words felt worthy of the man standing before him. Of the 3 million sword immortals in heaven, even they they must bow their heads upon meeting me. Now that's a line with some flair, perfect for the image. From this day forward, that line is mine. Sterling felt a surge of inner delight. He hadn't expected to stumble onto such a gloriously pompous line for free. Excellent. This junior disciple was going to be easy to work with. You flatter me, junior brother. The fact that our master chose you proves you have some talent. I have little to offer, but allow me to grant you a stroke of fortune. Meditate on it well. As he spoke, Sterling gave a casual wave of his hand. A gentle breeze swept past, and in that instant, Evan felt a profound sense of clarity wash over him, as if his very soul had been elevated. This breeze is a rare technique of fortune. It can greatly enhance your cultivation talent. A single gust of wind, and your cultivation talent gets a massive boost. Evan's eyes lit up immediately. Thank you, senior brother. He had no idea what had just been done to him. As someone who had crossed over from another world, anything that looked like immortal magic seemed like a godly technique to him. Whether it was truly a stroke of fortune or not didn't matter. This senior brother was clearly a person of extraordinary ability. A technique of fortune? That was just a plain breeze, nothing more ordinary than that. Sterling was laughing his head off on the inside. He hadn't expected his junior brother to be this easy to fool. Junior brother, do you know what the way of the sword truly means? Sterling asked, affecting an air of profound mystery. Evan's eyes lit up at once. He had seen this scene play out before. Whenever a legendary master was about to pass on some secret art, they never just handed it over. They always started with a question, and the question was always one of those deceptively simple ones that carried layers of deeper meaning. What do you think is the ultimate pinnacle of the sword? He had guessed exactly right, just as he expected. One of those questions that sounded simple but held boundless depth within it. An ordinary person might answer something like, the sword that kills enemies, or the sword that reflects a noble character. But clearly this question was asking for something far beyond the shallow. What is the ultimate pinnacle of the sword? Evan sank into deep thought for a full hour. Sterling, standing on the boulder in his poised posture, was starting to suffer. Come on, man, I've been standing here for an entire hour. Can't you just throw out any answer? My legs are killing me, my arms are going numb. Can you please just say something? Sterling was starting to regret the whole posturing act. Since Evan wasn't answering, he didn't dare break his pose either. Sure, he was a cultivator, but even a cultivator couldn't stand at attention for an hour without consequences. In your disciple's view, the ultimate pinnacle of the sword would be a single blade of grass that cuts down the sun, moon, and stars. After saying it, Evan felt a flicker of anxiety. This was his first time cultivating, his first time with a sword, and the man before him was a peerless master. What if the answer wasn't good enough and he blew his chance? Sterling froze. His mind was in complete turmoil. He had walked the path of the sword for 20 years, picked up his first blade at age 8, and the most powerful swordsman he had ever witnessed could only split a boulder with a single strike. A blade of grass that cuts down the sun, moon, and stars. Now that was peak swagger. To slash out the very lights of heaven with a single piece of grass, he hadn't even dared imagine such an image. That line was incredible. It now belonged to Sterling. That was said without thinking. Please don't hold it against me, senior brother. Your disciple won't speak so recklessly again. Evan was a little panicked inside and quickly waved a hand to signal he hadn't meant to sound so over the top. It was a bit much, yes. Cultivation values keeping one's feet on the ground. Don't reach beyond your grasp, junior brother. Your senior brother has seen enough of your talent. I will now pass on the sword technique to you. Sterling, without another word, took his 3-foot blade in hand. A crisp ring of steel rang out as he silently drew the blade and brought it sweeping down, leaving a perfectly straight sword mark cut into the ground. Evan, I have inscribed a peerless sword intent into this earth. Do not underestimate this mark. Within it is branded your senior brother's most powerful technique. Study it carefully now. See how many sword forms you can find within this mark. For the next 7 days, aside from your daily necessities, you are to remain here and observe it. Don't just try to grasp the individual moves, more importantly, absorb the sword forms and ultimately comprehend the sword intent itself. After 7 days, your senior brother will return to test you and see whether you have any real talent with the sword. With that, he turned and walked away, light as the wind, not a trace left behind, leaving Evan standing there, his face full of awe. Sterling walked away with a grin he couldn't quite suppress. He was in a great mood. Not only had he completely bluffed his junior brother, but he had also scored 2 incredibly pompous lines completely for free. Life was good. Senior brother! A bright, clear voice rang out like a songbird's call. Sterling immediately wiped the grin off his face. Hey, senior brother! So how's the new junior disciple doing? Looks like you've got him completely wrapped around your finger. Lily, were you spying again? I was just curious. Lily hopped down from the boulder with a grin and eagerly closed the distance between them. Perfect, I can test it out on her right now. Sterling's eyes lit up. Lily, never mind that for now. Let me ask you, do you have any idea how powerful the ultimate pinnacle of the sword truly is? Sterling asked, his expression solemn. She blinked, scratched the back of her head and looked a little puzzled. What does the pinnacle of the sword have to do with me? I don't even practice swordsmanship. Then allow your senior brother to tell you. The ultimate pinnacle of the sword is a single blade of grass that cuts down the sun, moon, and stars. Sterling gave a slight shake of his head and a quiet sigh, his words carrying an air of cold, lofty detachment. Lily was taken aback. She didn't know the first thing about swordsmanship, but the words were undeniably striking, and paired with Sterling's commanding presence, they inspired an involuntary sense of awe. "Senior brother, your art of acting impressive has leveled up again. Pretty cool, right? No need to worship me, your brother is just a legend." All right, now it's your turn to answer my question, senior brother. How would I know? I haven't even grasped sword intent myself. How could I possibly teach it to someone else? Senior brother, you still haven't mastered sword intent? Lily couldn't help but exclaim. Then she burst out laughing. Senior brother, that's pretty rough. 10 years of sword training and still no sword intent? The sword isn't as simple as you make it sound. And it's not like I've been practicing some second-rate technique. What I train is one of the top 10 sword arts in all of Greenreach province. It's called the Four Thunder Sword Art, 4 sets in total, named the Spring Thunder Sword, Summer Thunder Sword, Autumn Thunder Sword, and Winter Thunder Sword. It is a technique of pure yang strength and power. Master all 4 sets and you can summon the thunder of all 4 seasons, devastatingly effective against demons and dark cultivators. The Great Four Seasons Taoist once rose to fame throughout Greenreach province through this very art and founded the Four Thunder Sword sect. Did you know that? Lily didn't know much about sword arts, but it certainly sounded impressive. So which set are you on now, senior brother? Your senior brother has brought the Spring Thunder Sword to the level of consummate mastery, Sterling said with unmistakable pride. Still on the Spring Thunder Sword? Lily gave him zero room to posture, her expression dripping with disdain. What do you mean still? Don't let the name fool you. This progress is considered outstanding anywhere in Greenreach province. It only took your senior brother 10 years to reach consummate mastery, and I'm confident that within another 10 years I'll reach the realm of grand perfection. Within a century I will absolutely reach the apex realm, and then you'll see just how powerful your senior brother truly is. Senior brother, hypothetically, if the new junior disciple were to comprehend sword intent on his own, what level of talent would that be? Sterling couldn't hold back at that. Let me put it to you plainly, Lily, in the way of the sword, the techniques are secondary. The real core is sword intent. The more sword intent you possess, the more any technique, even the simplest thrust, becomes something terrifying and extraordinary. And the 3 great thresholds of sword intent are nearly impossible to cross. Even the first infinite sword intent has only one person in all of the 10 kingdoms who has so much as half a foot past the threshold. He is known as the Void Sword Sovereign, and every one of the 10 kingdoms treats him as an honored guest. But hypothetically, if someone did comprehend it, what level would that put the junior disciple at? Absolutely impossible. Not even the greatest prodigy in all of Greenreach province could comprehend infinite sword intent, let alone our junior disciple. The following morning, the rising sun swept its warmth across every inch of the earth, bringing light to all things in the world. Evan had been staring at the sword mark on the ground for an entire night and hadn't made out a single thing from it. By the end, he was growing restless and agitated. Yet through it all, he never once doubted Sterling. Everything he had seen before proved the man was extraordinary. It must be that I'm simply not trying hard enough. But just then, a gentle breeze swept past, and without warning, Evan felt a sudden rush of clarity. A figure appeared abruptly in his mind, blade in hand, beginning to demonstrate a sequence of sword moves. Like a clap of thunder, like the deep resonance of an ancient bronze bell ringing beside his ears, the figure in his mind grew sharper and sharper. With every move the figure performed, Evan felt a jolt of profound understanding, as if the fog had been lifted from his mind. It was as if he himself were the one practicing. The moves were swift and fierce as a raging storm. The full sequence contained 12 strikes. Every 3 felt distinctly different, as if drawn from 4 separate sword arts, yet woven into a single unified whole. The 12 moves played out in his mind with breathtaking clarity, and not just once. They kept repeating, once, 5 times, 10, 50, 100 times. The sequence grew faster and faster with each pass. What had once taken 12 breaths to complete one cycle was down to 6, then 3. After a full hour, a single breath was enough to run through the entire sequence. Every repetition was the equivalent of Evan physically practicing the sword himself. The depth of understanding he was gaining went beyond anything he could have imagined, and the moves in his mind kept multiplying. 12 forms, then 15, then 20, as he felt new sword techniques branching and unfolding endlessly within him. Evan was completely staggered. Senior brother truly is a peerless master of the sword. Coming out of the trance, Evan's heart was pounding with excitement. In just 3 hours of observing the sword mark, he had absorbed an entire sword art. Evan, don't get carried away. This is only the beginning. There could be far more techniques to come, he told himself, forcing calm. Stay focused. This is just the start. This sword mark definitely still has more to teach me. Keep going. In the blink of an eye, 7 days had passed. What a fine day this is. Time to go check on the junior disciple. I wonder how he's holding up, whether he's still at it. I'll need to throw him a bone when I get there. What the hell? What happened here? Those dark circles under his eyes look like a panda's. Has this kid not slept in 7 days straight? Don't tell me he actually went all in on that sword mark. That thing was just a bluff. This makes me look like a real piece of work. The guilt is hitting harder than expected. It's all for the sake of the sect's future. I'll make it up to you later. At that moment, Evan finally noticed Sterling's arrival and quickly bowed. Senior brother, you're here. Evan, were you able to comprehend any sword techniques from the mark? I did manage to comprehend some, though your disciple's talent is dull and I failed to grasp the deeper essence. I only managed 400 sword forms. Evan gave a small nod, looking a little embarrassed. Sterling laughed. A scratch mark in the dirt, and he actually comprehended sword techniques from it? And taking advantage of the fact that I know nothing, He says he only got 400 forms. Sterling himself had spent 10 years and worked out all of 18 forms. Why is senior brother laughing like that? Did I comprehend too little? Does he think I'm hopeless? Could it be that senior brother himself has mastered thousands upon tens of thousands of forms? He carved that mark into the ground, and theoretically, anyone with even a shred of talent should be able to work it up to perfection within a day. I really am just not good enough, Evan thought, his mood sinking. There's no need to lie to me. This sword art is profound. Your senior brother won't think any less of you for not being able to grasp it. I'm not lying, it really was 400 forms. My talent may be lacking, but didn't senior brother bless me with a stroke of fortune earlier? 400 forms is still within the realm of what that could achieve, I suppose. Evan's heart sank even further. Is my talent really that poor? A mere 400 forms. Yet another person dismissing the sword. Sterling was genuinely a little irritated. He himself was no prodigy, but he had endured his share of jabs, deliberate or not, about how slowly he progressed. It stung no matter who it came from. After a moment's thought, Sterling decided words were pointless. He tossed out a longsword. Junior brother, show me the sword forms you've comprehended. Let your senior brother see whether you have any real talent for the sword. Evan drew a deep breath, clasped his hands in acknowledgement, and accepted the command. The moment he drew the blade, everything about Evan shifted. From the very first move, he was fully in the zone, his swordsmanship breathtakingly fast, fluid as running water and drifting clouds. In the blink of an eye, he was already at the 36th form. Sterling went completely rigid, 10 years of training, and he had only grasped up to the 18th form, just the bare threshold of the Spring Thunder Sword. And Evan had blown past the 36th in the blink of an eye. This was unthinkable. Evan's sword grew faster and fiercer with every passing moment, and even at the 36th form he showed no sign of stopping. When Evan reached the 108th form, a crack of thunder split the sky. Sterling was completely stunned, rooted to the spot, so shocked he forgot to breathe. That was thunder. In the 4 Thunder sword art, a clap of thunder marks the completion of each set, but to trigger it at all, you had to reach at least the realm of grand perfection. Sterling's lifelong dream had always been to bring the 4 Thunder sword art to grand perfection. This can't be real. That was his life's goal. How could someone do it in 7 days? But Evan's demonstration was not over. The moment the spring thunder faded, a new roar shook heaven and earth. A dragon's cry formed entirely of jade-green lightning, heralding the grand perfection of the summer thunder sword. Before it could dissipate, the autumn thunder dragon followed right behind, the two manifestations blazing in the sky simultaneously, summer and autumn reaching grand perfection at the same time. And Evan's blade showed not a trace of fatigue. If anything, it was still accelerating, faster and faster, until his figure began to blur. The mightiest of the 4, the Winter Thunder Sword, finally reached grand perfection as well. This sword carried a feeling entirely unlike the previous 3. Sterling felt as though the dead of winter had descended, his body frozen through, his life seemingly suspended, all things withering and falling away. At the 432nd form, Evan finally came to a stop. All 4 sets of the 4 Thunder sword art had reached grand perfection. Yet Evan did not move. The formless Tao gives birth to all formed things. The void is itself substance. To observe what lies beyond the visible, to contemplate what exists behind the self, I've been constrained by the sword itself. Evan's pupils contracted sharply as a realization hit him. Could it be that what senior brother truly meant to show me is this, that when the sword lives in the heart, everything in the world becomes a sword? The sword of a commoner strikes at the neck and severs the gut, no different from a fighting cock. But the sword of a sovereign is forged through the 5 elements, unlocked through yin and yang. Its blade is all things under heaven. The moment those words left his mouth, the formless sword intent surrounding him took shape, and he held it in his hand. Holy, Sterling's eyes went wide. He couldn't stop the outburst in his head. Don't tell me he just had another breakthrough in the middle of a sword demonstration. If the Winter Thunder Sword had felt like the absolute obliteration of death, then what filled the air now was its polar opposite, nothing but renewal and rebirth. In just an instant, it felt as though 10,000 years had passed. Sterling stared at the tangible sword before him, transfixed. In that moment, he felt as if he himself were the entire world, as if a single casual swing could cut down 1,000 armies. No way, is this actually sword intent? Sterling couldn't believe what he was witnessing, but before he could even recover from the shock, the world-shaking sword intent slowly dissolved, and the dim, heavy sky gave way once more to gentle sunlight. No, it's gone, I can't feel it at all anymore. That power just now was terrifying. It felt like the whole world was in my hands, like I could cut through anything in existence. But it only lasted a moment. My talent really is too poor, Evan murmured, his voice trembling, his heart full of regret. Talent too poor? Sterling completely lost it on the inside, a stampede of expletives thundering through his mind. In his childhood, he had once had the rare fortune of witnessing the Void Sword Sovereign perform his sword dance, and it was that very sight that had set him on the path of the sword. The Sovereign had not drawn on any spiritual power during that performance, and the aura and phenomena it had produced were identical to what Evan had just shown. This was undeniably infinite sword intent. This was beyond being the #1 prodigy of any single kingdom. Calling him the greatest talent across all 10 kingdoms would itself be an insult. With this level of sword comprehension, even without a shred of spiritual power, he could make up the difference through magical artifacts and talismans and still reach the very summit of the sword world. Senior brother, your disciple knows knows his comprehension of the sword forms is mediocre, but I will work twice as hard. Evan's voice carried a faint tremor, afraid that his senior brother was disappointed and about to send him away. Mediocre? Sterling's composure shattered again, another stampede tearing through his mind. I'm probably not worth one of his little toes in this lifetime. A once-in-a-generation talent like this absolutely cannot be allowed to walk. If a prodigy of this caliber left, it would break everyone in the sect. Sterling took a deep breath, steeled himself, and managed to say, "It's decent enough, I suppose." But the moment the words left his mouth, Sterling felt like he might genuinely cry. This is decent? If this is decent, then everyone else practicing the sword across the 10 kingdoms might as well give up entirely. What's that? Sterling, still a little dazed, noticed a small notebook sitting on the rock and couldn't help but ask. That, senior brother, is just your disciple's notes on his reflections, nothing worth mentioning. Might your senior brother have a look at these reflection notes? He took the notebook and flipped it open at random. Dense rows of small characters filled the pages before him. In the first 50 forms of the spring thunder, senior brother was conveying the principle that even white sand turns dark in black mud, that one's environment shapes one's nature. The first 100 forms together teach that all things exist in a cycle of creation and restraint. There is no high without a low. Reading through the lines, Sterling felt something he hadn't experienced since the first time he looked up at a sky full of stars. Every single character in the notebook was familiar to him, but strung together, they formed something as vast and unfathomable as the cosmos itself. He couldn't understand it, and yet it shook him to his core. Did I actually say all this? No, this is nothing but your disciple's wild and presumptuous guesswork. It surely doesn't come close to 1/10 of the depth senior brother truly intended. Then why can't I understand a single line of it? How in the world did you figure all this out? You absolute madman, did you just spontaneously comprehend the grand Tao out of thin air? What kind of creature are you? After more than a decade of Sterling's grinding, back-breaking cultivation, all he had to show for it was the bare threshold of the Spring Thunder Sword. Yet this junior disciple, in a single night, had brought the entire Four Thunder Sword art to grand perfection, and had somehow, impossibly, touched the threshold of infinite sword intent. I'm sorry for being born human. Sterling was in a state of pure shock, and what was left after the shock was pure envy. Why did he, with his dashing looks, end up with such middling sword talent? And why did this kid, with his merely pleasant features, end up with talent this terrifying? Did I just end up in the wrong world? Junior brother, keep reflecting on the sword mark. Don't overthink things. Your senior brother won't abandon you. I'll come back in a few days. Sterling turned and left the moment the words were out of his mouth. He needed to find the sect master immediately. This was far too big for him to weigh alone. Left behind, Evan stood there in anxious bewilderment. Senior brother's expression was clearly off. He wasn't going to be turned away for having too little talent, was he? No, please, it took so long to finally find a sect willing to take me in. A full 6 months, over 50 cultivation recruitment gatherings, and not a single sect had been willing to take him. Surely he couldn't just stand here alone staring at the sky and expect to comprehend the grand Tao out of nowhere. Evan felt a hollow emptiness in his chest, as though all hope had drained out of his life. No, I can't let go of this. It must be that I haven't worked hard enough. No matter what, I have to hold on to this opportunity. And besides, every single person in this sect is an extraordinary master. Meanwhile, in the sect master's quarters, Master Taihua sat in pleasant contentment, savoring his tea. The weather had been lovely lately, sipping tea, admiring the flowers. Life was good. Master, something's happened. This is bad. A frantic howl cut through the air without warning, and Master Taihua nearly jumped out of his skin. Sterling, what on earth has gotten into you? You're the senior disciple of this sect. You must carry yourself with dignity at all times. Especially now that the new junior disciple is here, your image matters more than ever. Master Taihua couldn't help but lecture. Sterling was still catching his breath. He had sprinted the entire way here without a single thought for his appearance. Master, your dream may be about to come true. Azure Cloud Sect is finally about to produce a dragon. Produce a dragon? Sterling, what exactly do you mean? Master Taihua frowned, unable to help himself. The junior disciple's talent is off the charts. Starting from scratch, in just 7 days, he's brought the entire Four Thunder Sword art to grand perfection. All trace of Sterling's cool, otherworldly composure had vanished. He was drenched in sweat. Sterling, this is not a joke to be made lightly. Liars swallow needles. Master Taihua shot back with clear irritation. This kid had picked up some bad habits, trying to trick an old man like him. The phenomena in the sky just now, that was the sign of the Four-Seasons sword reaching grand perfection. Did you not see it, Master? Sterling was pacing like a cat on hot bricks as he explained. What? I thought some powerful master must have been breaking through nearby. It never occurred to me that it could be young Evan. Master Taihua froze, his expression flooding with bewildered disbelief. A genius, we've produced a genius. Azure Cloud Sect has finally produced a dragon. Master Taihua clenched his fists with trembling excitement, his face flushed bright red. But the next second, Master Taihua choked on his own breath and collapsed heavily to the ground. Sterling rushed over to help him. Master, please calm down. Don't let the joy turn to disaster. Master Taihua grabbed the teapot and upended it over his own head. Calm down, nearly took myself out just now, he murmured, still trembling from the close call. Master, the junior disciple is clearly a genius, but wouldn't keeping him in a small sect like ours hold him back? Sterling, you're overthinking. Your junior disciple attended over 50 cultivation recruitment gatherings, and not a single sect was willing to take him. I found him in that sea of people. That was a blessing for him, and a fortune for Azure Cloud. What's the problem? Besides, we cultivators believe in fate. So many sects passed him over, we were the ones who chose him. That is fate. And do you really think that if he went to some great sect, everything would just be handed to him? Setting aside the jealousy among core disciples in large sects, the political scheming between major factions alone, assassinating talented rivals to suppress a competing sect's growth, these things happen all the time. Sterling, as long as we hold to these principles, our conscience is clear. Teach him cultivation in good faith, give him every resource the sect owes him, and Azure Cloud has nothing to be ashamed of. And one more thing, keep up the appearance of being extraordinary masters, and make sure he stays. Your master isn't greedy. Once the sect advances to Tier 3, no, Tier 2, we tell him the truth. After that, whether he stays or goes is entirely his choice. How does that sound? Master Taihua had lived 5 or 6 decades for a reason. Every word was measured and sound. Sterling felt the fog lift from his mind. I'll follow your lead entirely, Master. The following afternoon, Master Taihua sat basking contentedly in the sunlight with his tea. Master, something's wrong. Something's really wrong. Sterling came running, his face in a panic. What is it now? Didn't I tell you to watch your composure? Master, we have a serious problem. Someone just came. Before Sterling could finish, Master Taihua instinctively packed up all his belongings at lightning speed and prepared to bolt. Sterling, seeing this, quickly called out to stop him. Master, it's not debt collectors. It's something else. Something else? The moment he heard it wasn't debt collectors, Master Taihua visibly deflated with relief. Then why are you in a panic? You nearly scared the soul right out of me, Master Taihua snapped. Tell me then, what's got you this worked up? Don't tell me we're being evicted. Master, it's not debt collectors, but it's close enough. Take a look at this. It's the latest notice issued by the Sect Administration Office of Greenreach Province. Master Taihua took the paper and skimmed through it quickly, and with each line his expression darkened. To prevent fraudulent and predatory conduct among sects, a disciplinary inspection of all unranked sects within Greenreach Province will be conducted. Within 2 months, each sect must submit 10 low-grade spirit stones as proof of legitimate standing. Outrageous, extorting spirit stones without cause. This is nothing but the strong preying on the weak. I'll march to the capital and petition the throne myself. Master Taihua flipped the table in fury. This notice was salt in the wound for a sect already scraping by. In the cultivation world, 1 copper coin could buy a flatbread. 10,000 copper coins equaled 100 taels of silver, which equaled 1 tael of gold, and it took 10 taels of gold to equal a single spirit stone. For the entire Azure Cloud sect to save up 10 low-grade spirit stones, every member would have to go without food or spending a single coin for an entire year. Master, don't panic yet. How many spirit stones does the sect currently have left? Sterling's expression was steady, carrying the composure befitting a senior disciple. Well, it's Master Taihua drew a deep breath and held up 7 fingers. 70 spirit stones? That's more than enough. Losing 10 is painful, but with 60 left, it's fine. Consider it buying peace of mind. Not quite. Master Taihua shook his head with an awkward grimace. 70 taels of gold? That's a bit tight, but if we pool together. Before Sterling could finish, Master Taihua was already shaking his head again. 70 taels of silver? Sterling's eyes went wide, a look of disbelief spreading across his face. But just as he had resigned himself to 70 taels of silver, Master Taihua gave another pained shake of his head. 70 copper coins. You're joking. 70 copper coins? No matter how bad off we are, we're still a sect. Sterling had assumed 70 taels of silver was already rock bottom for Azure Cloud, but Master Taihua, as always, had a talent for exceeding expectations. The sect did have some savings, but I got to thinking, letting silver sit idle is such a waste. Last time I went down the mountain, I came across this new thing called the cultivation fund. They said if you put your money in, you get monthly returns, and quite generous ones at that. I figured someone else handles the money and we still earn from it. That's pure profit. So I put all the sect savings into the fund. But what I never saw coming was that while I had my eye on the interest, it had its eye on my principal. And within days, the whole thing vanished into thin air. Sterling, your master just got played for a complete fool. 70 copper coins? What are we supposed to do with that? We might as well just call it quits. Sterling was now absolutely certain the Azure Cloud sect was done for. No matter what, I'll exhaust every option before I give up. And if all else fails, I'll have no choice but to take a gamble, even if it means venturing into the purified soul range myself. We finally produced a genuine prodigy. I will not let this sect fall. And at that very moment, the sky turned apocalyptic. A wall of black clouds swallowed the world whole, and bolts of lightning like coiling thunder dragons came crashing down upon the distant mountain peaks. That looks like it's coming from Junior Brother's direction. What happened now? Don't tell me Junior Brother broke through again. A flicker of genuine shock crossed Sterling's face. Evan's abilities were far beyond anything a normal person could fathom. Impossible, Master Taihua said, dismissing the thought with a wave of his hand. No matter how gifted he is, there's no way he could have reached another breakthrough in such a short time. Sterling, I'm heading down the mountain for a few days to see if I can borrow some spirit stones. Now that we have a true prodigy among us, I won't disband the sect no matter the cost. I'm leaving things here in your hands. Take good care of Evan. Whatever happens, keep him grounded, teach him properly, and none of your usual nonsense. Sterling nodded to show he understood. In the blink of an eye, another 7 days had passed. Evan had now fully mastered the Four Thunder sword art, all 1,460 sword techniques completely understood. How long has it even been? And junior brother has already mastered new techniques again. At this rate, he'll reach perfection in just a few more days. Sterling felt a chill settle deep in his chest. Did he even deserve to walk the path of the sword? How could the gap between two people be this enormous? Greetings, senior brother, Evan said, quickly rising and bowing as he spotted Sterling approaching. Come on, none of that, Sterling replied hurriedly. We're brothers under the same sect, no need for such formality. He couldn't handle the bowing, it made him feel terrible. So, junior brother, how's the training going? Evan's eyes lit up as he replied respectfully, I've finished mastering all 1,460 sword techniques. It took a bit longer than expected, and the road was bumpy, but I got there in the end. Those words hit Sterling like a punch to an already bruised stomach. The jealousy was almost unbearable, but all he could do was swallow it in silence. The worst part was that Evan was clearly extraordinary, yet acted as though he were barely average. Meanwhile, Sterling was hopelessly mediocre and had to keep pretending otherwise. Even with a face as thick as a fortress wall, that was a tough act to maintain. Don't let pride get to your head, junior brother. Reaching peak mastery of the Four Thunder sword art is only the beginning. To go further, you'll need to forge your own sword force and sword intent. Techniques are complex and numerous, but sword force condenses the power of an entire sword art into a single strike. Only after manifesting one's own sword force can a cultivator truly be called a proper swordsman. Evan's heart sank. After all those days studying the sword marks, he hadn't even reached the entry level. His talent really was too lacking after all. By the way, senior brother, what realm have you reached? The thought struck Evan, and he couldn't help but ask. This senior brother is far from exceptional. In my earlier years, I only managed to step into the first tier of the legendary Supreme Sword Tao, Infinite Sword Intent. Sterling kept his expression lofty and aloof. He took a deep breath, gritted his teeth, and decided to just commit to the act. He'd been keeping it up for days now anyway, no point stopping. Infinite Sword Intent? Evan was stunned. He didn't fully grasp what it meant, but it sounded incredibly powerful. Techniques, then sword force, and finally sword intent. Even manifesting a single strand of sword intent was said to be extraordinarily difficult. Infinite Sword Intent was on an entirely different level. Senior brother truly lives up to his legend. I'm sticking with you for life. Once sword force reaches full mastery, one enters the Supreme Realm. The Supreme Realm is divided into 3 tiers, the first being Infinite Sword Intent. Those who reach this tier stand as the foremost swordsmen across all 10 kingdoms. Evan was totally awestruck. Infinite Sword Intent sounded absolutely epic. Senior brother had already reached that realm years ago. Maybe one day he could too. That would make him second across all 10 kingdoms, with senior brother being the only one above him. The more he thought about it, the more excited Evan became. Honestly, being second across all 10 kingdoms felt almost too grand. He'd be perfectly happy just being number 1 in Greenreach province. Being second wasn't bad either. If anything went wrong, the number 1 would have to deal with it first. Understood, senior brother. Don't worry, I'll do everything I can to follow in your footsteps. I swear I'll reach Infinite Sword Intent within my lifetime, Evan said, filled with excitement. Sterling, on the other hand, felt sick with envy. But then he reminded himself that he was Evan's first teacher, and that thought brought him just a little comfort. It all felt like a dream. Not long ago, I was nothing but an ordinary man. And now here I am, walking the same path as senior brother, both of us chasing immortality together. The evening glow swept across the horizon, casting the azure cloud mountain range in hues of soft crimson. Everything was still, and yet alive with a kind of quiet poetry. The sunset veils the azure cloud peaks, the mountains glow in brilliant crimson bands. I wish to master Greenreach's ancient arts, and ride the morning wind to distant lands. Evan recited the lines without thinking, the words rising naturally from within. Sterling's eyes flickered, and he found himself turning to look at Evan. Sterling was no scholar by any means, but even he could tell that poem was something special. Junior brother, Master Taihua mentioned you were a scholar before you came up the mountain. Evan replied, well, half a scholar, I'd say. I never sat for the exams, I was just genuinely interested in books and painting. Then paint something for your senior brother, Sterling said. It wasn't an idle request. He figured that if Evan really could paint, and if Evan one day rose to great fame, he'd have something to brag about. See that? The greatest swordsman in the kingdom painted a portrait just for me. Sterling didn't have many hobbies. His one true passion was showing off. Of course, though please don't judge it too harshly if it falls short. Evan nodded. Painting was something he was skilled at, though not exactly out of passion. In his past life, he had joined a painting club to impress a girl he had a crush on, and spent 3 grueling years mastering the craft. But the girl ended up running off with a rich kid, and Evan learned a hard truth that day. Being able to paint will not save you from dying alone. Sterling didn't overthink it. He simply stood still, gazing out at the sunset, striking what he hoped was a dashingly elegant pose. Sterling, utterly bored, glanced back at his junior brother, and his heart skipped a beat at the sight of Evan's focused expression. The kid actually looks pretty decent when he's serious. Almost as handsome as me, Sterling thought. The idea that he might have the edge over Evan in the looks department lifted his spirits for no particular reason. Senior brother, it's done, Evan said, allowing a small smile. He had always been fairly confident in his painting, and since joining the sect, he felt as though every part of himself had been elevated. He was genuinely pleased with how the painting turned out. Sterling heard Evan's words and shifted, turning his gaze toward the scroll Evan was holding out to him. How is this possible? Sterling's eyes went wide, and he couldn't hold back an exclamation. In the painting, the sunset blazed across the sky, and the azure cloud mountain range looked like something out of a heavenly realm. Every flower, blade of grass, and tree was rendered with breathtaking life, certain details so precise they felt more real than reality itself. The overall feeling was impossible to put into words. It was simply stunning. But what drew the eye most was the figure in the painting, a man whose face was only partially visible, rendered in profile. Yet Evan had somehow captured the man's cold, aloof, otherworldly aura, the very essence of a sword immortal. The figure looked as though he might leap right out of the canvas and drive a fist straight into the chest of whoever was looking. Not bad at all, Sterling admitted. He might not have been a man of culture, but at least he still had a conscience. The painting really was excellent. His only complaint was that Evan had only managed to capture a 10,000th of his actual handsomeness. But then again, that wasn't Evan's fault. Sterling was simply too good looking for any painting to do justice. I'm glad you like it, senior brother. I've been wanting to thank you for everything you've taught me. Consider this a small token of my gratitude. The Azure Lotus Scholar? Sterling noticed the signature on the scroll and couldn't help but smirk. This kid's got some flair too. Went and gave himself a whole pen name. Before Sterling could say anything more, his mind suddenly trembled with a transmitted voice. Sterling, I've thought of a way to save the sect. Come quickly. It was unmistakably Master Taihua's voice. That's Master's voice. How does he have a solution? We're talking about an enormous sum of money. Sterling's eyes flickered. He couldn't begin to figure out how Master Taihua had pulled this off. Sterling shook his head and let it go. No point in overthinking it. He told Evan to get some rest, reminding him that cultivation required balance, and then left to find Master Taihua. Meanwhile, at the base of Sword Revelation Cliff, a sacred site of the Four Moon Sword sect, one of Greenreach Province's 3 great sects, countless disciples sat in meditation, studying the ancient sword marks carved into the stone. In the midst of total silence, a thunderous roar suddenly split the sky, and a great thunder dragon materialized in its wake. I've finally done it. Spring Thunder Sword, peak mastery, and it wasn't even that hard. The white-robed young man laughed toward the sky. Incredible, senior brother Rex truly deserves his reputation as one of Greenreach Province's greatest sword prodigies. In just 1 year studying a single set of sword marks, he mastered the Spring Thunder Sword all the way to peak completion. When the great Four Seasons Taoist left these sword marks, he said that even the most gifted swordsman would need a full decade to master any single technique of the Four Thunder Sword art to its peak. Senior brother Rex did it in 1 year. Senior brother Rex is already counted among Greenreach Province's top 10 sword talents. All we can do is look up at someone like him. Up on Sword Revelation Cliff, 7 or 8 elders stood watching, and among them, one could barely contain the grin spreading across his face. Elder Brightblade, your eye for talent hasn't failed you. In less than a month, your disciple has already drawn out the sword intent embedded by the Sage of Four Seasons. Truly remarkable. Oh, it's nothing special. He's only reached peak completion after all. The great Four Seasons Taoist embedded his own sword intent into these marks. And even so, Rex only mastered the Spring Thunder technique. Nothing worth celebrating too loudly. Greenreach Province is full of hidden dragons and crouching tigers. Setting aside the Four Thunder Sword sect and the White Cloud Tao Order, there are tens of thousands of sects across the province. Declaring him number 1 at this point seems a bit premature, the red-haired elder said with a proud snort, clearly unimpressed by Elder Brightblade's false modesty. Elder Redstone does have a point. My unworthy disciple certainly doesn't deserve to claim the top spot in Greenreach. It's only because your distinguished disciples, who've barely scratched the surface after a full year, graciously stepped aside that Rex ended up in first place at all. But I'm sure your students will surpass him with a little effort. You old snake, what exactly are you implying? Elder Redstone's face flushed with fury. Brothers, please, let's not let rivalry get in the way. Whoever's disciple turns out to be more gifted, it's ultimately good news for the Four Moon Sword sect. That said, claiming the top spot at the Greenreach Sword Conference is perhaps a stretch. The Four Thunder Sword sect has produced a genuine prodigy this time around. But our sect master has given his orders no matter what, we must secure a top 10 finish. Why is that? Elder Brightblade and Elder Redstone asked in unison, genuinely puzzled. The Four Moon Sword sect had always performed well at the Greenreach Sword Conference, but this time the sect master seemed to be treating it with unusual weight, even going so far as to invite the great Four Seasons Taoist to inscribe sword marks. Something about it felt off. The top 10 finishers will each receive a Grand Mystic Sword Tower token. Inside the tower are the legacies and personal insights of sword immortals. Any disciple who walks the path of the sword will come away from the Grand Mystic Sword Tower with something invaluable. Entry into the tower requires a Grand Mystic Sword Tower token, and no one had expected that this time, the tokens would be handed out to the top 10 finishers of the Greenreach Sword Conference. Now that is a surprise from the heavens. Fortune is truly on our side. Rex will take first place this time without question, Elder Brightblade said, beaming with smug satisfaction. Don't speak too soon. If some nobody from a small sect ends up snatching it away, you'll never live it down. Elder Redstone thought of his own underperforming disciples and let out a resentful snort. The other elders burst out laughing. The reason a major sect is a major sect isn't just because of its lineage, it's the sheer wealth of resources behind it. Even if some small sect happened to stumble upon an exceptional talent, what could they really do? Casually study one set of sword marks and comprehend hundreds of sword techniques? If that actually happened, I'll scrub the latrines for a year, standing on my head. Inside Master Taihua's quarters at the Azure Cloud Sect, Sterling stared blankly at the pile of junk spread across the table. Master, this is your plan? How are we supposed to make money off this trash? Sterling, I came back empty-handed, couldn't borrow a single coin. But on the way, I passed a pawn shop. Our sect has accumulated all kinds of odds and ends passed down through the generations. We pawn all of it. It won't amount to much, but at least it's something. Great idea, Master. You've got this. The moment Sterling finished speaking, he bolted for the door. But Master Taihua was faster, catching him in a full embrace. Sterling, come along with your master, won't you? Just this once, my good disciple. What's that you're holding? It's a painting Evan did for me, and don't even think about it. The sect is on the verge of collapse and you're worried about art? Throw it in with the rest. Every coin counts. That thing's worthless. Don't pawn it, give it back. In the end, fighting to protect the painting, Sterling ended up following Master Taihua down the mountain. They arrived at Fortune's Gate Pawn Shop, the largest in town. The shopkeeper greeted them with a wide smile and ushered them inside. And what might you two cultivators be looking to pawn today? A final sale or a redeemable pledge? He asked pleasantly. Here's everything. Give us a fair price and we'll be back, Master Taihua said, dropping the bundle on the counter for the shopkeeper to examine. But the moment Jin opened the bag, his expression shifted entirely. Inside was nothing but worthless scrap metal. Jin rubbed his eyes and looked again carefully, afraid he'd missed something. He let out a breath. Nope, it really was just a heap of junk. His eyes hadn't deceived him. Good heavens, is that an adult magazine? Wait, could this be a limited edition photo book of the courtesan Lunafrost? Now this might actually be worth something. My apologies, that was packed by mistake. That one is absolutely not for sale, Master Taihua said, startled, snatching the booklet back and tucking it hastily into his sleeve. Everything else is fair game, just not that one. Even if the sect falls, that stays with me, Master Taihua said, looking slightly flustered. He'd been in too much of a rush when packing and hadn't realized he'd thrown in his personal treasures. Shopkeeper, how about 10 gold taels for the whole lot? 10 gold taels? Jin couldn't help but cry out. Not a chance for this pile of rubbish. Have you lost your mind? What do you mean rubbish? See this cushion? Pure golden silkworm thread. And that bottle is hundreds of years old. At the very least, it's an antique. You'd be better off taking it elsewhere. Come on, let's be friends about this. We'll bring you more business in the future. 8 gold taels? Take the whole lot. No deal. 5 taels, just 5, and you take it all. Otherwise, I'm walking out that door and going to another shop. Master Taihua argued with a flushed face, absolutely refusing to budge any lower. Sterling, feeling like he just watched a circus act, scratched his head awkwardly and sighed, which was enough to catch the shopkeeper's attention and draw his eyes to the scroll in Sterling's hands. Excuse me, sir, might I have a look at that painting? What? Oh, sure. Sterling didn't quite follow, but nodded and handed it over. To be honest with you both, the combined value of everything in that bundle doesn't even match the price of the paper this painting is done on. If you can afford Chuyang paper, why haggle over a few taels of silver? That thing is worth money. Master Taihua was genuinely caught off guard. And Sterling was just as surprised. Could this painting in his hands really be worth more than the entire Azure Cloud Sect's assets combined? Was this real? You two don't know what this is? This is Zhuyang paper, 1 tael of gold per foot. This scroll looks to be around 8 feet long, so conservatively speaking, the paper alone is worth at least 8 gold taels, Jin said, going quiet for a moment. These two clearly had no idea what they were holding. But when he saw the signature at the bottom, he froze completely. He never could have imagined this painting belonged to the legendary Azure Lotus Scholar. How was this possible? How could two completely unremarkable people like these be in possession of something by the Azure Lotus Scholar? Pardon me? Would you two mind waiting a moment? This painting is of considerable value. I need to bring in the head shopkeeper to take a look. Master Taihua and Sterling both stood there stunned. Neither had imagined that the one overlooked scroll would turn out to be the real treasure. And if even the shopkeeper couldn't assess its value at a glance, it was clearly not going to come cheap. Jin returned shortly, beaming as he spoke. This is the genuine article. If you two are truly looking to pawn it, please name your honest price. Looks like you misjudged it. This is just what Evan gave. Shut your mouth, Master Taihua snapped, landing a sharp slap that successfully cut off whatever Sterling was about to say. Master Taihua had no idea who the Azure Lotus Scholar was, and even less idea of this painting's true worth, but he had eyes. The shopkeeper's complete change in attitude said everything. This painting was worth serious money. I won't play games with you. I want this number, and if you don't meet it, we walk. Master Taihua kept his expression unreadable and raised 5 fingers. Internally, he was already celebrating. At this point, boldness was everything. 50 taels wasn't out of the question, and thank goodness he'd moved fast. Jin's brow furrowed slightly. 5,000 gold taels? That's not a high price. Not high at all. If anything, it's a little low. Master, You're pushing it. This is just a painting Evan did for me. How could it possibly be worth that much? What do you know? The shopkeeper's reaction just told us everything we need to know. This painting is clearly worth a great deal. The paper alone cost 8 gold taels, so 50 isn't even that much, and the shopkeeper will try to bargain us down anyway. Of course I had to start high. Very well, 5,000 taels it is. Jin took a long, slow breath and accepted Master Taihua's asking price. See that? The shopkeeper just tried to bargain. You've got decades left to learn, boy, Master Taihua transmitted smugly. But he hadn't even finished the thought before he went completely still. 5,000 gold taels. The Azure Cloud sect's entire annual income was 20 taels. 5,000 would take them 250 years to earn. He's joking with us, right? Probably. Sterling nodded in agreement. A simple painting like this, how could it possibly be worth that much? With respect, what makes you say that? Our shop does not joke about these things. This painting truly is worth 5,000 taels. You're serious? You're not pulling our leg? The two of them were completely floored, more shocked than they'd been when they discovered Evan was a sword prodigy. Evan being a genius swordsman was one thing, but his paintings being worth this much? Was there any limit to this? In that moment, both of them forgot how to breathe. After a long silence, Master Taihua took a deep breath and turned to Jin. I meant 50,000 gold taels, he said with complete seriousness. Sterling stood frozen beside him. Master, have some decency. 5,000 is already more than enough. Please don't be so greedy. But after that number was said aloud, Jin didn't explode in anger. Instead, he gave a helpless, resigned smile. 50,000 gold taels, I'm afraid, is not possible. No painting alone could fetch that price, unless it also carried a poem personally inscribed by the Azure Lotus scholar himself, and with no figure in it. Under those conditions, 50,000 gold taels would not be out of reach. Sterling and Master Taihua fell into complete silence, both of them questioning everything they thought they knew. Neither had imagined the painting could genuinely sell for tens of thousands of gold taels. Sure, there were conditions, but the way Jin talked about it, it didn't sound all that impossible. Easy, easy. Something's off here. Stay calm, play along, and keep drawing out information. Master Taihua arranged his expression into something that looked like he'd expected as much, the corners of his mouth curling into a slight smile. I'll be straight with you. We already had this appraised elsewhere. Your shop isn't the only one that knows the Azure Lotus Scholar's work. That was true enough. The Azure Lotus Scholar was hardly a secret in the mortal world. Any ordinary person with even a passing awareness of current affairs would know the name. The Azure Lotus Scholar was known as the kingdom's greatest literary genius, a master of poetry, music, and the arts. Countless women across the kingdom were captivated by a single verse of his poetry, and just as many scholars and literati devoted themselves to following everything he produced. Even the king himself was an admirer of his calligraphy, and rulers of neighboring kingdoms had offered him the position of prime minister. His painting style, like nothing seen before, had sparked a full-blown renaissance across the arts world. But the Azure Lotus scholar cared nothing for fame or fortune. He refused to sit the imperial examinations, and this year had vanished entirely. No one knew where he'd gone, and it was precisely this that made the literary world worship him even more. After all, what scholars hunger for most is exactly what he seemed to despise. What scholar doesn't dream of leaving their mark on literary history, earning a place among the great sages, and cultivating a spirit of righteous dignity? Yet the Azure Lotus scholar treated wealth and fame as worthless. How could he not be idolized? His decision not to sit the exams this year only elevated his standing further, and everything he had ever written or painted was now being traded for astronomical sums. Master Taihua and Sterling were speechless. Was this really their oblivious little junior brother they were talking about? Then you also must know that this painting has a significant flaw. The atmosphere it captures is beautiful. It's genuinely one of the Azure Lotus scholar's finer works. The problem lies with the figure. It does look impressive, and there's a certain sword immortal quality to it, but ultimately, the presence of a human likeness significantly lowers the painting's value. Easily tens of thousands of taels, gone just like that. Hearing this, Sterling felt the bottom fall out of his world. His heart was bleeding. Why did he ever have to show off? If he just asked Evan to paint a plain landscape, none of this would have happened. What was I even thinking? Sterling felt like crying, but Master Taihua was in an even worse state. He had recognized immediately that the figure in the painting was Sterling. He'd known from the moment the scroll arrived that it was a painting Evan had done for Sterling, and because Sterling had to be in it, they'd just lost tens of thousands of gold taels. Master Taihua had gone beyond heartbreak. He wanted to eat someone alive. Sensing the waves of fury radiating from Master Taihua, Sterling went quiet and stood off to the side in silence. He knew that if he opened his mouth right now, he'd be consumed, slowly and very painfully. Name your honest price, Master Taihua said, setting aside all other thoughts and taking a calm sip of tea. 10,000 taels, that's the highest we can offer. If it were a pure landscape with an inscribed poem alongside it, the value could multiply several times over. Deal. Hand over the money, I need it quickly, Master Taihua replied without missing a beat. Can't be too greedy. 10,000 is good enough. Shortly after, the two of them walked out with a banknote in hand. Master, that's not like you at all. Shouldn't you be dragging us to a second shop? How did you settle so fast? Holding a treasure when you lack the strength to protect it is the real crime. Weaklings like us, did you really think we could outrun the consequences if word got out? And by the way, this is your fault. Who told you to put your face in the painting? We just lost tens of thousands of taels. That's 1,000 years worth of income for the Azure Cloud sect. Just who is young Evan really? And how much is he still hiding from us? Master Taihua gazed at the banknote in his hand and sank into thought. If something were to happen, would the sect truly be able to protect him? He probably has his reasons, things he can't easily talk about. After half a month together, I genuinely don't think he's a bad person. You're right, I can sense that boy's sincerity. He's no villain. Given that, let's take this to our graves and stop prying. When he's ready, he'll tell us himself. Come on, let's go. Evan has done so much for this sect. It's time we did something for him in return. Before long, the two of them stood before a towering building that seemed to reach into the clouds. The Arcane Treasury? Sterling was genuinely surprised. The Arcane Treasury was one of the most renowned establishments in Whitefruit City, specializing in rare manuals and magical artifacts. Even third-rank sects rarely set foot inside. This money was earned through Evan's efforts. For our sect, I intend to buy him some cultivation manuals and a few things to strengthen his body. Since he's a genuine prodigy, we're going to invest everything we can in nurturing him. He is the Azure Cloud sect's hope. Our future, whether we rise to a third rank, second rank, or even a first rank sect, may very well rest on his shoulders. Sterling couldn't help but admire Master Taihua's foresight. Welcome, honored cultivators. Two elegant attendants greeted Master Taihua and Sterling with warm smiles. Not a trace of snobbery, genuinely excellent service. Is this your first visit to the Arcane Treasury? They asked pleasantly. Yes, first time, Master Taihua replied. He was a shrewd man who had seen all kinds of situations. His composure was unshakable. Sterling, though a little anxious inside, kept his outward expression perfectly calm. And are you looking for magical artifacts or cultivation manuals? The attendant continued. Manuals, Master Taihua said without hesitation. Weapons and artifacts could wait, manuals were the priority. After all, given how little Sterling actually knew, it wouldn't be long before Evan saw through the act. What type of manual are you after? Sword arts? The best you have? Master Taihua said boldly. The attendant's eyes lit up with quiet excitement. Cultivation manuals are classified into 5 tiers: unranked, third rank, second rank, first rank, and transcendent. Anything above transcendent belongs to an entirely different category, accessible only to those who have reached the nascent soul realm. The best the Arcane Treasury carried was first rank, but even a single first rank sword manual was worth at least 100,000 low-grade spirit stones. This was a major sale. The red-robed attendant's lips curled upward ever so slightly as she smiled and offered, "Our first rank manuals are priced at 200,000 taels each, but we're currently running our anniversary promotion with a 30% discount. For just 140,000 taels, you can take a first rank manual home today." How much? Say that again? Sterling couldn't hold back. They could sell the Azure Cloud sect 100 times over and still not have that kind of money. Just 140,000 taels, honored guest. Once the anniversary promotion ends, this price won't be available again, the violet-robed attendant continued, smiling enticingly. Cheap? She called that cheap? The world of the wealthy was truly beyond anything a broke nobody like him could fathom. Sterling went completely silent. He'd never seen that much money in his entire life, and to her, it was apparently pocket change. Calm down. Hold it together. Have some dignity, Master Taihua's voice whispered directly into his mind, urging Sterling not to make a scene. But Master, the money we have doesn't even cover a fraction of the price of one manual. Aren't we just here to embarrass ourselves? Master Taihua took a quiet breath and calmly asked, "Excuse me, miss, how much for the introductory volume?" A complete first-rank sword manual was out of the question, but the introductory volume would be enough. If Evan could achieve a full breakthrough of the 4 Thunder sword art from a single sword mark, his talent was unmatched. What would he need the complete version for? The introductory volume? That only contains a dozen or so techniques. It's not particularly useful in practice. You'd be better off purchasing the complete edition so you won't need to make another trip, the purple-robed woman advised sincerely. No thank you, just the introductory volume. Very well, though please note that our store does not offer refunds or exchanges. Do take a moment to reconsider. With that, the purple-robed woman excused herself from the private room and headed to the storeroom to retrieve the manual. Sterling panicked first. Master, please don't tell me you're doing this just to save face. Why spend 10,000 taels on an introductory manual that's practically useless? You fool, have you already forgotten your little brother's insane comprehension ability? The introductory volume is more than enough. Right, how did I forget that? The realization hit Sterling all at once. That freak of a junior brother had mastered the entire 4 Thunder sword art to its peak just from a single casual sword mark. With a proper introductory manual in hand, he'd probably figure it out even faster. Master's right. If it's that prodigy we're talking about, the introductory volume is absolutely enough. The purple-robed woman returned shortly. We don't carry many first-rank sword manuals. The Arcane Treasury has only 3, the Triple Sun sword art, the Riverflow sword art, and the 7-star sword art. Of the 3, the Riverflow sword art is the most powerful, its sword force mirroring the momentum of a great river. Truly formidable. If your disciple is exceptionally gifted, he may even achieve a breakthrough to the higher art, the Spirit Sea sword art. However, this is also the most expensive at 9,000 taels of gold. The other two are 5,000 taels each. Master Taihua's heart sank a little. He privately hoped to sweep up all three just to look impressive, but he hadn't expected them all to cost this much. Wait, breakthrough to the Spirit Sea Sword Art? That's correct. The River Flow Sword Art is actually a simplified version of the Transcendent rank Spirit Sea Sword Art. With exceptional talent, a disciple may reach the higher form, one of the three great sword arts of the Jin Kingdom's Spirit Sword School. Master Taihua's eyes widened in an instant. In that case, we'll take this one. Also give me 50 premium chi refining pills and 200 premium chi nourishing pills. Master Taihua didn't hesitate. Now that he had the funds, he saw no reason to settle for inferior pills for Evan. As the saying goes, all medicine has its side effects, but the higher the quality, the milder they are. Premium grade pills would have minimal side effects and could help Evan step onto the cultivation path sooner. His talent for the sword was extraordinary, but his cultivation aptitude was poor. Master Taihua understood this all too well, but just as they stepped out of the arcane treasury, Master Taihua suddenly remembered something. Sterling, don't your second and third junior brothers have their alchemist and formation master examinations at the end of the year? I believe so. And the fourth one has the talisman master examination too. That's right, I should pick up some manuals for them as well. Master Taihua said, his mind now turning to his other disciples. Should we go back in? But Master, you're out of money. Sterling was a little confused. If Master had no money left, how was he going to buy anything? We're not coming back here for their sake. No matter how much money you have, you can't spend it all like this. Master Taihua shook his head and led Sterling out toward the street. Out in the Whitefruit City Cultivators Market, stalls stretched in a long, winding row alongside the storefronts, packed with all manner of strange and curious wares. This is the great place you were talking about, Master. What could possibly be worth finding here? Half the manuals are probably fakes. Don't underestimate it. There are plenty of genuine finds here. It just takes a good eye. Your 4 Thunder Sword Art came from a stall just like this, Master Taihua said with a grin. At one stall, Master Taihua looked over the scattered manuals spread across the ground. How much for these? He asked, pointing at the disorganized pile. The manuals all looked worn and aged. 10 taels of gold per caddy, sold by weight. The middle-aged stallkeeper replied with an eager smile. 10 taels per caddy? Are you robbing me? Master Taihua's expression changed immediately. He knew this type of merchandise well, half genuine, half forgeries, and most of them mere copies. In other words, they weren't real cultivation methods at all, just theoretical writings. Sterling took one look at the titles and realized the stall was full of absolute nonsense. Perfect Awakening of the Supreme Celestial Phenomenon, 10 Dragons, 10 Elephants Spirit Soul Technique, Immortal Tao Third Eye Activation Method, and even something called My Master's Wife knocked on my door at midnight. This stuff was pure rubbish, impressive sounding titles, with nothing real behind them. If anyone could actually have a breakthrough from reading these, Sterling would eat every single one of them, cover to cover. After a spirited and rather heated round of bargaining with the stallkeeper, Master Taihua walked away perfectly satisfied, the entire bundle of manuals tucked under his arm, heading back to the sect beneath the warm glow of the setting sun. Aren't you going to buy anything for yourself, Master? You've been wearing that robe for years. Now that you have some money, couldn't you at least get a new one? Buy what? That's a waste of money. I'm an old man, I don't need anything fancy. As long as all of you in the sect are doing well, that's all the happiness I need, Master Taihua said with a warm chuckle. Master, that is genuinely disturbing. Did you forget to take your medicine today? Sterling said, his face scrunching up in exaggerated disgust. I'm not angry. I'm not angry. Master Taihua's brow twitched as he drew a long, slow breath. You little punk. You have 7 days to master the River Flow Sword Art. Fail, and you're banned from showing off for a full year. Why do I have to learn it? Wasn't that for my junior brother? I strongly object. How are you supposed to play the wise elder if you don't know it yourself? Master Taihua finally snapped, his palm flashing down like a blade. Just get a basic handle on it. It's only the introductory section. It's not that hard, even a child could do it. Once you've learned it, act the part of the wise master and teach him. For now, use the stall stuff to stall him, just bluff your way through. Sterling gave a compliant nod and took the bundle from Master Taihua's hands. By the way, Master, are the second and third junior brothers supposed to learn from these stall finds too? Of course not. Those are just for the scripture hall to look impressive and keep Evan fooled. For the other two, I'll figure something out. Don't worry, your master has it handled. What if I just go get a couple more paintings from my junior brother? That way, the second and third brothers would have their manuals covered and you wouldn't need to stress about it, Master. I've thought about it honestly, Master Taihua admitted, sighing quietly and shaking his head. But the sect has already taken advantage of him once. If we keep doing it, I'm afraid we'll lose sight of why we took him in and end up treating Evan like a cash cow. A single casual painting from him is worth centuries of the sect's income. And the sect needs money for everything. I'd better stop talking about it. The more I say, the more tempting it gets. There's also one more thing. For the next 2 months, I want you to teach him the sword in earnest. I'm planning to enter him in the Green Reach Sword Tournament. The Green Reach Sword Tournament? This time Sterling was genuinely shocked. Master, have you lost your mind? How could my junior brother enter the Green Reach Sword Tournament in the state he's in? Sure, his sword talent is remarkable, but he hasn't even started cultivating yet. He's all surface and no foundation. People die at that tournament. Sterling was genuinely alarmed. He himself had entered the Green Reach Sword Tournament once. and that was only to make up the numbers. He'd been lucky enough to get buys through most of his rounds and scraped into the top 500. Sending Evan up there was practically a death sentence. You don't understand yet, I'll explain later. For now, just focus on teaching him properly, and don't say a word about any of this to your fellow disciples. Just tell them I got the swindled money back, nothing more, understood? Sterling gave a helpless nod. He understood that Master Taihua's deepest dream was to see the sect grow and thrive, but right now, he worried that Master was pushing too hard too fast. Meanwhile, on the rear cliffs of the Azure Cloud sect, Evan was still hard at work with his sword. Every casual swing carried the unmistakable weight of a developed sword force. Sterling watched him in silence, his proud and handsome face as still as calm water. But inside, he was drowning in shame. One day, it had been a single day, and Evan had already grasped sword force. Sterling was equal parts bitter and envious, and it hurt, but he kept his composure as he walked over. "Hey, junior brother!" A short distance away, Evan snapped out of his joy and turned to look. A flicker of surprise crossed his face. "Senior brother Sterling? What brings you here?" He hadn't expected Sterling to show up. "Junior brother, has the sword training been feeling a bit dull lately?" "Not at all, senior brother. I'm making progress every day. There's nothing dull about it," Evan said, shaking his head. If he'd been stuck without any breakthroughs, he might have said otherwise. But when insights kept coming, it was actually quite exciting. He meant every word of it, but those words hit Sterling like a slap. "Look at this guy." Sterling needed a moment to collect himself. "Why do you ask, senior brother?" Evan was curious. "No particular reason. I just figured if you were getting bored, I could give you another manual to work through." Sterling said it flatly. He was in no mood for small talk. That comment had done real damage. "A manual?" The word set Evan's whole body buzzing with excitement. "A legendary secret art for him? You should have led with that, senior brother. I'm incredibly bored. Absolutely bored out of my mind." Evan threw his dignity out the window entirely. If a single sword mark from senior brother had unlocked an entire sword art for him, what would a full cultivation manual do? He'd probably transcend on the spot. Sterling skipped the theatrics and handed the manual over directly. The moment Evan took it, he froze. It was a thick volume. Inscribed on the cover in ancient script were the words, "Ancient God Demon Art." Just the name alone screamed legendary. What else could dare call itself primordial? What else could invoke God Demon? Evan's breathing quickened. This was truly a hidden sect. If this wasn't a hidden sect, then what was? "Junior brother, I found this at an ancient ruin. I don't know much about its origins, but as cultivators, we can't limit ourselves to the sword alone. Both physical cultivation and spiritual cultivation are essential. You've already missed the ideal window for spiritual cultivation, and your spiritual roots are exceptionally poor. Focusing on physical cultivation first might actually be a blessing." Sterling was completely making this up as he went. Most physical cultivators chose that path precisely because their spiritual roots were too weak. After the foundation building realm, a physical cultivator's edge only diminished. A golden core expert could kill an enemy from 1,000 miles away without being seen. Could a physical powerhouse really throw a punch and shake someone to death across the same distance? "I understand, senior brother. Thank you for gifting me this art." "Good. Just read through it. If it doesn't click, don't force it. And if you do start training, make sure you finish developing your complete sword force from the 4 Thunder Sword art first." Sterling gave a few more reminders, then turned to leave. "Take care, senior brother." Evan watched respectfully until Sterling was out of sight. Evan suppressed his excitement and tucked the ancient God Demon art inside his robe, then turned back to studying the sword marks. But his mind was completely preoccupied with the manual. The 4 Thunder Sword art was fine, but it didn't hold a candle to this. The ancient God Demon art was on a whole other level. God Demon body forging. Even the name sounded impossibly cool. The 4 Thunder Sword art, channeling lightning strikes. Anyone could do that. Still, Evan knew an art like this wouldn't come easy. He'd have to give it everything he had, no distractions, no divided focus. Otherwise, he'd end up with neither the physical art nor the sword technique mastered, and have nothing to show for it. 2 days passed in the blink of an eye. Sterling stared at the sword manual in his hands, utterly silent. The manual was embedded with a Tao imprint. The first person to open it would receive an instant surge of enlightenment, rapidly grasping all the techniques within. Yet Sterling had been staring at it for 2 full days, and still hadn't grasped the essence of a single move. The silence weighed on him. His talent was average, sure, but the manual had a Tao imprint built in. The enlightenment boost should have carried him through. So why wasn't it working? They said it was so simple anyone could do it. He'd tried everything, even stuff that made no sense. Still nothing. On the rear cliffs of the Azure Cloud sect, Evan was still diligently training. Every swing seemed to release dozens of strikes in a single instant, yet also felt like just one clean cut. The sharp ring of his blade cracked through the air again and again. After half a day of effort, Evan had fully mastered all 4 forms of the 4 Thunder Sword Force. The 4 forces could merge into one, or be separated at will. When unified, they formed the complete 4 Thunder Sword Force at its maximum power, exactly what Evan had been demonstrating. When split apart, each individual force was weaker, but each carried its own distinct character and style. I've fully mastered the 4 Thunder Sword form. What remains now is the sword intent. Senior brother never mentioned how difficult it would be to achieve a breakthrough into it. But I know that sword intent represents the very soul of a blade art. Rushing it would be a mistake. Failing to grasp it is one thing, but grasping it wrong would be far worse, Evan thought inwardly. Sterling hadn't given him a detailed explanation of sword intent, but Evan was perfectly capable of filling in the blanks himself. And the timing of the manual, not earlier, not later, but at exactly this point, was clearly deliberate. Senior brother must have been worried he'd rush ahead recklessly. To prevent him from developing the wrong sword intent, Senior brother had handed him the ancient god-demon art to ground his mind, focus him on the body, and build a second foundation, a backup in reserve. Senior brother truly thought ahead. Evan carefully drew the manual from inside his robe. I am the celestial ink sovereign, born before heaven and earth came into being. I have endured 360 million tribulations, and in the end, my cultivation reached the very fabric of creation, one with heaven and earth. This art was born from a chance moment of communion with the cosmos. All things under heaven know only spiritual cultivation, ignorant of what physical cultivation can truly become. They consider moving mountains to be its ultimate limit. But true physical cultivation means holding the sun and moon in your hands, crossing all heavens with your bare body, and with a single fist, annihilating everything that exists. The pinnacle of physical cultivation, as I see it, must follow the way of the god-demon, the god hidden within a demon's frame. To possess the organs and lifeblood of a god within the body of a true demon, that is the god-demon body. Cultivating this art demands suffering beyond imagination. It is not for the ordinary. Only those of supreme will, supreme perseverance, and supreme wisdom can ever hope to master it. After reading the foreword, Evan forgot to breathe. The words were overwhelming in every sense. The god hidden in a demon's frame, holding the sun and moon, shattering space with your bare body, one fist, all things annihilated. Yes, this is absolutely a legendary art. No, not just legendary. This was a great Tao-level art. There was no cultivation without suffering. Suffering was the whole point. And his reputation as a relentless grinder back before he crossed over wasn't just for show. He turned to the second page to find a diagram of a figure striking a strange pose. It looked simple at first glance, but Evan's expression became immediately serious. Senior brother had explained this. The diagram was called the heaven-gazing god-demon diagram. Arms stretched wide, becoming one with heaven and earth. This was the foundational method of the ancient god-demon art. Once mastered, it would allow the practitioner to draw on the power of the heavens and earth, using the sky as a hammer and the ground as a forge, to temper the flesh and sculpt a god-demon's body. If you cannot comprehend this diagram, this art is not meant for you. The gifted will grasp it at a single glance. Those with lesser talent may never grasp it at all. But that pose, it was absolutely mortifying. Who in their right mind would be caught standing like that? As the morning sun rose, Evan cast aside all shame and struck the pose from the diagram. Being weak is the only real humiliation. His talent wasn't great. If he didn't seize every opportunity to grow stronger, in 100 years people would mock him over his grave. No, he might not even get the honor of being mocked. They'd just forget he existed. Stop overthinking. Stay focused. I will master this. Meanwhile, inside the Inkwen studio in the Jin Kingdom, a young woman in purple robes was frantically writing, her brush flying across the paper. Ink Fairy, are you almost done? It's nearly 3 in the morning. If we miss the deadline, we're in real trouble. An anxious voice called out. Stop rushing me. I know, I'm working on it. She snapped back irritably, never lifting her brush. The middle-aged man hovered in the doorway, rambling on. That ancient god-demon art of yours, it's been a complete flop. Fewer than 3 copies sold in total. Ink Fairy, please don't write anything like that again. It's too over the top. Nobody believes it. Cultivators these days want something straightforward. You want to see what's selling? Look at the current bestseller. How to get 10 times the value out of a single spirit stone, flying off the shelves. Hearing that her personal favorite piece had essentially sold 0 copies deflated her completely. A work she'd poured her heart into, outdone by something dashed off without a second thought. I'm sick of hearing about. You want to keep talking? Pick up the brush and write it yourself. She lashed out at the still babbling man. What about that thing I asked you to look into? Found out that the 10 Kingdoms Academy is officially opening enrollment next year. The man replied with a chuckle and then left. Finally, I get to go to school. Her eyes lit up instantly, a wave of pure joy flooding through her. The greatest academy in the land, it had to be full of fascinating people. 3 more days passed in the blink of an eye. Evan coughed up a mouthful of blood, and still, nothing. Over those 3 days, he had coughed up blood 3 times. 3 days of holding the heaven-gazing pose, and not a single breakthrough into the ancient god-demon body. It stung. The manual was clear enough. The gifted will comprehend the heaven-gazing god-demon diagram in a single glance. Those without the aptitude may never comprehend it in their lifetime. But Evan refused to give up. Out of every 12 hours in a day, he spent nearly 11 of them training. The remaining hour was barely a rest at all. The ancient god-demon art demands extraordinary perseverance to comprehend. My aptitude may fall short, but I have a will that most people don't. I will succeed. Evan, believe in yourself. Beneath the blazing sun, Evan stood with both arms outstretched, reaching toward heaven and earth. Carrying that resolve, he pressed on until deep into the night. The azure cloud sect lay quiet and still around him. The gazing in the heaven-gazing diagram, it doesn't mean actually looking out at the sky. It means using the heart as the eye, to look inward at the infinite universe within. Ordinary people look up at the sky and see only its vastness, not realizing that heaven is the cosmos itself, boundless and without end. Even my own gaze has been constrained by that. The celestial ink sovereign existed before heaven and earth were born. The heaven in his eyes was the infinite cosmos, without borders or limits. The great world, it isn't the sky you see, it's the sky you feel. No, this is all still surface level. The great Tao in its simplest form is never actually simple. What is the true essence here? He recalled something he'd once read, the concept of the 3 eyes and 6 insights. The celestial eye is a form of perception beyond the senses, seeing through the surface of things to what ordinary eyes cannot. The Dharma eye seems to be a higher level still, perceiving the true nature and patterns behind all things. I can't keep limiting myself to the most literal interpretation. I have to think deeper. The true nature and patterns of things at a higher level. The true nature and patterns of things at a higher level. As the morning sun began to rise, a gentle breeze passed over his face, soft as a mother's hand, carrying with it the warmth of early light, easing the tension from Evan's furrowed brow. I think I understand now. Evan's eyes went wide, his voice barely a murmur. The reason I haven't had a breakthrough is because I've been going about it the wrong way. The god and the demon see the same world, but they see it differently because their hearts are different. The real meaning of this art is that every person already carries their own god-demon within. You simply have to look inward and find it. Evan, you idiot. You almost missed it entirely. He quietly chided himself for his own slowness, for failing to understand the true meaning behind the two characters, gaze and heaven. Evan drew a slow, deep breath and struck the heaven-gazing god-demon pose once more. But this time, he didn't look up at the sky. He closed his eyes, let his heart become his sight, and gazed inward at the heaven and earth within himself. In an instant, a breeze swept past. The cosmos bloomed open in Evan's mind, countless galaxies rising into view, boundless and immeasurable, undying and eternal. Then, a god-demon as vast as the sun itself emerged from the expanse. Is this my god-demon? At that very moment, the stars above began to tremble. The heavens shook. Every star blazed with searing brilliance, and a dazzling meteor tore across the silence of the night sky. In the mountains behind the Ten Kingdoms Academy, several of the world's most powerful cultivators simultaneously looked up in disbelief. As the stars blazed, a red-haired man stared wide-eyed, unable to hold back a wild, ecstatic grin. A divine core has descended into the world. Heaven hasn't abandoned the righteous path. Junior brother, stop that laughing. How many times do I have to tell you, watch your image? The way you look right now, you could pass for a demon cultist, said a white-robed man, his brow faintly creased in reproach. Why get so worked up? Celestial omens are never perfectly reliable. More importantly, if our order depended on signs in the sky to survive, we'd have ceased to exist long ago. But the red-haired man reined in his excitement, unconvinced by his senior brother's words, and pushed back. I know what you're going to say, but there's no need to rush. Let's watch and wait. True gold doesn't stay hidden. In the imperial palace of the great Shia dynasty, the sovereign sat upon his throne with eyes closed. He had noticed the celestial phenomenon as well. Your Majesty, if a divine core has truly appeared in the world, what if it's not within Shia's borders? What then? A green-robed woman plucked a spirit fruit and brought it to her lips. Then we take it. The sovereign's eye snapped open. A flash of icy light crossed his crimson gold irises. All under heaven will belong to Shia. A divine core is hardly worth the exception. Meanwhile, out on the beast wastelands, the meteor cut through the eternal silence of that frozen night sky. Below, across the icy plains, a shirtless white-haired man dragged the enormous carcass of a beast, a creature as massive as a mountain range, behind him as he walked. Something made him look up. A divine core has emerged. Looks like the demon clan will need to step up its game, the white-haired man said with a fierce laugh. The words barely left his mouth before he yanked out his great sword and charged at a massive beast lurking in the distance. The scene shifted to Sterling's quarters. Sterling had studied himself sick and still hadn't learned it. It was painful. Without a point of comparison, he'd never have thought of himself as talentless. But now that Evan existed, the gap was impossible to ignore. Still, his frustration at the moment wasn't really about talent. He'd never expected much of himself in that regard. What was killing him was this manual. If Master Taihua found out he hadn't even managed to grasp the manual's basics, he'd probably come after him with a blade. 9,000 taels of gold? That was the entire Azure Cloud sect's worth of income across several thousand years, and he had nothing to show for it. Honestly, if he were in Master Taihua's shoes, he wouldn't let himself off the hook either. Sterling sat alone, gazing quietly up at the sky, completely unaware of the celestial phenomenon that had every powerful cultivator in the world staring upward. If he had to say anything, the stars just seemed a little brighter than usual tonight. His mood had sunk into a strangely deep melancholy, for no reason he could name. He didn't know what had been going on with him lately. Every night around midnight, he'd be hit with this crushing sense of gloom, and it seemed to be getting worse. Scattered moonlight slips through the clouds, sneaking past the crowd and sinking to the ocean floor. I'm sorry for being born. For no reason he could explain, that line surfaced in his mind. Not far away, Drew and Lily were watching Sterling from a distance. Second brother, what do you think's going on with senior brother lately? Every night he comes out here alone to stare at the stars. Do you think something's weighing on him? Lily asked. Not sure, Drew said, shaking his head. Not really sure. Could it be that our junior brother's aptitude is just so poor that teaching him has become frustrating? Possibly. The sword isn't for everyone after all. Well, I'll take over teaching the junior brother in a few days. If this keeps up, who knows what kind of state senior brother might end up in. And it'll give senior brother a chance to see what proper teaching actually looks like. At this very moment, the image of the cosmos spread across Evan's inner vision. Boundless, immeasurable. This was the heaven and earth within his heart. Space in all 6 directions is the universe. All of time, past and present, is the cosmos. The cosmos was infinitely vast and infinitely small at once. In Evan's inner cosmos, a heaven-gazing god-demon appeared, and the presence it radiated was terror-given form. Even the faintest trace of that aura made the entire cosmos tremble. It stood at the center of all things, the great Tao held in its hands, the 5 elements in yin-yang beneath its feet, its gaze seeing through everything. Is this the physical art that belongs only to me? Evan slowly opened his eyes, his voice quiet and distant. Evan was shaken to his core. He kept his inner gaze fixed on the god demon. In an instant, countless profound insights flooded into his mind. The supreme method for initiating the god demon body forging. Heaven as the hammer, earth as the forge. Receive all things. Be reborn entirely. An ancient voice resonated through Evan's mind. And in that moment, the complete method of the god demon body forging broke through, fully realized, fully his. An hour later, Evan opened his eyes. He now understood the cultivation method of the ancient god demon art. Gaze inward at your god demon, draw upon heaven and earth to form the god hammer and forge, and use them to temper yourself. The ancient god demon art was divided into 5 realms: minor god demon, major god demon, supreme god demon, Tao god demon, and progenitor god demon. The method currently in Evan's mind was the minor god demon chapter. By tempering the body 81 times with the heaven hammer and earth forge, one could complete the stage, condensing the minor god demon body. At that point, the physical body would carry strength like a true dragon, vitality blazing like the sun, and spirit fully saturated. The ancient god demon art had 2 essential components. The first was the inner vision of the god demon. Without the god demon image established in the mind, no amount of effort would ever produce a true god demon body. The second was the heaven hammer and earth forge, a cultivation method that used breath to guide the spirit to guide the body. The sky as a hammer, the earth as a forge, placing the body inside that forge and hammering it endlessly. Once the god demon image was established in the heart, this method had to be used to channel spiritual energy and commune with heaven and earth, borrowing the power of the ground as the supreme forge, then drawing upon the force of the heavens as the divine hammer, striking the body again and again, forging the god demon body through sheer relentless effort. The process was extraordinarily dangerous, yet the method itself was simple. As long as one had sufficient spiritual energy, a single tempering session could be initiated. But without a will of absolute iron, the process could cause the soul to shatter and the body to collapse, leaving nothing behind. I thought the breakthrough would be the hard part. I didn't expect the actual cultivation to be even harder. But then again, it made perfect sense. The more powerful the art, the greater the difficulty. If anyone could practice it without effort, everyone in the world would be a cultivator. Evan couldn't help but marvel at this after his breakthrough. Gathering the heaven hammer and earth forge required a large amount of spiritual energy, but the problem was that he didn't have any. He hadn't cultivated at all, which meant he had no spiritual energy to draw on. And the further one progressed in the ancient god demon art, the more spiritual energy was required. On top of that, his greatest obstacle remained his poor cultivation aptitude. This is a real problem. What do I do? Evan's head was starting to hurt. Should I go to senior brother Sterling? The thought crossed his mind, but he quickly dismissed it. No, my cultivation aptitude is already poor. If I go to him now and it turns out I'm just too limited to make progress, he might end up resenting me for it. But without going to senior brother, I can't cultivate. And if I can't cultivate, I can't train the ancient god demon art. Evan frowned, deep in thought. Wait, senior brother gave me some chi refining pills before? Maybe those could work? All medicine has its side effects. These are chi refining pills, and I haven't stepped into the chi refinement realm yet. There's no telling what might happen. I can't just take them recklessly. He remembered that Master Taihua had mentioned the second senior brother was deep into the study of alchemy. Maybe he could learn something from him. Meanwhile, on the other side of the sect, in Drew's quarters, Drew held a single pill between his fingers. A mass of crimson gold flame erupted from his hand, sweeping outward with ferocious force. The rolling heat was so intense it warped the very air around him. Another one complete. Stay composed. Don't let success lift you. Don't let failure drag you down. Tomorrow I'll show senior brother what it truly means to be a teacher. The scene shifted to Sterling's quarters. Since handing the ancient god demon art over to Evan, Sterling had spent the past 3 days grinding through the river flow sword art. Unfortunately, effort alone wasn't enough. 3 days and 3 nights without sleep, and he still couldn't make sense of it. It was deeply demoralizing. The 4 thunder sword art alone had taken him decades to grasp, and now here was the river flow sword art on top of it. Sure, it was a step below the 4 thunder in ranking, but that was beside the point. He simply had no talent. The thought made Sterling's frustration bubble up. Why did he have to be the one teaching sword arts? Couldn't Evan be learning literally anything else? Forget it, I give up. The words barely left his mouth before Sterling dropped flat on his back to the floor. I'm done thinking. As long as I stop trying, failure can never catch up with me. Whether you understand it or you don't, in the end, everyone ends up as dust. None of it means anything. Effort, success, it's all meaningless. Sterling lay there on the floor, his heart cold and hollow, wanting nothing more than to lie still and let existence take its course. I'm just a talentless waste. What stings the most isn't that I have no talent, or that my junior brother has too much, it's that I can't even say a word about it. Master Taihua was counting on him to teach Evan the river flow sword art. If Master ever found out he hadn't learned it himself, he'd be lucky to escape with his life. Just then, the faint sound of footsteps grew closer. Then came Master Taihua's familiar voice. Sterling, how is the practice going? Have you gotten a handle on that river flow sword art, the one that cost us 9,000 taels? Master, does it really matter whether I understand it or not? You have to let go of attachment to find true peace. Sterling rolled over with a serene smile on his face, and the moment the words left his mouth, a blinding golden radiance burst from his entire body, as though he were on the verge of ascending to Buddhahood on the spot. What the hell? What on earth have you cultivated? Are you about to ascend right here? Master Taihua shielded his eyes, nearly blinded by the radiance. I haven't cultivated anything, Master. I simply no longer care about anything. Sterling had transcended. He was beyond desire, beyond want. Master Taihua went quiet for a moment, then let out a laugh despite himself, shaking his head. I had a feeling it would come to this. Come on, we're heading to the Purified Soul Range. Real life and death training might be what finally gets you to break through, and it'll do you good regardless. Don't worry, I'll be going with you. Sterling's heart lurched. His eyes went wide and he swallowed hard. You can't be serious, Master. That's the Purified Soul Range. The Purified Soul Range was the most dangerous region in all of Greenreach Province. Rich with spiritual energy, it was home to countless powerful monster beasts. Even the most talented disciples from Greenreach's strongest sects lost their lives there on a regular basis. Master Taihua ignored Sterling's alarm and continued calmly, While you train, I can hunt some lower-tier beasts on the side. Earn some money for the other disciples' cultivation manuals. I'm absolutely not going to the Purified Soul Range. My life comes first. Without a moment's hesitation, Sterling spun around and bolted. Training might hurt the spirit, but dying would end everything. Stop running, you little punk. Weren't you just saying you didn't care about anything anymore? Master Taihua couldn't hold back as he cursed and charged after Sterling at full speed. The skies over Greenreach Province were clear as far as the eye could see. 3 major sects ruled the province. The Four Thunder Sword sect, founded by the Great Four Seasons Taoist, stood at the top, followed by the White Cloud Tao Order and the Four Moon Sword sect. And at that very moment, inside the Four Thunder Sword sect, a sword trial had just concluded. The top 10 participants stood before the crowd, 7 men and 3 women. Good, very good. The sect's trial had seen 7 disciples bring the Spring Thunder sword art to a state of full mastery, and 2 had pushed it all the way to its absolute peak. However, the upcoming Greenreach Sword Tournament is no ordinary event. 2 months remain. None of you can afford to let your guard down. To help you compete for the top 10, the sect master himself will personally oversee your training. Is that understood? The moment those words rang out, thousands of disciples erupted in an uproar. The Great Four Seasons Taoist was not only the creator of the Four Thunder sword art, but also the undisputed greatest swordmaster in Greenreach Province. His name had been legend for centuries. In recent years, though he still held the title of sect master, he had been a complete recluse, appearing only in legend, never in person. No one expected him to show up now to instruct the inner disciples. You don't need to know the reason. All you need to know is to do everything in your power to claim a top 10 finish. We have confirmed intelligence that several hidden recluse sects within Greenreach Province are also sending disciples to the tournament. Do you understand what that means? As the elder's voice rang out, the uproar this time was even louder than before. The words hidden recluse sects weighed on these disciples like a mountain. Most of them had never even left Greenreach Province, but they all knew what those words meant. Above Greenreach Province sat Jin Kingdom, and above Jin Kingdom sat the 10 Kingdoms. Legend had it that a great upheaval had once shaken the 10 Kingdoms, and several mighty sects had fallen. Yet though they fell, the most core remnants of their power had gone into hiding in remote corners of the world. As the years passed and the world forgot these sects ever existed, they became what were known as recluse sects. Of course, there was an even more extreme kind, lineages passed down through a single line, carrying transcendent inheritances. To even compare the Four Thunder Sword sect to a true recluse sect would be considered the greatest insult to such a lineage. Scene shift, the Grand Hall of the Four Thunder Sword sect. We greet the sect master. Dozens of elders bowed in unison, and a solemn tension hung throughout the hall. Rise, said the old man with a wave of his hand. I have called you all here today because of a matter of great importance. May we ask what has happened, master? Does it concern the Grand Mystic Sword Tower token? The Great Four Seasons Taoist shook his head. If it were merely the Grand Mystic Sword Tower token, that would hardly be cause for alarm, the Great Four Seasons Taoist said gravely. Do you know of the 10 Kingdoms Academy? The 10 Kingdoms Academy? Is the 10 Kingdoms Academy reopening? All at once, the elder's eyes went wide with understanding. The 10 Kingdoms Academy was among the most renowned institutions across all 10 kingdoms. It accepted only the finest talents in the land, and by finest, that meant a standard no mere top in Greenreach Province could ever hope to meet. It was said that any single disciple of the 10 Kingdoms Academy would be considered a top genius within their own kingdom. The Great Four Seasons Taoist looked around the room calmly. That's right. And I already know who the special envoy is. At that, the hall erupted in gasps. Who? Jin Kingdom had always dispatched skilled agents throughout its territory to scout and recruit exceptional talents for the academy. But these agents were proud and solitary by nature, cared nothing for fame or wealth, and were masters of disguise. How on earth did you identify the inspector, master? The elders were genuinely stunned. On this continent of cultivation and martial arts, the imperial court held a higher standing than most cultivation sects. Even the top sect of Jin Kingdom could expect some courtesy from the royal court. The top sect in Greenreach province carried some weight, but not nearly enough to stand above the court. And yet, the Great Four Seasons Taoist had somehow uncovered the inspector's identity. How could that not set the elders' hearts racing? The Great Four Seasons Taoist said nothing. He calmly produced a scroll and unrolled it, revealing a painting of mountain peaks bathed in the colors of dusk. The scenery was breathtaking, but the figure depicted in the painting was even more striking, like an immortal cast down from the heavens. The longer one looked, the more unsettling it became. His face was only partially shown in profile, yet the posture and presence of a supreme sword immortal came through with absolute clarity. Master, what is the meaning of this? What does this painting tell us? The elders buzzed with curiosity. The one who painted this is the Azure Lotus Scholar. He vanished without a trace 6 months ago. Think carefully, where do you suppose he went? The Great Four Seasons Taoist laid it out piece by piece. Could he have joined some minor sect to cultivate? Impossible. With his reputation, even if he wanted to join the Four Thundersword sect, the sect master himself would have made an exception to accept him. A talent like that would never waste himself on a minor sect. The Great Four Seasons Taoist nodded. The Azure Lotus Scholar is a man of extraordinary talent. He was indeed summoned and secured by the king himself. Now, within Jin Kingdom, there is an exceptional swordsman, once a prodigy of the Ten Kingdoms Academy, but expelled under circumstances that remain unknown. He now serves as the commander of Jin Kingdom's Inspector Corps. This man is deeply trusted by the king. After the Azure Lotus Scholar was brought into service, he evidently met this commander at some point. The scholar was clearly so struck by the man's presence that he painted his portrait, or perhaps the king himself commissioned it. Either way, the Great Four Seasons Taoist laid out each point with precision. Master, all of this is still speculation. Surely we can't take it as fact? A skeptical voice cut in. A white-haired elder could no longer hold his tongue, a nagging sense that something didn't quite add up. The Great Four Seasons Taoist let out a cold laugh, then struck the painting with his palm. In the next instant, a terrifying sword intent erupted, surging through the entire hall. But it was not the Four Thunder Sword intent, it was the sword intent within the painting itself. The pressure it exuded was something no one present could find words to describe. A moment later, the Great Four Seasons Taoist withdrew his power, and the sword intent vanished without a trace. Still think I'm wrong? He asked calmly. The hall fell dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop. No one dared question him again. For sword intent to be sealed within a painting, one of two things had to be true. The first was that the painter himself had reached the highest realm of sword intent, but the Azure Lotus Scholar was not a cultivator, so that was clearly out of the question. The second was that the subject of the painting himself possessed such transcendent sword intent that it bled through the canvas. The elders were completely won over. Flattery and genuine admiration poured out in equal measure. Master, your eye for detail is beyond compare. Only you could have pieced together so much from so few clues. Truly, you are one of a kind. The Great Four Seasons Taoist showed not a trace of pride. If anything, he appeared even more composed. There's another important reason. This man has a free and wandering spirit. He loves traveling through mountains and rivers and savoring the full breadth of human life. He has been known to trade away priceless treasures in exchange for a bit of pocket money to spend as he pleases. I came across this scroll by chance in Whitefruit City. According to the shopkeeper, the man who sold it bore a striking resemblance to the figure in the painting. That is precisely why I am certain the commander of the Inspector Corps is somewhere in Greenreach Province right now. And as it happens, that is entirely his style. Everyone was stunned. It was true. Some masters genuinely cared nothing for fame or wealth. There were even tales of great cultivators trading away priceless flying swords for a single piece of fruit just to satisfy a craving. Master, what should we do now? The moment those words were spoken, the other elders all nodded. None of them knew what the right move was either. We must not try to curry favor. In fact, we should keep this information sealed. Under no circumstances should anyone approach this man with ulterior motives. A master of his caliber despises fame and wealth, and above all, he detests people who approach him with an agenda. We act naturally. We do not offend him. However, should any of you encounter him, you may approach with genuine questions about the sword path. Showing humility and eagerness to learn, that is how you leave a good impression. The elders all looked at the Great Four Seasons Taoist with deep admiration. He nodded, satisfied. In his heart, he couldn't help but marvel at his own brilliance. Look at these people and their slow, vacant expressions. Without him, this whole sect would fall apart. Scene shift. The back cliff of Azure Cloud sect. Little junior brother Evan Ye was still in deep study of the sword marks carved into the stone. As for the ancient god-demon art, Evan had set it aside for now. He simply had no spiritual energy to work with. He had been quietly wondering for some time whether he could actually take a QI condensing pill. He'd thought about asking his senior brother, but couldn't quite bring himself to do it. Just as Evan was lost in thought, a voice broke the silence. Junior brother. He looked up to find a composed and steady young man approaching. Before Evan could even ask, the young man introduced himself. I'm your second senior brother, Drew Shu. Just call me Drew. Evan's heart leapt with joy. He'd barely been thinking about this, and here was the very person he needed, his second senior brother, who knew the art of alchemy. "Greetings, senior brother Drew." Evan quickly rose and bowed. Drew wasn't as strikingly handsome as Sterling Sue, but he carried a refined, scholarly air about him, dressed in a pale blue robe, gentle and graceful in every way. "No need for formalities, junior brother." Drew had an exceptionally warm nature with the calm, measured bearing of a scholar. "Your first senior brother has some matters to attend to lately, so he's asked me to teach you the art of alchemy." "Senior brother Drew, does senior brother Sterling think my talent is too poor, and that's why he's not teaching me himself?" Evan couldn't hold the question back. Sterling had suddenly mentioned being busy, and Evan couldn't help but overthink it. Drew was quiet for a moment, then offered a warm smile. "Junior brother, your aptitude for the sword path is admittedly not great, but senior brother Sterling isn't that kind of person. This is his first time taking on a student, so naturally he has his own way of going about things. Don't take it to heart. Today, I'll be teaching you alchemy. No one is perfect at everything. Who knows, perhaps your talent in the sword path is ordinary, but you may turn out to have a real gift for alchemy." "I understand. Thank you for the kind words, senior brother. I'll work hard at my sword training and earn senior brother Sterling's recognition one day, rather than being discouraged." Evan felt his resolve to practice the sword only grow stronger. "Enough talk. Let's begin your alchemy lessons." Seeing that Evan hadn't been broken by the words, Drew felt at ease. He produced a large four-legged green cauldron, and the moment it appeared, a deep rumbling resonated through heaven and earth. "Of the 10,000 paths of the great Tao, none is higher or lower than another. Yet the path of alchemy holds within it the very mysteries of heaven and earth. Junior brother, in your eyes, what does it mean to be a truly powerful alchemist?" Evan paused. That question sounded oddly familiar. Could senior brother Drew also be a hidden master? Evan had always felt the Azure Cloud sect had the air of a recluse sect, but he didn't know much about his fellow disciples. All he knew for certain was that Sterling was an extraordinary master. But now, looking at Drew, there was a similar otherworldly quality about him. Evan answered thoughtfully, "Senior brother Drew, I believe a truly powerful alchemist stands above all others. A single pill can drive the mightiest warriors to madness in pursuit of it. No matter how gifted or how unstoppable you are, there's always a limit to your strength. But an alchemist can defy that limit and rewrite fate itself." That was Evan's honest understanding. In countless fantasy novels, alchemists commanded the highest respect. No matter how powerful you were, you still had to bow your head to a skilled alchemist. The cultivation world was both desperately short of strong fighters and absolutely full of them. When death came knocking, raw strength meant nothing. But a single life-extending pill could grant you another 100, or even 1,000 years. In that light, who was really the weaker one? "That's too shallow," Drew said, shaking his head with a serious expression that suggested far greater depths. "The kind of alchemist you're describing is still just an alchemist. Think bigger." Evan fell silent for a long moment. Then he offered his answer. "The most powerful pill should be one that transforms a person's very foundation, turning someone with the worst natural talent into the finest cultivator under heaven, something that could even amplify one's destiny or grant direct ascension to immortality." Yet Drew shook his head again, his expression grave. He glanced up at the sky, then spoke slowly. "One who has truly reached the pinnacle of alchemy can forge all of existence into a divine pill. A true alchemist does not merely refine pills, they refine heaven and earth itself. Every pill they create is an entire world. That is what a true alchemist is." Evan was stunned, speechless. Refining heaven and earth? Every pill is a world? Even after reading countless fantasy novels, he had never imagined anything like this. The ceiling of what an alchemist could become was truly terrifying. One pill, one world, all things as pills. Heaven and earth as pills. The universe is a pill. Everything in existence, a pill. What kind of realm was that? What kind of invincible existence would that be? Casually refining a pill and out comes an entire world. In that moment, Evan finally understood why Drew had said the sword path wasn't the only choice. If alchemy could truly reach such heights, it was every bit as powerful as the sword. Senior brother Drew was also a hidden supreme master. Senior brother Sterling was the pinnacle of the sword path, and senior brother Drew was clearly the pinnacle of alchemy. Someone who could speak like this, how could he possibly be an ordinary alchemist? Evan had assumed Drew would simply walk him through some basic alchemy. But after hearing all of that, he was fully convinced every single person in this sect was an extraordinary master. Seeing the look of utter amazement on Evan's face, Drew quietly suppressed a smile. Sure, it all sounded impressive, but in reality, it was almost complete nonsense. There was a grain of truth in there, sure, but if he'd said any of that to the outside world, not a single person in 10 would have believed him. Heaven and earth, as pills. Go ahead and make one, then. Drew wasn't worried about leading Evan astray. His real plan was simply to blow Evan's mind first, then ease him into the actual basics of alchemy. Start small, build up. Good that you understand, but what I just described is the absolute peak of alchemy. I don't yet know the extent of your talent, so for now I can only teach you the most fundamental techniques. Let's first see what you're capable of. You have to start from the ground up. Even the tallest tower rises from its foundation. I understand, senior brother. Thank you for the guidance. Evan nodded firmly. As the saying goes, all medicine has its side effects. In this world, every pill had its poison. No matter how brilliant the alchemist, the toxicity could never be fully removed. At its root, the problem was always the ingredients themselves. What I'm teaching you today, Drew said with complete and utter seriousness, is toxin-free alchemy. As the name suggests, every pill refined through this method contains absolutely no toxicity and produces absolutely no side effects. Drew delivered this nonsense with a perfectly straight face. The old saying about medicine and toxicity was absolutely correct, but toxin-free alchemy was the kind of claim that only Drew would dare make to someone like Evan. If he'd said that in front of any proper alchemist, they would have lined up to slap him senseless. Because in this entire world, toxin-free alchemy simply didn't exist. The toxicity in a pill came directly from the ingredients. No matter how you refine them, the medicinal properties and the toxic properties of any ingredient were two sides of the same coin. Strip away the toxicity and you stripped away the potency as well. Actually, achieving truly toxin-free pills is quite simple. Just don't use any ingredients, and there's no toxicity. At that, Evan blinked. On the surface, it sounded almost logical, but could you even make a pill without ingredients? Senior brother Drew, I may not know much, but I'm not completely clueless. Evan went quiet, not sure what to say. It felt a bit absurd. Drew, sensing the shift in Evan's expression, showed not the slightest alarm. If anything, he grew even calmer. Junior brother, do you think I'm pulling your leg? Your skepticism is perfectly natural, but the reason you're confused is simply that you don't yet understand what I'm teaching. Think of it this way. Back when you were an ordinary person in the mortal world, if someone had told you there were supreme sword immortals who could shatter a star with a single strike, would you have believed them? That landed. Evan understood immediately. So many things weren't truly impossible. They only seemed impossible because he couldn't do them himself. But his own limits were not the world's limits. He felt a twinge of embarrassment. He never thought the day would come when he'd be the one with a small world perspective. Don't be too hard on yourself, Drew said with a gentle smile, then continued. The essence of any medicinal ingredient is spiritual energy. Every natural treasure in this world grows in places rich with spiritual energy. Ingredients are simply spiritual energy condensed into another form. So why do ingredients carry toxicity? Because spiritual energy in its purest state is untainted. It is the most pristine substance in all of heaven and earth. But as they grow, they are tainted by the 5 elemental forces of the physical world, and that contamination naturally gives rise to impurities and thus toxicity. So, toxin-free alchemy means bypassing the ingredients entirely, drawing spiritual energy directly from heaven and earth, and condensing it into a supreme-grade pill through transcendent Tao techniques. Do you understand? Every word Drew spoke carried weight. That final line in particular struck Evan like a great bell rung inside his mind. I understand, senior brother. Evan was completely convinced. Every last trace of doubt dissolved in an instant. Senior brother, if someone hasn't begun cultivating yet, can they still take a Chi condensing pill? Evan asked, full of curiosity. Without cultivation, could a person take a Chi condensing pill? Drew answered almost without a second thought. Yes. Giving a Chi condensing pill to a mortal who hasn't yet entered the Chi condensing stage won't kill them or cause their body to burst, but the effect is minimal. It can only slowly nourish the spirit veins. That said, no major sect or cultivation family would ever do this. A Chi condensing pill is far too valuable. Who would waste one just to nurture spirit veins? Just as I suspected. So how am I supposed to solve the spiritual energy problem? A quiet heaviness settled in Evan's chest, and a wave of disappointment washed over him. Understood. Thank you, senior brother. Evan bowed respectfully. Well then, let's begin. Drew nodded with satisfaction and started the lesson. Look at this. A real teacher, a real mentor. Look at himself, and then look at senior brother Sterling, not a shred of patience. How was Sterling ever going to inherit the sect master position? Maybe Drew should throw his name in the running. Drew was in an excellent mood, already half seriously considering whether he should challenge Sterling for the role of sect master. Meanwhile, deep within the purified soul range, the endless cries of monster beasts rose and fell like cicadas on a sweltering summer day. Sterling Su and Master Taihua had already ventured into the purified soul range. Master, now that we're both out here, what about our little junior brother? You don't think he'll cause any trouble, do you? He'll be fine. I had Drew teach him alchemy before we left. That kid is even-tempered, mentally tough. Whatever comes his way, he'll handle it. Just as the two were talking, a rustling and trembling sound came from behind them. Sterling flinched hard, every muscle tensing up. He spun around. Master, a monster beast, Sterling managed to say, swallowing hard, his voice shaking. But a moment later, a flash of silver white shot out from the rustling bushes, and on closer inspection, it was nothing but a common horned field mouse. A mouse? You were scared of a mouse, and you call yourself a cultivator? Master Taihua couldn't hold it in any longer, and doubled over laughing. Sterling turned away in embarrassment, wanting to disappear into the ground. I told you already, the outer perimeter of the purified soul range doesn't have large. Master Taihua never got to finish. Both of them were suddenly engulfed by a monstrous, oppressive aura. A bone-deep chill crept up from nowhere. Then came a deafening crack, like the sound of death itself tearing through the trees. A colossal saber-toothed tiger covered in bone spikes came barreling toward them, its massive jaws wide open. It moved like a bolt of golden lightning, closing the gap in an instant, one enormous claw crashing down. The next morning, Evan opened his eyes and let out a long, slow breath. His muscles tightened and he stretched instinctively, working out the stiffness in his body. A thin mist drifted through the mountain forest, making it look like something out of a dream. A gentle bell toll rang through the air, and with it came a deep sense of calm. Evan drew in a long breath of the cool morning air, fresh with the scent of dew. Evan stepped down the stone stairs toward the lower mountain. He was heading to the library hall to catch up on his knowledge of this world. He had been here for years, yet had never truly taken the time to understand it. Along the way, he hoped to find some solution to his lack of spiritual energy. Even if nothing turned up, broadening his understanding of cultivation would still be worthwhile. As for the Four Thunder Sword intent, that wasn't something he could rush. Before long, Evan arrived at the Azure Cloud Sect's library hall, walking into the early morning sun. Inside, the place was spotless, simple, and understated, completely unlike the bustling, incense-heavy shrines one would find outside the sect. Perhaps this was the spirit of a recluse sect, unbothered, elevated above the noise of the world. Evan admired that way of thinking, to stand apart from worldly strife, to embrace one's fate, to find the Tao in everyday life. On the surface, everything looked perfectly ordinary, but the great Tao resided in simplicity, and the simpler something appeared, the more profound the truth it held. Take the incense burner outside the main hall, for instance. There was always just a single stick of incense burning. Could it be that the Azure Cloud Sect couldn't afford more? That was obviously not the case. As the saying goes, sincerity of heart is what matters. One stick of incense offered with a genuine heart is more than enough. But if the heart is not sincere, then a whole mountain of incense won't bring a single drop of fortune. Evan stared at that single burning stick of incense, his heart full of quiet admiration. Such a small thing, and yet it held so much meaning. A recluse sect. In one word, extraordinary. Gathering his thoughts, Evan stepped inside the library hall. The Azure Cloud Sect's collection wasn't particularly large, just 4 bookshelves, yet every shelf was filled with cultivation manuals. Evan was on his best behavior. He didn't touch anything, and even walked carefully. But the moment he looked at the titles on those shelves, he froze. 10 Dragon, 10 Elephant Soul Technique, Dual Celestial Eye Awakening Method, Perfect Manifestation of the Supreme Divine Phenomenon, True Dragon Supreme Godly Art, Heaven and Earth Sword Art, the wondrous method of 30,600 immortal apertures, the 36 divine arts of the heavenly fiend, the 72 Tao techniques of the earth demon. Evan just stood there, completely dumbstruck. He already knew Azure Cloud Sect was a recluse sect, but he hadn't expected it to be this absurd. He didn't even need to open any of those manuals to know they were extraordinary. But what stunned him even more was that they were all just sitting there on the shelves, out in the open, with no formation array protecting them, no seals, no security of any kind. So this is what a recluse sect looks like. Evan was genuinely thrilled, heart-poundingly, breathlessly thrilled. If anyone dared to say this wasn't a recluse sect, he'd go after them with his sword. Evan took a deep breath and forced himself to calm down. Sure, there were manuals everywhere, but whether he was actually allowed to study them was a whole other matter. And what if something went wrong from practicing the wrong thing? What if the master and his senior brothers blamed him? Evan held himself back and instead picked up some general texts about the cultivation world, things like the Chronicles of Greenreach and the Strange Records of Jin Kingdom. These volumes were thick and heavy. Evan sat alone in the library hall for a full day and night, working through all 45 volumes of the Strange Records until he finished every last one. By the end, he had a solid general understanding of Jin Kingdom and the cultivation sects of the 10 kingdoms, including the major sect powers, the imperial court structure, and a host of unusual phenomena. I didn't expect the imperial dynasties in this world to be just as powerful as the cultivation sects, Evan murmured to himself. According to what he'd read, the imperial courts governed the mortal world, while cultivation sects stood above it all and were technically outside imperial jurisdiction. Yet in practice, most sects still had to cooperate with the court on certain matters, a partnership, though one in which the imperial courts held the upper hand. That thought stopped Evan cold, and then hit him with a wave of quiet frustration. If he'd known this earlier, why had he bothered entering over 50 ascension tournaments? He could have just passed the imperial exams, earned the top scholar title, and walked straight into the court. Who said you couldn't cultivate from inside the government? He blamed all those fantasy novels for painting imperial courts as weak and irrelevant. They'd completely misled him. But then again, Evan quickly realized something was off. If he'd known all that, wouldn't he have completely missed out on the recluse sect? Right. Evan suddenly saw the bigger picture. If he hadn't been clueless all along, how would he ever have ended up in the Azure Cloud sect? With that realization, his mood lifted right back up. Just then, a voice rang out, clear and bright as a songbird. "Junior brother, what are you doing here?" Evan snapped back to reality and looked up. It was his senior sister, Lily Chen. Azure Cloud Sect had 7 disciples in total, but Evan had barely met any of them. By now, he'd only encountered 3. Senior brother Sterling Su, senior brother Drew Shu, and Lily. He'd been told he had 5 senior brothers and 2 senior sisters in all. One thing was undeniable, though. Lily was strikingly beautiful. She looked younger than him, but she had joined the sect earlier, so by seniority, Evan absolutely had to call her senior sister. "Junior brother, why aren't you at the back cliff studying the sword marks?" Lily walked over with a smile. She was simple and sincere. She'd grown up entirely within the Azure Cloud sect, and even on the rare occasions she went down the mountain, she rarely spoke with strangers. The arrival of a new junior brother had made her the most excited person in the whole sect. "Senior sister, senior brother Drew told me to come look through the library so I'd at least have some basic knowledge of the world." Evan instinctively took a small step back, not out of any dislike for Lily, but because she had gotten quite close. close enough that he could smell the faint fragrance about her. Someone this beautiful standing this near, who could keep their composure. Junior brother, you need to work hard. In a few days, your senior sister will pass down the ultimate Tao to you. Lily didn't seem to notice anything, giving Evan a firm pat on the shoulder with complete sincerity. The ultimate Tao? Evan gave a faint, helpless smile. He believed every member of this sect was an extraordinary master, but this particular senior sister seemed like a stretch. Better natural talent than him probably, but a supreme master? That might be pushing it. Still, Evan held no disrespect toward Lily whatsoever. In fact, he had quite a favorable impression of her. She'd been nothing but warm and welcoming toward him, and with looks like that, who could possibly find fault? Senior sister, can I ask, am I allowed to study this one? Evan reached for the wondrous method of 3,600 immortal apertures off the shelf. Sure, study whatever you like. Lily glanced at it and waved her hand casually. Really? Evan had been worried that practicing something unauthorized might cause a cultivation deviation. He hadn't expected it to be that straightforward. These are all basic manuals. How could you possibly have a deviation from something like this? Lily waved it off without a second thought. Everything in this library is pretty entry-level stuff, honestly. There's no risk of a deviation at all. But those words hit Evan very differently. If these counted as basic, then what on earth would the advanced ones look like? And more importantly, his spiritual energy problem might finally have a solution. Seeing Evan standing there completely frozen, Lily tilted her head. Junior brother, are you all right? Are you feeling sick? Evan quickly shook his head. I'm fine. I just got a little overwhelmed finding a technique that might actually work for me. Thank you, senior sister. He meant every word. Don't mention it. Just practice hard and believe in yourself. Oh, and you don't have to call me senior sister anymore. Just call me Lily. Lily was visibly pleased and somehow looked even more beautiful because of it. Thank you, senior sister Lily. Evan expressed his gratitude. Lily turned and left the library hall. She would have loved to stay and chat, but she knew better than to let anything slip. A casual greeting was enough. After Lily left, Evan opened the manual and row after row of small characters filled his vision. Man stands as the sovereign of all living beings, and within the human body lies a treasury of gold, 3,600 immortal aperture points sealed away. The general concept was straightforward enough. The manual described how the human body contained countless hidden treasures, all of them sealed away within the body's aperture points. By opening these apertures, a cultivator could absorb spiritual energy directly from heaven and earth, nourishing the body from within and dramatically accelerating the speed of cultivation. Each aperture unlocked doubled one's cultivation speed. If all 3,600 were opened, a cultivator would advance at 30,600 times the normal rate. No wonder Evan was so shaken. His greatest weakness was his terrible cultivation aptitude, but if he could master the wondrous method of 30,600 immortal apertures, couldn't that make up for the deficiency entirely? At this point, he had already gotten a basic grasp of the Four Thunder Sword art. He also had the ancient god demon art and senior brother Drew's toxin-free alchemy, but all of it was blocked. Without spiritual energy, he couldn't take a single step forward. He didn't dare imagine what his strength would look like if he actually had spiritual energy. It was too much to even think about. With that in mind, Evan carefully read through the cultivation method one more time, and then headed straight for the back cliff of Azure Cloud Sect. Meanwhile, back in the Purified Soul Range, Master Taihua crashed hard into the ground and immediately coughed up a mouthful of blood. Who knew how many ribs broken? The saber-toothed tiger radiated a crushing, murderous aura as it stalked slowly toward them, like death itself, in no hurry at all. Damn it. Master Taihua was filled with nothing but regret for ever bringing Sterling into this miserable place. He made his decision instantly. I still have an Earth Escape talisman. Sterling, run. If you don't, neither of us is making it out of here today. What the hell are you saying, old man? You want me to abandon you and run? We're not out of options yet. Master Taihua's vision blurred for a moment. He stared at Sterling's back in a daze. How was it that this kid's silhouette suddenly felt so steady, so reassuring? Sterling drew his fingertip lightly across the blade's edge. The sword blazed to life with blinding lightning, his robes billowing without any wind, as though he were about to cleave through everything in existence. Master Taihua was stunned genuinely, completely stunned. Was his sect really that full of prodigies? Had Sterling been hiding his real strength all along? Suddenly, everything felt strangely safe. Die! Sterling roared, and his sword surged forward like a rising sun, driving straight for the saber-toothed tiger. But in the very next second, the saber-toothed tiger swatted Sterling away with a single paw. He hit the ground hard. Wait, with all that dramatic buildup, he just got smacked away like that? Sterling calmly picked himself up off the ground, a satisfied grin on his face. Alright, I've had my cool moment. I can die happy now. Oh, for the love of, did you really have to do that? The saber-toothed tiger opened its jaws, and a sphere of purple energy began condensing in its mouth. That's it, master. See you in the next life. I'll be your student again. No, thank you. I don't want a disciple this dramatic in my next life. The two of them stared at the growing, brightening energy sphere in complete despair as they began exchanging their last words. How dare you, beast, injuring people so recklessly? The words had barely landed before an overwhelming wave of razor-sharp swordlight tore through the air. The saber-toothed tiger had no time to react. The swordlight consumed it completely, and its body shattered apart piece by piece, crashing to the ground as nothing but broken flesh. When Sterling made out who had arrived, his eyes went wide with disbelief, and he couldn't hold back a cry of shock. With the Green-Reach Sword Tournament fast approaching, the third elder of the Fourth Undersword sect had led roughly 20 elite inner disciples into the Purified Soul range to hunt monster beasts, sharpen their combat instincts, and temper their sword path. Not even 2 hours in, they had already crossed paths with human figures. Your cultivation is this low and you wandered into the Purified Soul range? Are you trying to get yourselves killed? Lucky for you, you ran into us from the Fourth Undersword sect. Now go, this place isn't for the likes of you. The third elder's brow furrowed slightly as she spoke up, but when she got a clear look at the two of them, she paused. One old, one young. The older man looked unremarkable and appeared to be injured. As for the young man, something about him felt strangely familiar. Then she went still, eyes fixed on the young man standing before her. A plain white robe, yet every bit of it looked graceful on him. Sharp brows, bright eyes, and an innate pride written into his very bones. Something about him felt extremely familiar to the third elder. Then it hit her like a thunderclap, and a sharp, audible intake of breath escaped her. Every single member of the Fourth Undersword sect froze. Master, that man looks just like the special envoy from the painting. Looks like he is. In an instant, the entire group stood rooted to the spot as though struck by lightning. Calm down. Stay calm. Now is not the time to lose composure. Remember what the sect master said. On the other side, Master Taihua and Sterling were equally stunned. The Fourth Undersword sect, the #1 sect in all of Greenreach province. To the two of them, the Fourth Undersword sect was a titan, and the gap between it and the Azure Cloud sect was like heaven and earth. The Azure Cloud sect wasn't even in a position to kneel before them. Still, something felt off to Sterling. Why were all the male disciples staring at him? Had none of them ever seen a good-looking man before? Surely they weren't into men, were they? Sterling started to feel genuinely uneasy. But the more nervous Sterling got, the colder and more composed his expression became. He'd been like that his whole life, and he had no idea why. Both sides stood in silence, the awkwardness hanging thick in the air. The third elder kept telling herself, "Stay calm, stay composed. Whatever you do, don't let him realize that you've figured out who he is." But what do I even say? Think, this is so awkward. The third elder's nerves were getting the better of her, cold sweat already forming on her brow. "Greetings, fellow Taoists. May I ask what brings the two of you out this way?" She forced herself to speak. Master Taihua was confused. What kind of an opener was that? How was he supposed to answer that? Was he supposed to say he came here to get beaten half to death? Why the sudden formality, and why ask what they were doing here? He couldn't very well say nothing, so he forced an awkward laugh and answered, "Oh, nothing much, just taking a stroll." Master Taihua looked noticeably on edge. The whole scene fell quiet again. 3 pairs of eyes met, and the awkwardness spoke for itself. Sterling said nothing. He was nervous, but his expression made him look proud and remote. He didn't trust himself to speak. The third elder's sharp eyes caught it immediately. The old man was injured. She spoke up without thinking. "Fellow Taoist, are you wounded? I happen to have a high-grade spirit medicine on me, a white dew muscle restoration pill, which should be able to heal your injuries." A white dew muscle restoration pill. Both Master Taihua and Sterling silently cursed in disbelief. That was a high-grade pill. A single one was worth 50 low-grade spirit stones. They could sell their entire sect and still not come up with that much. Master Taihua was genuinely thrown off. Why was this person being so generous? Sterling was equally baffled. Then Master Taihua thought about it more carefully, and something clicked. This must be what the great sects were like, strong enough to be magnanimous, the kind of people who look out for the weak and step in when they see injustice. Something's not right here. When things don't add up, something's always off. Master, let's get out of here. We are deeply grateful, fellow Taoists. Until we meet again. Master Taihua and Sterling bowed quickly and turned to leave in a hurry. "Please, wait!" They hadn't gotten far before one of the Fourth Undersword sect disciples called out. A figure stepped forward from among the group and approached, bowing with deep respect. Sterling was getting nervous, and not without reason. He wasn't dense. He could tell these people seemed somewhat restrained around him, especially the third elder, who kept glancing his way. It made him genuinely uneasy on the inside. Could they really be drawn to his looks? And now this young disciple walking up to him? What for? To play matchmaker? Sterling grew even more tense, but the more tense he felt, the colder and more aloof he appeared on the surface. "Senior," the young disciple began, "I can see that you walk the sword path as well. I've been struggling with a question about sword cultivation for some time now and cannot find my way through it. Would you be willing to offer some guidance? I would like to ask, what is the sword path?" The young man spoke, and the question he posed was one Sterling knew all too well. Sterling froze internally. He knew this question. It was the very one he had asked his little junior brother, and just like that, his instinct for striking a pose kicked in. He clasped his hands behind his back, turned his head slightly, and let out a quiet, effortless laugh, his solitary silhouette the very image of a transcendent sword immortal, standing apart from the world. At that moment, even Master Taihua couldn't help but look over at Sterling. He knew exactly what his disciple was worth. A creeping sense of second-hand embarrassment came over him, so he closed his eyes and pretended to be recovering from his injuries. Sterling gazed into the vast, boundless sky, then slowly spoke. "A blade of grass is the sword path." The words landed and everyone paused. They didn't understand. Not a single person could make sense of it. Not the disciples. Not even the third elder herself. When Master Taihua heard this, he was hit with an inexplicable wave of second-hand embarrassment so intense, he wished the ground would open up and swallow him whole. "Could you be more specific, Senior? I'm afraid my understanding is rather slow." the young disciple said earnestly, pressing on with his question. Sterling Sue let out a quiet, resigned sigh. Without answering, Sterling intoned slowly, "The way of the sword lies within the heart. Where the heart points, so too does the blade." He tilted his head upward at a deliberate angle, hands clasped behind his back, radiating the air of a supremely aloof grandmaster. This was Sterling's own refined take on his one sword to shatter the star's performance. After much deliberation, he had arrived at the ultimate secret to pulling off a convincing act. Say something incomprehensible. People will never doubt you are a fraud. They will only doubt themselves. And sure enough, right on cue, the third elder and all the disciples stood frozen in place, each quietly sinking into a pit of self-doubt. "Senior, I understand now." Just then the young man standing behind Sterling suddenly spoke up. He turned and bowed deeply before Sterling in a gesture of reverence. The rest of the four Thundersword sect disciples were startled, and promptly fell even deeper into their spiral of self-doubt. So the senior was telling the truth all along, but I couldn't understand a word of it. Does that make me the dullest one here? No matter. Even if I am, I absolutely cannot let anyone find out. One by one, the disciples of the four Thundersword sect forced smiles onto their faces and loudly proclaimed they had understood. Even the third elder leading the group was no exception. Master Taihua, watching all of this unfold, was completely stunned. He was astonished by Sterling's audacity in claiming a blade of grass embodied the entire way of the sword, and equally floored by the spectacle of disciples pretending to comprehend something they clearly did not. "What on earth do you people think you've grasped? Have you all lost your minds?" Sterling's expression remained perfectly calm. His eyes were still and unreadable, like the surface of an undisturbed well. To everyone watching, he embodied every quality of a true master. "I have said all I intend to say. How much you take from it depends on your own perception." Sterling remained composed and unhurried, his gaze drifting off into the distance. Everyone present couldn't help but marvel, truly worthy of the title of a supreme grandmaster. The sect leader had been right. The Jin Kingdom's inspector general cared nothing for fame or fortune, living by his own will, devoted entirely to the way of the sword. Meanwhile, at the rear cliffs of Azure Cloud sect, the youngest disciple Evan Ye was still deep in rigorous training. He slowly opened his eyes and exhaled a long, heavy breath. He gazed up at the vast glittering stars above, but his heavy mood found no relief. If anything, he felt worse. He had already worked through the secret manual thoroughly and located the aperture points within his own body. Yet he had stumbled upon something even more disheartening. He had no idea how to draw spiritual energy into his body, let alone use it in surging waves to strike his apertures and open his inner core. On top of that, Evan had begun to sense that breathing techniques, which seemed like the simplest of foundational methods, were actually the most complex. "I need to put myself in the shoes of the very first cultivator," he thought. "The first person in all of existence to understand chi refinement. How did they do it? I need to think like them. That's the only way I'll find the answer," Evan thought to himself, then continued to wrestle with the question. Absorbing spiritual energy into the body seemed straightforward enough, but every cultivator who did it was simply following a path someone else had already walked. It was like math from his past life. A 3-year-old child could tell you that 1 + 1 = 2, but had no idea why it equaled 2, or why it couldn't equal 3. If he could figure out the 1 + 1 of spiritual energy in the cultivation world, he would have earned the right to forge a path that was entirely his own. Whether he succeeded or failed, it would be unlike anything that had come before. "I'm already so far behind. I can't afford to waste time. If one approach doesn't work, I'll try another. I know I can figure this out." Time slipped by swiftly, and before long 7 days had passed. Evan still hadn't had any breakthrough on drawing spiritual energy inward. It weighed heavily on him. He was becoming more convinced that his talent was simply lacking. Nearly 20 days in, and he still couldn't manage this basic step. He really was hopeless. But complaining aside, Evan kept at it. After all, if you don't push yourself to the limit, how will you ever know just how far you can actually go? Forget it. Maybe I'll paint something. Who knows, maybe inspiration will come. Evan thought to himself, hoping a bit of art might clear his head. He drew in a long breath of crisp morning air, carrying the scent of dew, and felt his body and mind unwind considerably. He stood gazing at the layered mountain ridges, bathed in the glow of the rising sun. The world around him seemed to melt into a landscape of black and white, and Evan decided on the spot to paint a classic landscape, nothing more. Suddenly, a figure appeared silently behind him. It was Drew Shu, his second senior brother. Noticing Evan was about to paint, Drew asked with curious interest, "Are you about to make something? Would you mind doing one for me too?" "Of course," Evan said, nodding. It made no difference to him either way. He was only painting to lift his spirits. "Do you want a landscape?" Drew tilted his head. "What would I do with a landscape? Just give me a portrait, but make it look good with feeling. You can take some artistic liberties. I can handle it." "Understood," Evan said with a nod. This was also a good opportunity to repay his senior brother for teaching him alchemy. An hour later, Drew rolled his neck and walked over with an eager expression to collect the finished scroll. The portrait wasn't quite as handsome as he imagined himself to be, but it wasn't bad at all. "Very nice, really very nice. Little brother, you've got quite the hand for painting." "Impressive, truly," Drew said with satisfied admiration. "It's nothing special. Would you like to add a poem to it, Drew?" Evan asked. "No, the painting is fine as it is." Drew had no interest in adding a poem. What was the point? The whole thing was about showcasing himself. Adding a poem would just clutter the image. Drew rolled the scroll up without even stamping a seal on it. Drew offered Evan a few encouraging words before heading off on his own. On the way back, he thought, I'll show it to the master and Sterling when they return. Not sure if they know anything about painting. Either way, they'll definitely praise how handsome I look. Actually, maybe I should add a poem after all. No matter, I'll write one myself when I get back. Evan watched as Drew's figure shrank into a small dark dot and finally vanished from sight. Evan pulled out a fresh, spotless sheet of zhuang paper and spread it out, brush in hand, ready to paint again. Something about the portrait he had just made for Drew had sparked an odd, almost electric sense of clarity in him. He wanted to chase that feeling. This time, he went with a pure landscape, the kind he knew best. With sweeping strokes and careful touches of ink, he poured the weight of his frustration directly into the painting. What appeared on the paper was a landscape of shadowed, brooding mountains and rivers, dark and profound, carrying an unspoken heaviness that pressed down on the viewer. This was the soul of the painting. Evan had reached the realm of painting soul, embedding everything within him into the work. Anyone who looked upon it would feel that same restless, brooding unease. Then, without warning, a soft breeze drifted in and brushed against his face. In that moment, the frustration and urgency coiled inside Evan quietly dissolved. He set down his brush and lifted his gaze to take in the mountains and sky before him. All was still. The world held its breath. Man follows the earth. Earth follows the sky. Sky follows the Tao. Tao follows nature. Without knowing why, these words rose unbidden in Evan's mind. And then, in that same moment, something shifted. Evan went very still. He stood there for a long while. Then, slowly, a smile spread across his calm face. He had truly understood. The vast expanse of stars began to shift and arrange themselves into constellations. Most striking of all was the dragon-shaped constellation at the very center. Evan had fully grasped the secret of drawing spiritual energy inward. He had been far too eager, always trying to force the energy of heaven and earth into himself. But when he thought it through, the answer was simpler. Let go of everything. Let the spiritual energy of heaven and earth come of its own will. This was the way of nature. This was the way of the Tao. In an instant, spiritual energy from hundreds of miles in every direction surged toward Evan as if seized by madness. It gathered into a storm, whipping like a tornado, sweeping up vast quantities of energy that then poured into his body like a crashing ocean tide. It was as though an invisible membrane had finally ruptured. In his mind, a star map composed of 36 stars blazed with light, and from it emerged the shimmering silhouette of a true dragon. This dragon was boundless in scale. The universe itself seemed small before it. A single breath could unmake heaven and earth. When it opened its eyes, day broke. When it closed them, night fell. It commanded both time and space. Its gaze was terrifying beyond words. A single glance could drive a person to madness. A dragon's roar exploded through the vision, and Evan felt something indescribable, as though his very soul was on the verge of shattering. Torch Dragon Immortal Aperture. As the dragon's silhouette faded, a flood of information poured into Evan's mind. Every person's body held immortal apertures, yet each person's apertures were unique. Through the knowledge now flowing through him, Evan understood that his own aperture was the Torch Dragon Immortal Aperture, and that as he continued to unlock it, he would gradually inherit the legacy bound to it. The Torch Dragon? Could this be Torch Serpent? Learning what his aperture was left Evan shaken and full of questions. He wasn't certain whether this Torch Dragon was the same Torch Serpent he knew from his memories, but if it was, the implications were frightening. Torch Serpent was the most fearsome divine beast recorded in the classic of mountains and seas. In authentic Taoist texts, it was written as the originator of all things in existence. It held dominion over time and space, capable of reaching into the past or stepping into the future. It knew all things and understood all things. When it opened its eyes, there was daylight. When it closed them, there was night. It was omnipotent, formless, and without limit. Whether or not it was truly Torch Serpent no longer mattered. The aperture was open, and now he could begin cultivating the ancient god to demon art. That was what needed his attention right now. But before any of that, Evan glanced at the sun rising once more over the horizon, then turned back to the Shuyang paper spread before him. He added just a few rays of light piercing through the dark clouds and falling upon the earth below. Such a small addition, yet the feeling of the painting transformed instantly. The endless darkness and suffocating weight that had filled it gave way as those small beams of light descended to the feeling of clouds parting and a clear sky breaking through. Evan had found his answer. The knot in his chest had loosened, and naturally the painting itself had come alive with meaning. Some distance away, Drew sat cross-legged in meditation. The sound of howling wind made him frown, and the more he listened, the more unsettled his expression became. "Oh no," Drew muttered under his breath, snapping to attention. He had forgotten to bring in Sterling's laundry. He looked visibly flustered, suddenly on edge. Sterling's most prized robe was still hanging outside, and if the wind carried it off, he was fairly certain his senior brother would not let it go. At the rear cliffs of Azure Cloud Sect, Evan had fully grasped the art of drawing spiritual energy inward. The key wasn't guiding or pulling at all, it was an exchange. Treat the energy of heaven and earth as something living. Those that were willing to enter, let them enter. Those that were not willing needed no coercion. Let it be entirely up to them. And so Evan released all tension from his body and mind. He stopped trying to force the energy inward and instead let go of everything, allowing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to make its own choice. With the first immortal aperture unlocked, Evan was flooded with a sensation unlike anything he had felt before. Spiritual energy rushed into him like a great river. The aperture drank it in hungrily, like a spring that could never be filled. Evan had found his own path through his own understanding. Ordinary cultivators had to refine spiritual energy before it could enter the body. Since every person's spirit root was different, and every strand of energy was different, it had to be processed first. That was the very essence of the Qi refinement realm. But Evan's version of refinement was simply to let the energy of heaven and earth choose for itself. What was willing to enter would come, what wasn't would stay away. This removed the refinement step entirely, and it granted him an ability that cultivators normally didn't unlock until the nascent soul realm, autonomous cultivation. On top of that, for reasons he couldn't explain, his rate of absorption was staggering. In just 2 hours, Evan absorbed more spiritual energy than Sterling had accumulated through years of seeded cultivation. This marked the moment Evan truly stepped onto a cultivation path that belonged to him alone. But there was one frustrating catch. Unlocking immortal apertures consumed an absurd amount of spiritual energy. He had already drained the energy from hundreds of miles around him, and still couldn't unlock the second aperture. He was basically a bottomless pit. Evan was someone who knew how to count his blessings. If the second aperture wasn't ready, so be it. This was the perfect moment to turn his attention to the ancient god-demon art. He exhaled slowly and let go of the fixation. Evan closed his eyes, cleared his mind, and meditated on the ancient god-demon within. He raised one hand toward the sky. An intense, blazing solar energy began to gather and concentrate in his palm. He then drove it down hard into the earth. Channeling the power of the ground beneath him, the heaven hammer and earth forge manifested, drawing upon the might of heaven and earth and taking the form of a world-shattering divine hammer. Before him appeared a massive, ancient cauldron wrapped in golden dragons. Beneath it, crimson gold flames spread instantly to the edges of his vision. The heat was absolute, as if the entire world was being fed into a furnace. High in the sky, the world-ending divine hammer crackled with endless lightning. The deafening roar it produced was relentless, as though the end of the world had come. Evan's heart surged with wild joy. A grin spread across his face. It worked. With spiritual energy as the catalyst, it actually worked. But the moment those words left his mouth, the divine hammer released a world-destroying wave of energy that filled heaven and earth. The ground shook violently. Lightning tore through the sky, and the heavens themselves dimmed as though the end had truly arrived. Evan's pupils contracted sharply. He swallowed without thinking. Something's off. This is way too powerful. This is beyond anything I should be able to. Before he could finish the thought, the hammer hanging in the sky came crashing down with breathtaking speed, slamming directly toward him like a comet striking the earth. The ground shook without pause. Everywhere he could see, the air itself was torn and warped by lightning. Evan coughed up a mouthful of blood. The moment the hammer struck, half of his body was pulverized and scattered into nothing. Tiny arcs of electricity still flickered across what remained of him. Ancient god-demon art. Forge the body through destruction and rebirth. Those without an iron will who attempt it will not survive. Evan's body had taken a catastrophic blow. Half of it had been reduced to dust and scattered into the air. What was shocking was that not a single drop of blood flowed from the wound. Instead, dark impurities seeped out like thick black syrup, giving off a foul stench. The pain was beyond extreme. It was so intense it had looped back around into numbness. Evan felt a single violent shudder run through his body, and then nothing at all. He clenched his jaw, his heart full of reluctance. Am I dying? Not like this. I haven't even grasped the fourth Thundersword intent yet. I haven't had the chance to walk the same path as Sterling. Then at that very moment, the immortal aperture within him erupted with an immeasurable flood of spiritual energy. In an instant, it began healing his body. Threads of golden light spread outward, wrapping around him and mending the devastation at an extraordinary speed. The next moment, Evan came back to his senses, gasping for breath in heavy, labored pulls. That was terrifying, he murmured, still shaken. I really thought I was gone. Before he could even fully recover, the temperature around him spiked in an instant. The Earth Forge had fully unleashed its power. Endless crimson gold flames burst outward, blotting out the sky and engulfing the world, as though heaven and earth themselves were being smelted. The dark impurities Evan had expelled were incinerated in an instant, dissolving into wisps of black smoke that drifted away. But the smelting process brought with it a suffering unlike anything else. Evan felt like an herb thrown into a pill furnace. Terrifying flames closed in from every direction, pouring through his pores and flooding into every corner of his body. A searing, overwhelming burn swept through him, making his body shake uncontrollably. Under the relentless heat, Evan's body began to char. Fortunately, the immortal aperture kept pouring out spiritual energy like a cool spring in summer, flowing over his body and providing just enough relief. Without it, he might not have held on. The full smelting process lasted 2 hours, and Evan had completed the first round of body tempering. Just one round, yet the change in his body was unmistakable. His skin had become noticeably smoother and clearer. His features had sharpened into something more refined. Most of all, the quality of his presence had shifted in a way that was difficult to put into words, and yet Evan lay face down on the ground, completely limp. The pain had burned itself into something deeper than flesh. His wounds had closed, but the agony that had sunk into his very bones continued to torment him. It took a full quarter of an hour before he could feel his limbs again. He writhed and struggled on the ground for a while first, before finally managing to bring his uncooperative body under enough control to slowly push himself up. Evan stood there, eyes vacant and glazed. After one round of tempering, the only thing he felt was fullness, a deep physical sense of power filling his body. He felt like he could drop a wild ox with a single punch. Unfortunately, Azure Cloud's sect had no wild oxen to test that on. So this is what real strength feels like. With that thought, Evan moved to begin the second round without hesitation. The process had been brutal, but the feeling of power it produced was something he had already become hooked on. Once Sterling and Master Taihua had departed, a disciple finally couldn't hold it in any longer. Third Elder, was that Senior Su really the Inspector General of the Jin Kingdom? Are you questioning my judgment? The Third Elder's demeanor shifted abruptly. The fawning, eager image vanished entirely, replaced by something sharp and authoritative. Her tone toward the disciple turned noticeably cold. The disciple shook his head rapidly. I wouldn't dare, but he still couldn't stop himself. It's just that the Inspector General's cultivation seemed very ordinary. Maybe third or fourth level of chi refinement at most. The Third Elder shot him an impatient glance. How utterly foolish. Can't you even see through something this obvious? The Jin Kingdom's Inspector General is the foremost sword cultivator in the entire kingdom, a nascent soul realm existence. Do you think disguising himself as a lowly chi refinement cultivator is beyond him? Powerful cultivators can suppress their own realm. The Inspector General's duty is to monitor the sects and officials of Jin Kingdom on behalf of the crown. He cannot afford to reveal his identity. The moment he does, his position is finished. Senior Su is no fool. Not only did he suppress his cultivation to appear as a Qi refinement cultivator, he even had one of his subordinates play the role of his master. He may have gone even further than that. I wouldn't be surprised if he built an entire obscure sect from scratch just to make the cover story airtight. We cultivators should strive to improve ourselves through hard work, not remain narrow-minded like frogs at the bottom of a well. You can question me, but bring evidence when you do. I know what else you're thinking. How could someone truly powerful get injured? Let me tell you plainly, that was a performance. An injury that a single healing pill fixes on the spot is not a real injury. It was all a show for your benefit. A single blade of grass to cut down the sun, the moon, and all the stars. You think a mere chi refinement cultivator could say something like that? Honestly, use your heads. The Third Elder grew more agitated with every word, his tone rising toward outright anger. If you go out into the world with that kind of thinking, the day you face the cunning disciples of a demon sect, you'll finally understand what it means to not believe everything you see. She looked at them with deep disappointment. We were rash and foolish, Elder. Please forgive us. The disciples were fully won over. They bowed together and admitted their fault without hesitation. Meanwhile, at the outer edge of the purified soul range, Master Taihua and Sterling Su stood looking back at the dense, lightless forest they had just come through. Without a word, the two fell into each other's arms and wept. After parting ways with the 4th Thunder Sword sect group, the master and student had run into wave after wave of danger, escaping each one by the narrowest of margins. Had it not been for the high-grade healing pills gifted by the 4th Thunder Sword sect elder, Master Taihua would have died at least once. Master Taihua collapsed onto the ground like a heap of mud. Exhaustion rose in waves, washing over every sense he had. With no will left to live, he groaned. This little purified soul range, I thought we'd stroll right through it. Instead, I nearly left half my life behind in there. Sterling felt utterly deflated. Master Taihua had at least come out with some valuable demon beast materials. Sterling, on the other hand, had made zero progress on his cultivation insights. Wasn't there supposed to be some good luck after cheating death? Where was his good luck? Master Taihua shook his head with resignation. The small comfort he had felt over the money they had made quietly faded. The demon beast materials they had risked their lives to obtain weren't worth a fraction of what little Evan made from a single painting. Sometimes when you start comparing yourself to others, it just makes you want to give up, Master Taihua said, sounding deflated. But he had come to terms with it. Pride, dignity, all of it meant nothing. Money was genuinely hard to earn. From now on, he'd just go to Evan and shamelessly ask for paintings. Sterling nodded in agreement. Money doesn't come easy. There are really only 2 ways to earn it, the effortless way and the humbling way. Evan likes to paint on his own anyway. I wouldn't be surprised if he already did something for Drew. That guy has always wanted a portrait of himself. At those words, Master Taihua's eyes lit up. He grabbed Sterling without another moment's hesitation and started off in the direction of the sect. A portrait wasn't worth as much, sure, but it was still worth more than the sect brought in over 1,000 years. If he hasn't done one yet, even better. Tell Evan to skip Drew and just do a landscape with a poem. That's all we need. The scene shifted to Drew's quarters. Drew stepped out into the morning light of the rising sun, moving slowly with a puzzled look on his face. His right eyelid had been twitching without stop for an entire day, for no reason he could identify. It was starting to worry him. Something bad might be coming. On the whole, though, Drew was in good spirits. For one, he had finally memorized all the basic pill formulas. For another, he had successfully delayed Evan's cultivation progress. Thinking about how Sterling must have looked lately only made his grin wider. He couldn't help mentally lecturing Sterling, a senior brother who throws a fit just because his junior has poor talent, and then goes off to sulk alone at the rear cliffs. Embarrassing. Where was the sense of responsibility a senior brother was supposed to have? Drew soon arrived at the rear cliffs, ready to teach Evan some real alchemy, and not to get ahead of himself, but if Evan actually managed to produce a pill with no toxic impurities, he would eat the only pill furnace Azure Cloud sect owned, right in front of every single senior and junior member of the sect. He'd swallow it whole. Spotting Drew approaching, Evan rose immediately and greeted him with a respectful bow. Good to see you, Drew. No need for formalities, Drew said with a light chuckle, turning to look at him. How have things been, Evan? Not bad. I've made a little progress with alchemy. Evan said with a nod, though he felt a bit sheepish. He had succeeded, yes, but not quite in producing a complete pill. It was slightly awkward. Still, a success was a success. A little progress? Drew paused slightly. What does that mean exactly? He asked, genuinely puzzled, eyes full of curiosity. The pill came together, Drew, but it wasn't quite finished. Drew went quiet instantly. He looked at Evan, and the warm smile on his face slowly faded. Evan, your talent may be average, but the sect leader and Sterling have both said your character is solid, honest, and good-natured. Even if the pill didn't work out, you cannot lie about it. Do you understand? Drew said with complete seriousness. I'm not lying, Evan replied, just as serious. Not lying? Really? I don't believe it. Drew genuinely could not believe it. Not because he doubted Evan lacked talent, but because the alchemy he had taught him was completely made up. The creation alchemy art. Non-toxic pill refinement. If he put that out into the world, 100,000 alchemists would each line up to slap him in the face. Please take a look, Drew. This is the pill I made. I'd appreciate your thoughts. Evan opened his hand, and resting in his palm was a pill as clear and brilliant as a diamond. It wasn't small either, roughly the size of an egg, glittering brilliantly in the sunlight. It looked less like a pill and more like a precious gemstone. This is a pill? Drew stared, momentarily at a loss. Standard pills were about the size of a grain of rice, but the size of this one, and the spiritual energy within it, yes, it was unmistakably a spirit-gathering pill, one of the most common pills in the cultivation world. It clicked immediately. So that was why Sterling had been so glum. Evan wasn't just dishonest, he was passing off a purchase pill as something he had made himself. Drew was easygoing by nature, but there were limits. He decided on the spot to address this directly. He drew a calm breath and looked at Evan evenly. In that case, why don't you walk me through the process again, little brother? I'd like to offer some guidance. His expression was composed. He wanted to see how Evan planned to talk his way out of this. Of course, though the process will take several hours. Are you free, Drew? Evan asked considerately. His spiritual energy reserves weren't very full, so producing a proper pill would take some time. But to Drew, this sounded exactly like stalling. No matter, I have all the time in the world. He couldn't help but smile again, watching Evan calmly. Today he was going to expose this. He had already prepared his lecture for afterward. Liars deserve to swallow 1,000 needles. A person of integrity never lies. A true gentleman is like polished jade, and dishonesty has no place in his character. The next moment, Evan sat down cross-legged. Spiritual energy stirred. A large amount of it gathered in his hands, producing a faint, barely audible sound. Drew was a little curious, but soon, as a beam of light appeared in Evan's palms, Drew grew even more curious. 8 hours passed. Drew's eyes had started to sting and his legs had gone half numb. Yet he remained completely riveted, watching Evan without blinking. Then, a blazing white light flashed, and for a moment Drew saw nothing but white. When his vision returned, Evan was drenched in sweat, looking as though he had just come through an intense battle. But when Drew saw the gem-like spirit-gathering pill resting in Evan's palm, every trace of amusement left him. He had absolutely no idea what to say. This could actually be done? This was completely insane. Was this a joke? He was starting to understand why Sterling had been so miserable. Evan's talent wasn't lacking, it was overwhelmingly, outrageously good. Drew? Evan finally spoke up, unable to take the long silence. Drew genuinely did not know what to say. This method works for alchemy? Are you serious? This kid was a once-in-a-generation alchemy genius. No, wait, it went beyond that. He was in a class entirely by himself, condensing raw spiritual energy directly into a pill. That was practically divine. Calm down. Think about how to keep this going. How do I keep going? How? There was nothing left to make up. If he could master something this absurd, imagine what would happen if word got out. Every alchemist out there would be in a frenzy trying to get their hands on Evan. Drew, I understand. I haven't produced a complete pill yet, so I know I haven't fully qualified. But please don't worry. I'll keep at it. As they say, the slow need to start early and diligence can make up for lack of talent. I will never slack off. To Drew, every word of this landed like a small jab. Hard work makes up for lacking talent? Is that aimed at me? Are you looking down on me? Drew felt thoroughly miserable. He was deeply bothered, but he couldn't take it out on Evan. He just needed a moment alone. You've got solid talent, little brother. Keep working hard. I believe in you. Drew tried to force a smile, but for some reason he couldn't. It was as though the ability to smile had simply left him. No, something has to be wrong. Non-toxic alchemy simply doesn't exist, and this pill in my hand, even though it holds tremendous spiritual energy, spirit-gathering pills of different grades look dramatically different. They say the higher the quality, the richer and more varied the colors. The legendary peak grade ones reportedly display 4 or even 5 distinct hues. The one in front of me has the energy signature of a spirit-gathering pill, but it's so clear it's nearly see-through, and more importantly, it is enormous. Even a peak-grade spirit-gathering pill could never be this large. I just need to try absorbing it and it'll fall apart immediately. I know I'm right. Drew was starting to lose it, staring at the sparkling pill in his hand with a slightly unhinged expression. But the moment he activated his technique and began absorbing the pill, an overwhelming, impossibly pure spiritual energy burst through him like a dam breaking, flooding his meridians without resistance. In just a short while, it was the equivalent of several hours of Sterling's dedicated cultivation. No way. This is a spirit-gathering pill, an ultra supreme grade spirit-gathering pill. It's transparent because it has transcended all ordinary form. Drew desperately wanted to curse the heavens for being so unfair. He wanted to drop to his knees and cry until he had nothing left. He felt awful inside. He wanted to be alone. He wanted to cry freely without anyone watching. But before leaving, Master Taihua had drilled it into him over and over, do not give anything away. Drew clenched his jaw hard and refused to let a single crack of emotion show in front of Evan. Clear your head, don't think about anything right now. If you do, you'll definitely break. I'm a fool. I'm an idiot. You keep training, little brother. I have some things to take care of. Drew couldn't afford to stay and didn't want to either. He made a hasty excuse and left as quickly as he could. Evan scratched his head, a little confused. Didn't Drew come here to give me guidance? Why did he suddenly leave? He couldn't figure it out. Evan shook it off and sat back down cross-legged, turning his focus back to alchemy. He was determined to produce a complete spirit-gathering pill as soon as possible. Come to think of it, I never told Drew about my breakthroughs in body tempering and breathing technique. If he knew, I wonder how surprised he'd be. Evan thought to himself eagerly. He genuinely looked forward to being praised by his senior brothers, to earning their recognition. But then he caught himself and felt a little embarrassed. He had barely accomplished anything and was already getting a swelled head. Staying humble was the only way to keep growing. Besides, his senior brothers were all hidden masters of great depth. What did a small breakthrough like this even amount to? Train, stay focused, stop getting distracted. Evan exhaled slowly and steadied his restless mind. He began breathing in the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, preparing for his next attempt. The scene shifted back to Drew's quarters. He pulled out the basic alchemy manual he had been carrying and stood there with tears rimming his eyes. 10 years. 10 years I spent grinding through alchemy and I couldn't even produce the most basic pill. And then there's Evan. He learned for less than a month and pulled off condensing raw energy directly into a pill. Drew, what right do you have to call yourself a cultivator? If I were you, I'd be done. Drew's inner monologue spiraled. Today's blow had been too much. He never imagined Azure Cloud Sect would take in someone like this. No, genius wasn't even the right word. Evan was a complete anomaly. A person who could master a completely fabricated alchemy method. What even is he? Drew couldn't hold it in anymore. He broke down completely, sobbing aloud. Not because he was weak, but because he had already held on for so much longer than most people could have. From the time he was old enough to understand anything, he had devoted himself to alchemy. He had read through every text he could find and even tasted herbs regularly, all in an effort to deepen his craft. He had nearly died for it more than once. Decades of effort. And all he had to show for it was a long string of failed alchemist examinations. That was painful enough. But then the sect casually took in a new junior disciple who surpassed him without even trying. No one could have been expected to take that. 10 years of your effort didn't measure up to his 1 month. And to add insult to injury, not only was his comprehension sharper, the pill he produced was incomparably superior to anything Drew had ever made. Late at night, the sky was a sheet of black. A solitary figure appeared on the cliffs of Azure Cloud Mountain. It was Drew, his robe snapping and rippling in the cold wind. The wind on the cliff was fierce and biting, but the chill in his heart ran deeper. The world was a fine place. He just didn't feel like he had any real place in it. In that moment, Drew suddenly thought of Sterling. He wanted to smile the way Sterling always seemed to, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't manage it. There on the cliff, Drew unrolled the scroll Evan had painted for him and spread it flat on the ground. In that moment, he wanted to write something, anything, to let out everything pressing down on him. It was still April, nowhere near autumn, yet for Drew Shu it felt like the dead of winter was closing in. His heart was heavy with grief and sorrow, and in that moment, all of it transformed into an overwhelming urge to write poetry. Snowflakes drifted down, the north wind howled, and Drew picked up his brush and wrote 8 characters on the scroll. It was a decent opening line, not without its charm, but Drew quickly fell silent. After a moment, the feeling only grew worse. He simply could not figure out what to write next. Soon though, carried along by his sorrow, he just let the words flow freely. On this 3rd day of the 4th month, a warm wind blows, yet my heart grows cold. Alone, I climb the cliff and gaze at the bright moon. This ache in my heart, who could ever understand? No. Drew looked at it carefully and felt the last line still didn't flow quite right. He crossed it out, then wrote beside it, "This ache in my heart, only my senior brother understands." Now that was something. It captured the weight in his heart and brought Sterling into it at the same time, fitting both the moment and the painting perfectly. Sterling would surely be moved to tears when he saw it. That thought lifted his spirits just a little. When he was done, Drew wiped away the tears that had been threatening to fall. He tucked the scroll into his robe. He would show it to Sterling once his brother returned. But as midnight arrived, an inexplicable wave of melancholy and sadness washed over him, heavier than anything he had felt before. "This bitterness in my chest only my elder brother knows," Drew murmured softly to himself. Then he stood alone, gazing up at the sky. He just needed some quiet. "Third brother? Why does second brother like standing alone on the cliff too? Just like first brother." Lily Chen crunched on a cucumber, her bright eyes full of puzzlement. "No idea. Your second brother has always copied first brother's habits. He doesn't actually think he looks cool doing that, does he?" Marcus Wang shook his head from where he stood nearby. "Probably not. When I saw Drew today, it looked like he had been crying." "It might have something to do with our little junior," Lily said. "Something to do with our little junior? That is strange. Is his aptitude really that bad? Drew has the most patient temperament of all of us. If even he cannot handle it, what does that say? Marcus grew even more curious. I'm not sure, but probably at least a little. Third brother, how about you go teach our junior formation technique sometime? Lily suggested. Not me, I have my formation master examination coming up, so I cannot spare the time right now. What about fourth or fifth? Marcus shook his head. He had been too busy lately to give Evan Yi any guidance. Fourth and fifth have been away from the mountain for a long time now. They probably will not be back for a while. If you will not go, then I will find first sister, Lily said with a pout. First sister? That is a bad idea. Sure, she has the highest cultivation among us, but she always comes up with the strangest things. Why not just let Drew hold on a bit longer? Marcus frowned and quickly shot down his youngest junior sister's suggestion. Lily took another bite of her cucumber. I do not mean anything by it. It is just that Drew does not look like he can hold on much longer. Do whatever you want then. If something goes wrong, that is your problem, not mine. All right, get some rest. Marcus stretched and walked away. Lily stood alone, watching Drew with a thoughtful look on her face, torn between listening to Marcus and letting Drew endure a little longer on his own. After midnight, Drew trudged down from the cliff with a gloomy expression and made his way back to his small cottage. He had no idea why his right eyelid had been twitching uncontrollably ever since he met young Evan earlier that day. They said a smiling face brings good luck while a gloomy one invites misfortune, but he had already hit rock bottom. He refused to believe things could possibly get any worse. What was he going to get randomly beaten up on top of everything else? Drew let out a wild, half-crazed laugh. He absolutely refused to believe anything unluckier could happen to him. Whatever. He would just go to sleep. The sun would still rise in the east tomorrow and life would go on. Life demanded resilience, and if you could not fight it, you might as well learn to enjoy it. As the first golden rays of sunlight pierced the darkness, two figures appeared at the foot of the Azure Cloud Sect's mountain. Master Taihua and Sterling Su walked toward the gate, both utterly exhausted. They had been traveling all night since leaving the Purified Soul Range, and had only just made it back. At the sight of familiar surroundings, both Master Taihua and Sterling could not help but break into long-missed smiles. Master, please do not take me with you next time you go to the Purified Soul Range. I would like to live a few more years, Sterling said, tears streaming down his face. Oh, knock it off, Master Taihua snapped. Who would gamble their life like that if they had a choice? I am not an idiot. Only an idiot would go willingly. Master Taihua's tone shifted abruptly. My dear disciple, were you not heading over to check on young Evan? While you are there, why not ask if he has painted anything lately? And if he has not, find a way to get him to. Sterling knew the sect was running low on funds, and he knew Master Taihua had his pride, but Sterling had his pride too. Scheming to squeeze money out of a junior every single day, when he was old and looked back on all of this, it would be nothing but one embarrassing stain after another. But the Azure Cloud sect was in no position to manage without Evan's help right now. Forget buying good cultivation manuals for the others. At this rate, they might not even have enough to eat. Sterling silently nodded. Fine. For the sake of my juniors, I will give it a try. Exactly what I would expect from my most beloved disciple, such admirable devotion, Master Taihua said with a grin. Get lost, Sterling shot back. The scene shifted to a thatched cottage within the Azure Cloud Sect's grounds where a young woman slowly stepped outside. She looked to be around 25 or 26, with a graceful figure and breathtaking beauty that carried a quietly dangerous allure. Not in a seductive way, she was simply stunning in the truest sense, with captivating eyes that had the kind of depth that could make any man's heart skip a beat with just a single glance. To call her devastatingly beautiful would not have been an exaggeration. This was Scarlet Xiao, the eldest senior sister of the Azure Cloud sect. She had been in secluded cultivation for the past several months, appearing only once at the sect meeting, and no one quite knew what she had been up to. First sister, Lily's voice called out just then. Scarlet turned, a smile spreading naturally across her stunning face. Lily came up to her beaming. First sister, you have finally come out of seclusion. Yes, little Lily, come here and let your sister take a look at you. Have you filled out at all? Scarlet said with a light laugh, completely unabashed. The moment those words left her mouth, Lily immediately took a step back. First sister, why do you always have to bring that up? Lily groaned, helpless. Of everyone in the Azure Cloud sect, Scarlet was by far the most unpredictable, and her mouth had absolutely no filter. Oh, do not be shy. It is not like your sister does not have them. Look at you, though. If you do not eat more, your future partner is going to have a rough time. Scarlet gave a soft laugh, then pulled out a gourd of wine and took a generous swig. First sister, you are drinking again. Didn't Master say no more wine? If he catches you, you will be grounded for a whole year. Are you really not afraid of him? Lily asked, partly curious, partly genuinely worried. After all, Master Taihua had warned Scarlet about her drinking more than once. Why would I be afraid of him over a drink? Little sister, wine is medicine for the soul. Want a taste? Scarlet laughed and moved to offer Lily a sip. I am not drinking. Lily backed away another half step, visibly tense. She had no desire to get scolded by Master Taihua. If he found out she had been drinking, she doubted she would live to see her next birthday. Scarlet just laughed and took another long drink, sighing with satisfaction. Lily, has anything interesting been happening in the sect lately? Has that useless first brother of yours managed to condense the Spring Thunder Sword Force yet? She asked. I am not sure, but from the looks of it, first brother is still the same as ever, Lily said, shaking her head. But first sister, while you were in seclusion, first brother and second brother both seem to have been driven to their wits' end by our little junior. Driven to their wits' end? Do tell. Scarlet immediately perked up with a gossip-hungry gleam in her eyes. Come on, what happened? When our little junior first arrived, First Brother started teaching him the sword arts, but it turned out his aptitude was shockingly low. No matter how hard they tried, he just could not get it. It completely broke them. For a while, First Brother would stand alone on the cliff every midnight, looking like the weight of the world was on his shoulders. Then Drew took over, and just last night, he was doing the exact same thing, standing on that cliff at midnight, just like First Brother. Lily explained earnestly, First Sister, even if our little junior really does have poor aptitude, should First and Second Brother really fall apart over something like this? If Master ever passes the leadership down to one of them someday, would the Azure Cloud sect not be finished? Lily finished with a genuinely worried look on her face. Scarlet, on the other hand, clearly had no such concerns. She burst out laughing without a care in the world. That sounds absolutely hilarious. I have to see this for myself. Little Lily, make sure you study the techniques I taught you properly, and whatever you do, do not follow the example of those two useless brothers of yours. Scarlet patted Lily on the head and turned to leave. Stop worrying. I will go check on our little junior myself. As the senior sister's figure disappeared into the distance, Lily whispered worriedly, It's senior sister, she'll be fine probably, right? The scene shifted. From a distance, Scarlet spotted Evan. He was deep in cultivation, eyes closed, completely focused. Scarlet's eyes lit up the instant she saw him. He was actually quite handsome. Evan looked completely different from before. If the old Evan could be described as plain and delicate, the Evan before her now was strikingly handsome, and beyond his appearance he radiated a refined, almost celestial air that made people instinctively warm up to him. Well, I did not expect Master to bring in such a good-looking junior. He is exactly my type. In that case, I am not about to let someone else have this opportunity, Scarlet murmured with a smile that reached her eyes. Then, all at once, Scarlet froze. She stood in the distance staring at Evan, her eyes wide with astonishment. After a long moment, Scarlet snapped out of it, rubbed her eyes and took another careful look at Evan. Finally, she drew a sharp, involuntary breath. This constitution, it actually exists. She was stunned to her core. At a single glance, she had sensed that Evan's physical constitution was unlike anything ordinary. At first, it had not registered, but the moment she looked closely, the shock hit her full force. Unbelievable. Master, of all people, the unluckiest man alive, somehow managed to take in a once-in-an-era genius. This is extraordinary. A constitution that only exists in legends, and it actually turns out to be real. I never imagined the Azure Cloud sect would produce two once-in-a-generation figures at the same time. It seems I was right all along. There truly is someone here carrying a destiny beyond all reckoning. Wait, Scarlet froze again. She had just realized that the extraordinary constitution was only part of it. Evan also possessed unparalleled talent in both the sword arts and alchemy. She wondered briefly whether a junior like him would accept the attention of someone older. No. With a genius like this, even if she could not have him for herself, she was absolutely going to make the most of the situation. A faint, sweet fragrance drifted over. Evan opened his eyes in confusion. The first thing he saw was a pair of fair, snowy breasts directly in front of him, and thousands of characters flooding into his mind all at once. Evan froze, completely dazed. Then a voice, soft and teasing, sounded in his ear. Like what you see, little junior? Evan snapped back to reality, and the very next instant he had jumped back several dozen meters, his expression somewhere between alarm and panic. But when he actually looked at the woman before him, he stopped. She had a figure that was nothing short of breathtaking. Let your big sister give you a proper checkup, Scarlet said with a slight smile, stepping forward and beginning to examine Evan's body from head to toe. After a thorough examination, Scarlet was even more astonished. This is truly the constitution of legend. His meridians were not only wide and clear, they were completely unobstructed. His cultivation speed was likely dozens of times faster than an ordinary person's. But was this constitution not supposed to be exclusive to her father? Outside of him, it had completely vanished since ancient times. Evan could not help but step back twice. He was struggling to keep his composure. What are you so afraid of, little junior? Scarlet asked, feigning confusion. First, sister, the sages teach that men and women should maintain proper distance. If you have something to say, please just say it and do not get so close. But sister says, now that you have joined the Azure Cloud sect, we are family. And since we are family, I am both your first sister and your elder sister. Where is the impropriety in that? Unless, of course, you are having improper thoughts about your sister? Scarlet's expression turned mock serious. Evan was genuinely flustered. He had lived 2 lifetimes, yes, but he was still inexperienced with women, with a straightforward and awkward disposition around them that made him naturally nervous. And this particular woman was his own first sister. He could not guarantee his thoughts would stay appropriate, which went against everything the sages had taught. Little junior is blushing, how adorable. Scarlet's mischievous streak took over completely. She grabbed Evan's head and ruffled it vigorously. In an instant, his whole body went rigid and he could barely struggle free. An indescribable fragrance filled his senses and sent his mind reeling. For Evan, it was pure torment. He genuinely could not handle it. Little junior! Scarlet's eyes went wide and she let out a startled cry. Scarlet pressed her fingers to several of Evan's acupoints. After a long moment, she carried out another careful examination of his constitution. After a long time, Scarlet finally withdrew her gaze and nodded with deep satisfaction. Just as I thought. Who would have guessed that such an unremarkable little sect could stumble upon a talent of this magnitude? She did not know the reason behind it, but with him on her side, the plan to stand against her father might actually have a real chance. She had to pour every resource she had into nurturing him. It looks like that set of techniques can finally be brought back into the world, Scarlet thought quietly to herself. And while she was laying out her plans, Evan slowly stirred back to consciousness. He pulled himself up in a daze, his expression still blank and disoriented. "Little Junior, you are finally awake. Your sister was worried sick. Please do not push yourself so hard next time. You had been cultivating for too long without rest, and then the surge of yang energy overwhelmed you all at once. That is why you passed out. Cultivation cannot be rushed. It is a long road, and you need to find a balance between effort and rest. Junior, your first and second brothers have taught you the sword arts and alchemy. Now it is your sister's turn to teach you the Tao arts. But I am quite strict. Do you think you can handle it?" Now that she understood Evan's constitution, Scarlet had returned to her composed demeanor, though the faint smile that lingered in her eyes gave off a quietly scheming air. "Probably," Evan told himself, but outwardly he answered with complete sincerity, "Please be as strict as you need to be, first sister. I can handle it." His eyes were full of resolve. Seeing Evan's confident expression, Scarlet could not suppress her mischievous streak. She adjusted her collar slightly and spoke in a suggestive tone. "Very well, then let your sister start by teaching you the joys of dual cultivation." The moment those words landed, Evan's mind went completely blank. "I am kidding. Still just a kid, aren't you? Too easy." Scarlet's voice came again just as Evan's mind was still spinning, snapping him back to reality. Evan let out a quiet internal sigh of relief, then replied earnestly, "Thank you, first sister, for being willing to pass on such rare and precious knowledge. I will study with every ounce of effort I have. I only hope you will not think less of me for my limited aptitude." Limited aptitude? For some reason, hearing Evan describe himself that way made Scarlet want to laugh. If this counted as limited aptitude, then what did that make Sterling? Drew? Marcus? They might as well all be starting from absolute zero. "Since you understand, your sister will not say any more." Seeing Evan so earnest and responsive, Scarlet's expression softened considerably. "Little Junior, your body has already been completely rebuilt dozens of times." Evan's heart jumped. He had not expected Scarlet to see through everything about him at their very first meeting, right down to how many times he had used the ancient god-demon art. It only deepened his conviction that this was a hidden sect of extraordinary power. At that moment, Scarlet's own heart was far from calm. She had once rebuilt her body several times herself, but the searing, hammering agony of that process was something she could never bring herself to revisit even in memory. Scarlet drew a steady breath, her expression turning grave. "Little Junior, I have some understanding of the pain you have endured, and I have no doubts about your will, but I still need to tell you, you must strive to stand at the very top of this world. Most people in this world do not know that it is far less safe than they believe. Before long, the world will reveal a side of itself that has never been seen before, and it will be merciless. In this cultivation world, the human race has its kingdoms and its sects, but humans are not the strongest beings here. The demon clan cultivators have long had their eyes on human territory, and beyond them there are the beast clans, whose numbers actually surpass those of humans. Everything may appear peaceful, but that is only because most people have never seen the cruelty that lies beneath, or because they live at the bottom and cannot see beyond their own world. Evan was a once-in-an-age genius, and Scarlet knew it. Sooner or later, he would face the darkness of this world firsthand. With great power comes great responsibility. Scarlet fell silent for a moment, uncertain whether she should pass on that particular set of techniques to Evan at all. Evan had already been struck speechless. Stand at the very top of the world. What a line. It sounded like something out of a legend, but he meant every word of his reply. "I understand. I will work as hard as I can. I will not let you down, first sister." A fierce fire burned in his eyes. Just then, a lifelike paper butterfly drifted down and landed on Scarlet's shoulder. A low, cryptic voice began to emanate from its motionless wings. As the message played on, Scarlet's expression turned ice cold in an instant, a sharp, frosty light rising in her eyes. "The Demon God Palace again," she said with a cold snort. "They really know how to pick their moment. This time I will make sure none of them walk away in one piece." The words were barely out of her mouth before a strangely shaped weapon materialized in her hand. Even so, Scarlet had not forgotten why she had come in the first place. "Little Junior, your sister has some unruly troublemakers to deal with unexpectedly. I will not be able to teach you in person today. Try to begin on your own following what I pass to you now. When I return, I will guide you properly." Scarlet extended her slender hand and lightly touched a finger to Evan's forehead, transmitting the entire contents of the technique directly into his mind. The supreme Qi cultivation art could rightly be called the greatest Qi cultivation method in existence, but it was extraordinarily difficult to train in. Not only was the starting point hard, it only grew harder from there. But if you truly succeeded in cultivating it, defeating Foundation Realm cultivators at the Qi refinement stage, or defeating core formation cultivators at the foundation stage would be well within reach. Speaking purely in terms of realm potential, it was no exaggeration to say that successfully mastering this art would place one beyond all other cultivators. But the cost it demanded was something almost no one could bear. To begin with, advancing from the Qi refinement stage all the way to the core formation stage was already an enormous challenge for any ordinary cultivator. The supreme Qi cultivation art was hundreds of times harder, because it required constant recultivation from scratch, each cycle expanding one's meridians and inner core. The deeper the foundation built, the greater the heights that could be reached. And if one's energy reserves could be brought to 36 times that of an ordinary cultivator, one would be unmatched within their realm, and defeating opponents above their level would no longer be a dream. Yet having to repeat the cultivation process 36 times was not even the hardest part. The greatest difficulty lay in the fact that every aspect of this technique had to be figured out through one's own comprehension. Every realm, every breakthrough, had to be realized independently. Anything could be cultivated through it, and anything cultivated through it could be pushed to its absolute limit. If your aptitude was exceptional, you could cultivate all the way to immortality. If your aptitude was poor, you might never even advance past the Qi refinement stage, but every realm you reached would be one you had forged entirely on your own. Every step, every level, yours and yours alone. No matter how powerful someone else's technique might be, it was still created by another person. Following it, you could only ever chase them and never truly surpass them. But this art was different. Every step you took, you forged yourself. There was no one to follow, only a path that had never existed before and would never be walked by anyone again. When Evan saw that the technique demanded extraordinary comprehension, he froze on the spot. The repeated recultivation he could accept. He had only just opened his immortal apertures, and having the constant absorption of spiritual energy to support him was no bad thing. But the comprehension requirement? He was someone who did not even possess a spiritual root. How could he possibly have that kind of insight? It was over. He was completely finished. No point dwelling on it. Whatever the obstacles, he could not betray First Sister's goodwill. He would just push through it and try. Evan's head was already throbbing just thinking about it. When he opened his eyes, he found that Scarlet had already gone. Just as Evan was about to attempt cultivating the supreme Qi cultivation art, a familiar figure appeared behind him. Little Junior, long time no see. Why are you not cultivating? Have you been slacking off lately? First brother, you are back. Evan immediately stood and bowed, his eyes lighting up with genuine joy. Sterling was stunned. The Evan standing before him looked like a completely different person. In terms of looks, he was no longer below Sterling's own standard, and in terms of bearing, he actually seemed to edge Sterling out. This is impossible. Sterling was floored. Fine, Evan had taken the title of most effortlessly impressive. Fine, Evan had taken the top sword talent spot in the Azure Cloud sect. But now he could not even hold on to being the best looking. First Sister just came by and guided me in Qi cultivation, Evan said quickly, worried Sterling might misread the situation. What? First Sister was here? Where is she now? The mention of Scarlet made Sterling visibly tense. She has already left. First brother, are you alright? Evan was puzzled by Sterling's reaction. Upon hearing that Scarlet had left, Sterling let out an involuntary sigh of relief. Everyone in the Azure Cloud sect, from top to bottom, was afraid of Scarlet. Not because she was cruel, but because her tongue was absolutely ruthless. Sterling still remembered the days when he would demonstrate his sword arts in front of Scarlet, and she would tear into him so thoroughly that he questioned everything about himself. Decades of hard-won sword technique, and in Scarlet's words, sounded like it was so easy anyone could do it. And it was not just him. Who in the entire sect had not been on the receiving end of one of her cutting remarks? But that was not even the worst part. The worst part was that everything she said was true. So across the entire sect, only Lily was truly close to Scarlet. Everyone else ran the moment they saw her coming. Nothing, just a little surprised. First Sister is a busy person. I did not expect her to have time to guide you, Sterling said casually, brushing it off. But then he turned to Evan. Little Junior, First Sister has the highest talent among all of us. Make sure you learn from her properly. As sharp as Scarlet's tongue was, the honest truth was that she was the only disciple of the Azure Cloud sect who could truly hold her own. She had genuine ability, and Sterling did respect her for it. Now that she was willing to personally guide Evan, that was a good thing. It would keep him from picking up bad habits from lesser teachings. Understood. Thank you for the guidance, first brother, Evan said. Quickly, an awkward silence fell between them. Sterling did not know what to say, and Evan just looked at him calmly. The two of them stared at each other without a word. Sterling shifted his gaze up toward the sky. He desperately wanted to say, Little Junior, what a beautiful view. How about we get it painted? But the word stayed stuck in his throat. Sterling felt genuinely pained. As the first brother of the Azure Cloud sect, having to go beg a painting from his own junior, if word got out, it would be humiliating. Outside cultivators would think the Azure Cloud sect was broke, which, come to think of it, was not wrong. Sterling felt a weight settle over him. Why did coming back to the Azure Cloud sect always make him feel this way? He had not even reached the usual low point of his day, and the gloom was already setting in. Then the memory of everything that had happened in the purified soul range came flooding back, and Sterling clenched his jaw. Shameless as it was, he had no choice. He swallowed his pride and asked, Little Junior, while your brother was away, did you happen to do any painting or writing? Evan was a bit puzzled. He could not see what that had to do with cultivation, but he answered honestly anyway. Cultivation has not been going smoothly lately. I ended up making 2 paintings. Sterling's eyes lit up in an instant. All the awkwardness was swept away by a surge of excitement. The sect wouldn't have to live hand to mouth anymore. You actually did paint, Sterling said, a little surprised. He had not quite expected it to be true. Pushing onward shamelessly, he continued, So where are the paintings? I would like to take a look. Evan, unsuspecting as ever, answered straightforwardly. One is at my place. The other one, second brother asked me to paint it for him. Do you want to see? I can go get it. No, I was just asking. I would never ask a junior for something. Sterling could not quite bring himself to go through with it. He declined with an embarrassed expression, resolving instead to get the other one from Drew. I came mainly to check whether you were applying yourself to your cultivation. Seeing you like this puts my mind at ease. By the way, how has your skin suddenly gotten so good? Sterling patted Evan on the shoulder and asked, "It is all thanks to the advanced technique you gave me, first brother. After each session my skin feels as smooth and firm as a newborn's." Evan did not particularly care about the change in his appearance. He just knew it had something to do with the ancient god-demon art. Sterling's face went completely blank. "A technique? What technique? When did I ever give you an advanced technique? The ancient god-demon art, first brother, have you forgotten?" Evan was confused, but more than that he was stunned. A technique that powerful. And it did not even register in Sterling's eyes. Just how powerful was the greater world beyond, if even Sterling ranked it so low? The moment Sterling heard the words, ancient god-demon art, he turned and walked away without hesitation. He knew this was Evan's talent at work again. He could not ask about it. If he did, the sense of purpose he had worked so hard to rebuild would shatter all over again. Evan was completely lost. Why did First Brother just leave like that? Was he not going to ask about his cultivation progress? In the end, Sterling could not stop himself. He called back over his shoulder, "Little Junior, what do you think of the technique your brother gave you? Is it powerful?" "It is strong, very strong," Evan answered without a moment's hesitation. Sterling quietly let out a long breath. His image as a master of unparalleled standing had been preserved. "Train hard. Do not waste your brother's efforts," Sterling said calmly without turning around, then walked away at a brisk pace. He could not hold it in any longer. He found a deserted spot and let himself cry freely. This junior was not human. He was a monster. A throwaway bargain bin technique worked for Evan just fine. Meanwhile, Sterling could not even get through the beginner section of a legitimate one. What was the point of going on? Why did some people get to come into this world blessed with everything, while others were just here to make up the numbers? And why did the one making up the numbers have to be him? Time slipped by. As the sun sank toward the horizon, Sterling pulled himself together and walked toward Drew's quarters in the fading evening light. People were just built differently. He would focus his energy on caring about the sect's future instead. "Drew, please do not make the same mistakes your brother made. If you do, you will get a thorough scolding from Master at the very least," Sterling repeated to himself, silently hoping Drew had not been as foolish as him. Though even if Drew had painted a portrait of himself, Sterling figured it could not be too bad. It should still fetch at least 6,000 gold taels. Probably not, he reassured himself. Drew was far more level-headed than him. He would definitely respect the original intent of the commission. Sterling shook his head and let the thought go. Soon Sterling knocked on Drew's door. No answer. "Drew," Sterling kept knocking, growing curious. It was already mid-afternoon. Why was he still in bed? Had he been out causing trouble the night before? Just then the door opened, revealing Drew's haggard face with the faint glimmer of dried tears at the corners of his eyes. "First brother, you are finally back." Before Sterling could even ask what was wrong, Drew threw himself into Sterling's arms and held on tight, his nose red and still sniffling. "Do not say anything, first brother. I understand you and only you understand me." Tears streamed down Drew's face like a river that had broken its banks. Sterling had no idea what had gotten into him, but a chill ran up his spine all the same. "Drew, what do you think you are doing? I've always thought of you as a brother." As he spoke, Sterling wrestled free from Drew's embrace and backed away quickly. "Stay back, keep your distance. You are scaring me right now." "Brother, I get it now. I finally understand why you sit on that cliff every night staring into nothing. Our little junior is not the useless one, we are. His talent is just devastating. I still cannot bring myself to cultivate. My will is completely shattered. You are the only one who gets it, first brother." "Alright, enough of this. What kind of behavior is this? If little Lily sees us, we are done for." Sterling snapped at Drew to pull himself together. Was this any way to behave? "Brother, I am not being dramatic. Who could honestly handle this?" Drew had stopped outright crying but was still choking up, his shoulders heaving. "Forget all that for now. Did our little junior give you a painting? Bring it out. I want to see it," Sterling asked, visibly eager. Drew blinked at a loss for how Sterling knew about the painting. Oh well, Evan must have mentioned it. The moment paintings came up, Drew perked right up. He pulled a scroll from his sleeve and Sterling leaned in with an eager smile. "Brother, take a look at my portrait. Handsome, right?" Drew's eyes practically glowed as he waited for Sterling's praise. But the moment the scroll unrolled, Sterling's face darkened to something frightening. The scroll contained only a portrait, no scenery, and no seal from Evan. The person portrayed was Drew himself. And it was not a side profile. It was a full frontal view. A large smiling face dominating the entire scroll. But that was not what froze Sterling in place. It was a line of writing on the scroll. "On this third day of the 4th month, a warm wind blows. Yet my heart grows cold. Alone, I climb the cliff and gaze at the bright moon. This ache in my heart, who could ever understand? Only my senior brother understands." The "who could ever understand" part had been crossed out. The characters were large, written in an emotional hand, with ink blots here and there, and most damningly of all, there were actual scratch marks right through the paper. Sterling drew 3 sharp breaths in a row. His mind went completely blank. He was dumbfounded. Drew, standing beside him, had no idea what was coming. He looked positively smug. "I know my writing is nothing special, first brother, though I suppose it is the best in the Azure Cloud sect. But I never let it go to my head. Go on, give me your honest review. I mean it. Do not go easy on me just because I am your junior. If it deserves criticism, let me have it." Drew was all smiles. Sterling, meanwhile, was still standing there in a complete stupor. "Why so quiet, Sterling? Fine, you caught me. I was just showing off a little. But don't look so stunned by my literary genius. I haven't even hit my peak yet. But in all seriousness, Sterling, I wrote this poem at my lowest point, so of course it would move you. Look at that last line, only my brother truly understands. That's you right there. Drew said all this with a shameless grin, singing his own praises without a hint of embarrassment. What Drew failed to notice, however, was that Sterling had already drawn his sword and was pointing it straight at him. His eyes were bloodshot, both hands gripping the blade tight, and then he brought it down with a thunderous crash. Fortunately, Drew caught on at the very last second and managed to dodge out of the way. But Sterling's eyes were still burning red as he glared at Drew, looking like he wanted to cut him clean in half. Drew had absolutely no idea what was going on. Why did his senior brother want to kill him? Sterling, what's wrong with you? He stammered, still shaken. Wait, what are you doing? What am I doing? I'm going to kill you! Sterling looked like a demon had possessed him. His hair rose without any wind, and the killing intent radiating off him was so dense it seemed to solidify in the air. What is your problem? You can't get all worked up just because my writing is better than yours. Drew still had no clue what he'd done wrong. He jabbed a finger at Sterling and kept yelling. Worked up? I'll work you up, you little waste. The insult snapped Sterling back to his senses. He dropped his sword, charged forward, and launched a vicious kick that sent Drew flying. Before Drew could even react, Sterling was on top of him like a madman, throwing punch after solid punch. Each hit landed so hard it made Drew question whether life was worth living. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, please stop, you're going to kill me, someone stop him. Help! Sterling's lost his mind. He's gone completely insane. Sterling's eyes were practically bleeding, that painting worth tens of thousands in gold, and Drew had reduced it to that. Not even tens of thousands. Even just 10,000 in gold, 1,000 low-grade spirit stones, he could have bought a second-hand high-grade flying sword. That was enough to keep the Azure Cloud sect well-fed and comfortable for 10 generations. And it had all been destroyed by this idiot Drew, who had the audacity to think his writing was good. Are you even human? Don't you fear divine punishment? Drawing a portrait on it, fine, Sterling could live with that. Writing a poem, okay, he could swallow that too. But crossing out a line? You made a mistake so you just scratched it out? And you signed it? Who do you think you are? Do you think you're the Azure Lotus Scholar? Look at yourself. Do you honestly think you deserve to leave your name on something like that? I'm going to beat you to death, you little disaster. Sterling had completely snapped. He just couldn't take it anymore. If Sterling hadn't known the painting's true value, he might have actually complimented his junior. But now that he did know, he wanted to beat Drew until there was nothing left inside him. Please stop, Sterling. I'm begging you, please stop. I promise I'll never show off in front of you again. Drew curled up on the ground, crying and screaming, begging Sterling to stop. His mood sank even deeper. He was pretty sure his face had been knocked crooked. How was he supposed to smile charmingly after this? Sterling, this isn't over. Not by a long shot. The scene shifted. Back in his quarters, Sterling couldn't stop the pain from gnawing at him. A perfectly fine painting, ruined by his junior brother. If he hadn't known the painting's true worth, it probably wouldn't have hurt this badly. But he did know. A painting worth tens of thousands in gold was now probably worthless. It was all Drew's fault. Why did he have to be clever and write a poem on it? And if he was going to write one, why did he have to cross out a line at the end? And to top it all off, his cheap ink had stained the whole scroll black. Sterling's fist had clenched again without him even noticing. At that moment, there was only one thing on his mind, beating Drew all over again. But then, forget it. What was done was done. He'd already let off some steam. There was no point staying angry. What really mattered was making sure their money-obsessed master never found out. If Master Taihua learned the truth, Drew probably wouldn't live to see tomorrow. Sterling let out a long, helpless breath. After thinking it over, Sterling decided to bury the whole thing. He'd stick to the story that Evan never gave Drew any painting. After all, Drew was still his junior brother. He wasn't ready to bury someone younger than himself. Just as Sterling was plotting how to get another painting out of Evan, his youngest junior sister's voice rang out bright and clear as birdsong. He looked up to see Lily peeking her head through the open doorway, her eyes bright as stars fixed on him. Sterling, what happened between you and Drew? I just ran into him and he was covered in bruises, sobbing his heart out with his whole body shaking. He was wiping his tears with his soaked sleeve while sprinting straight toward Master's place. He kept muttering something about telling on you. Lily's bright eyes were full of confusion as she looked up at Sterling. Sterling looked like he'd just heard the unthinkable. His mouth fell open and he turned his head slowly, like a rusted machine grinding to life. You're saying Drew went to Master's quarters? Lily's wide eyes were full of confusion. She didn't understand why he'd suddenly asked that, but she answered honestly. Yeah, Sterling, is something wrong? Sterling was silent for a very long time. Finally, he let out a helpless sigh. You brought this on yourself. The beating Drew took from him was painful, sure, but he would have gotten over it. Now though, Drew was probably going to be bedridden for months. Don't blame me for this one, Drew. The scene shifted to Master Taihua's quarters. Drew started wailing from a good distance away, his voice carrying all the way to the door. Master, your disciple is being beaten to death. Come out, please come out. Master Taihua opened the door with a puzzled look, only to find Drew hobbling toward him, bruised and battered from head to toe. None of his usual easy elegance anywhere to be seen. It was like he'd been through a disaster. Drew, what happened to you? Who did this? Master, you have to stand up for me. Drew couldn't hold it in any longer. Tears flooded his eyes like a river breaking through a dam, streaming down his cheeks. He threw his arms around Master Taihua and buried his face against him, smearing a generous mixture of tears and snot all over his master's robes. Master Taihua instinctively wanted to pry Drew off him, but he held himself back. Every disciple in this sect was precious to him. He scolded them plenty, sure, but if anyone dared lay a hand on one of his disciples, he would never let it go. Alright, come inside and tell me everything. Master, it was Sterling. He was jealous of my writing and beat me up. Drew's sobbing was loud enough to break hearts. Look at my face, Master. My mouth is practically crooked. Sterling? Master Taihua blinked, genuinely thrown off. That didn't add up. Sure, Sterling could be a bit full of himself sometimes, but he would never beat up his juniors like this, especially not this badly. What did you do to make your senior brother hit you like this? He assumed it must have started with some argument. Master, I'm the one who got beaten half to death and you're taking a side. I didn't start anything. If he can hit me for no reason today, tomorrow he'll be coming for your position. Drew cried out, his words coming out a little slurred. Drew, calm down. What actually happened? Tell me from the beginning. Master Taihua kept his patience and pressed for the full story. Nothing happened. Sterling's just crazy. Evan painted a portrait of me. Sterling took one look at it and then he tried to beat me to death. Isn't that completely unprovoked? Evan painted you a portrait. Master Taihua hadn't caught everything, but the moment he heard the word painting, his attention sharpened. A strange feeling crept over him. A vague and inexplicable sense of dread. He laughed quietly at himself. How bad could it be? At worst, it was a portrait of Drew. He had already braced himself mentally. After the incident with Sterling, nothing should have surprised him anymore. He knew his disciples well enough. He kept his voice calm. Do you have the painting with you? Let me see it. Thinking his complaint had landed, Drew happily pulled the scroll from his sleeve. This is it! I grabbed it back from Sterling on purpose to use as evidence. The moment Master Taihua saw the scroll, his entire face went dark. It was late spring, the weather should have felt warm and mild, but Drew suddenly felt like he'd been dropped into the dead of winter, shivering uncontrollably. You were the one who wrote that poem on it? Master Taihua said quietly. That's right. Drew was puzzled by the question, but nodded earnestly to confirm it was his own work. And you scratched out that line? And signed your name? Master Taihua's voice was low and steady. Well done, Drew. Very well done. The veins in his temples were bulging, and his eyes had gone cold and hollow. Something felt very wrong. Master Taihua's reaction was identical to Sterling's. Drew swallowed instinctively, and cold sweat began pouring down his body. In a matter of seconds, he was completely soaked, as if someone had pulled him out of a river. Master Taihua stood in the center of the hall, eyes burning as he stared at the ruined painting. He examined every stain again and again, his trembling fingers brushing over the scroll. After confirming for the third time that Drew was responsible, the air was thick with suppressed fury, like a string wound so tight it could snap at any moment. Without a word, Master Taihua turned and walked slowly toward the hall doors. The heavy wooden doors slammed shut with a boom. The hall fell completely silent, broken only by the sound of two people breathing. Drew's heart sank. He sensed something terrible coming and opened his mouth to explain. Master Taihua reached into his sleeve and yanked out a massive spiked club. The cold glint of it cut through the air, and his eyes blazed with a fury that seemed ready to devour everything in the room. Master, what are you doing? I'm scared. Help! My master is trying to kill me. Master, please stop. I am going to die. Help! He's lost his mind too. A full quarter of an hour later, Drew lay face down on the stone floor of the hall, like a body from which all spirit had been drained. A mixture of blood, tears, and snot trickled from the corner of his mouth, spreading into a dark red stain across the cold stone. If not for the occasional twitch of his body, one might have mistaken him for a corpse. Drew's mind was barely holding together, drifting at the edge of collapse. Master Taihua's thunderous roar still echoed in his ears. You little wretch, do you have any idea how close your senior brother and I came to being captured and violated by a male bear demon, all to gather a few dozen silver worth of herbs? Violated. Do you understand what that means? And you sat here in comfort and ruined something worth over 10,000 in gold with a few careless strokes. Master Taihua's voice exploded like a clap of thunder. His eyes were bloodshot, his mouth stretched wide, teeth bared like a beast ready to tear someone apart. He grinned savagely and closed in. No, I'm not done. I need one more round to feel better. Master, please, I was wrong. Drew, who had been lying motionless like a corpse, jolted awake and scrambled frantically into the corner of the hall. It was at that moment that Sterling finally arrived. One look at the scene inside the hall told him everything. Drew was propped up on both hands, covered in blood, limp as a snake with a broken spine. Master Taihua stood over him with bloodshot eyes, the spiked club raised high above his head, as if he intended to smash Drew and the hall together into rubble. Master, you have to stop, you're going to kill him. But Master Taihua had already gone somewhere beyond reason. Sterling, don't stop me. He has no idea what we went through. Master, Evan painted another one, Sterling said quickly, unrolling the scroll as he spoke. A landscape. A very valuable one. The scroll unfurled slowly in the glow of the evening light, revealing a painting of a night scene empty of any human figure. An overcast sky cast pale moonlight across distant mountains and nearby pine trees, as if the entire nighttime world of the Azure Cloud sect had been captured and sealed within the paper. At the mention of another painting, Master Taihua froze. The spiked club slipped from his grip and clattered onto the floor. That's my Evan, always dependable. This is going to make me cry. Master Taihua's hands were shaking beyond his control, trembling like two leaves caught in the autumn wind. His eyes filled with hot tears that looked ready to spill at any moment. He slowly reached out, and the moment his fingertips made contact with the scroll Sterling held toward him, he flinched as if he'd touched a live wire. Then he carefully reached out again, handling it not like a piece of paper, but like a priceless and fragile treasure. Wonderful. The other disciples will be taken care of now. Indeed, high-grade cultivation arts too. Nearby, Drew had barely survived. but he just couldn't make sense of it. It was just a painting. Was it really worth all of this? Was one painting really worth more to them than his life? Drew stared at them with deep, wounded eyes. He felt absolutely awful. But then, when Drew heard them talking about trading the painting for high-grade cultivation arts, he was convinced they had both lost their minds. Evan's painting was perfectly ordinary. How could it possibly be worth that much? The whole thing was absurd. Catching Drew's bewildered look, Master Taihua let out a cold snort. For Evan's sake, we'll consider this matter closed, but remember, never tamper with someone else's work again. Your junior brother's paintings are worth a fortune. Drew forced himself to his feet. Despite being battered all over, he looked like a cornered animal, eyes blazing with anger and defiance. If you want to beat me, just beat me. Don't pin some made-up crime on me. I know what this is really about. You're both jealous because my writing is better than yours. What painting in the world is worth tens of thousands in gold? If you're going to make something up, at least put in some effort. Drew's shaking finger stabbed toward the scroll Master Taihua had been cradling like a relic. Master, I know you've always favored Sterling, but this level of bias, I won't accept it. Drew's voice carried a tremor of real sorrow. By the time he finished, he abandoned all dignity and broke into full heaving sobs, tears rolling down uncontrollably, mixing with the blood and grime already on his face, a truly pitiful sight. All right, Drew, Master already said we're moving on. Sterling let out a helpless sigh, his eyes drifting between Drew and Master Taihua. He knew Drew well. Once pushed past a certain point, he was impossible to rein in. But Sterling was the senior brother. He couldn't just stand there and watch Drew get beaten to death. No, I'm not moving on, and don't you dare act like the good guy here, Sterling. Drew's eyes burned with contempt, his voice sharp and cutting. We're not done talking about you hitting me either. Drew suddenly threw his fist towards Sterling to get some payback. Drew, calm down please, Sterling urged patiently, though inwardly he was groaning. Evan's paintings really are worth that much? Nonsense. No painting in the world is worth tens of thousands in gold. Do you think I'm some backwater fool who's never seen anything? If you're both so sure, then let's make a bet. If that painting really is worth that much, I'll slap my own face crooked myself. But if it's not, you both have to let me hit you back. Are you sure about this? Sterling asked in disbelief, his brow furrowed, eyes filled with concern and resignation. Master Taihua slowly shook his head, a trace of pity in his voice. Some people you just can't help. Absolutely, completely, and without a doubt. Drew's voice rang out hard and certain, pouring out every last drop of his rage and wounded pride. Then, to top it all off, he raised his middle finger. The veins on his forehead stood out clearly, a sure sign that he had completely lost his composure. Drew, you truly won't learn until you've seen it with your own eyes. Let's go down the mountain right now. Master Taihua had been itching to hit him again but couldn't find an excuse. Now Drew had handed him one on a silver platter. The setting sun washed the stone steps of the azure cloud sect in deep gold. Drew dragged his battered body step by step toward the mountain gate, his shadow stretching long behind him. And somewhere beyond that dying light, a steady face seemed to linger, frozen forever in the past. 7 days passed in the blink of an eye. Deep in the mountains, Master Taihua walked along a winding trail with a light step, clutching a bulging storage sack. Inside it were resources enough to completely transform the azure cloud sect. A single painting from Evan had been traded for high-grade cultivation art manuals for every member of the sect, along with a full supply of training resources. Sterling, however, moved like a man expecting an ambush. He stayed 3 steps behind Master Taihua, his eyes sweeping the surrounding forest like a hawk. Every birdsong and falling leaf sent a chill down his spine. Master, I'm a little scared. There aren't any demon beasts in these woods, are there? Master Taihua spun around, his face full of disdain. What is there to be afraid of? This isn't the purified soul range. The big ones capable of turning the world upside down were all wiped out by human cultivators long ago. What's left out here are mindless wild boars and mountain cats. Master Taihua looked at Sterling's battlefield-ready posture and couldn't help but twitch. He genuinely couldn't understand how his normally composed, dependable senior disciple could be such a coward. Think about what we accomplished on this trip. That'll take your mind off the fear. Sterling paused at that, then something clicked behind his eyes. A wide smile spread across his face. Evan is incredible, he said, unable to hold it back. One painting and it got us high-grade cultivation arts for the entire sect. With these, the sect's future is wide open. Taihua? Just as the two of them were imagining the sect's bright future, a low, probing female voice cut through the silence like the flicker of a snake's tongue. Master Taihua and Sterling turned at the same time. A woman in violet robes stepped out from the shadows. Her freckled face in the dim light looked like scattered stardust, yet somehow it only made the sneer in her eyes stand out more sharply. Behind her trailed several young disciples, fresh-faced and uncertain like a flock of fledglings just out of the nest, wearing arrogance that clearly took some effort to maintain. The woman paused, her gaze cutting toward Master Taihua like a blade. The curve at the corner of her lips slowly widened into a mocking smile. All these years apart and you still look like a pauper. Even your robes are patched up. Master Taihua's expression turned cold. He hadn't expected to run into this woman here of all places. What are the two of you doing out here? Don't tell me you're heading to the sword tournament? Before Master Taihua could answer, the woman in violet burst into laughter, her face lit up with self-satisfaction and mockery. Oh, forgive me. I forgot your sect still hasn't reached the 3rd tier. She drew out each syllable, with obvious relish. At this rate, forget about entering the sword tournament. Your sect will probably be dissolved in a matter of days. The woman's expression turned cold, a venomous glint flashing in her eyes. Thank goodness our fellow disciple didn't listen to our master back then and tie herself to a failure like you. Her partner now is worth 10 of you. Her gaze shifted to Sterling, dripping with condescension. Sterling, I don't mean any offense, but what exactly does being handsome get you? It won't fill your stomach. Put that energy into your swordsmanship. Don't embarrass your master. Whatever else you might say about him, Taihua was once considered a standout talent in Greenreach Province's sword world. The woman delivered her backhanded lesson to Sterling while managing to slip in another jab at Master Taihua in the same breath. Sterling watched the whole display with a furrowed brow. A cold glint passed through his eyes. He gave a short, icy laugh. You're absolutely right. Being less attractive does seem to make a person more formidable. Looking at you, it's plain as day. The woman's expression shifted instantly. Her freckles seemed to deepen with fury, as if something were crawling beneath her skin. A low animal growl rumbled from her throat. Are you calling me ugly? The words had barely left his mouth before she shot forward like an arrow released from a bow, closing the distance to Sterling in an instant. He instinctively twisted to the side, but she raised her hand and brought her palm crashing down toward his face like a hammer. The blow tore through the air with a shriek, as if it could shatter bone. She let a vicious smile curl across her lips. Insolent little brat, if your master won't discipline you, I'll do it for him. Back off! Master Taihua's voice rolled out like thunder, each word carrying the weight of a lightning strike. Nobody touches my disciple. But to the woman in violet, Master Taihua's seemingly fierce assault felt like blows from a child, every strike caught and deflected without effort. Is this all you've got? Her voice oozed contempt, a twisted smile spread across her face, and a wild, cold light flickered in her eyes. Boring, time to end this. The moment the words left her mouth, she clenched her right fist. Dense black lightning erupted from her palm, coiling up her arm like a serpent, and she drove it full force into Master Taihua. Master Taihua's mouth burst open with a spray of blood. His body rocketed backward like a cannonball, carving a vivid red arc through the air. Black lightning crackled and coiled around him like chains. You haven't improved in looks or in strength, Taihua. One more punch and you're finished. Master! A flash of fury crossed Sterling's eyes as he moved to act, but the woman's young disciples stepped in to block him. The woman smiled with quiet satisfaction. Relax. I wouldn't waste my future over the likes of him, but if you truly want revenge for what happened back then, bring your disciples to the sword tournament. I'll have my disciples cut yours down on the stage fair and square, though I doubt you have the nerve. She turned and swept away with her disciples, as if none of it had been worth her time. Left behind were Master Taihua, collapsed on the ground like a broken man, and Sterling standing still trying to make sense of what had just happened. A long silence passed. The mountain wind kept howling, sweeping up dead leaves from the ground, but it couldn't clear the exhaustion that had settled over Master Taihua. The excitement from before was completely gone from his eyes, replaced by a deep, hollow self-reproach. Sterling, having a useless master like me, you and your brothers must resent it deeply. If not for how weak I am, none of you would be so far behind. Master Taihua covered his eyes with both hands, jaw clenched tight, his voice trembling like a leaf in the autumn wind. Old man, quit feeling sorry for yourself. Get up so I can treat your wounds. Sterling might not have known everyone's character perfectly, but he knew Master Taihua better than anyone. After all these years together, one setback wasn't going to break him. A little setback like this won't keep you down. Now stop being dramatic and let go, that hurts. Sterling and Master Taihua sat side by side in silence. The setting sun stretched their shadows long across the ground, and the distant cry of crows added to the stillness around them. Sterling pulled his thin collar tighter, swallowed a few times, and finally spoke. Master, I've made up my mind. Sterling drew a slow, deep breath, eyes fixed ahead with quiet certainty. I'm going to enter the Greenreach Province sword tournament. You? Have you lost your mind? Master Taihua wasn't trying to be harsh. He simply knew Sterling's limits. With his current ability entering the Greenreach Province sword tournament, didn't he care about embarrassing himself? Sterling, don't act out of impulse. That woman is just a troublemaker from my old sect. She's not worth it. Master, you've misunderstood. It's not because of her. Then why? Master Taihua was genuinely alarmed. Last time you went the entire tournament without a single real match, but you saw those competitors yourself. They were in a completely different league, and now that woman is out there watching for a chance to strike. Sterling's expression was calm. Something indescribable shone in the depth of his eyes. It's because of Evan. Evan? Master Taihua's brow furrowed, confusion crossing his face. No matter how he thought about it, he couldn't figure out what any of this had to do with Evan. Sterling didn't answer right away. He simply closed his eyes, letting the last light of the sun fall across his face, wrapping him in a warm golden glow, like a figure from another world, untouched by dust. Yes, ever since I got to know Evan, I finally understood what it truly means to be a genius. He's like a brilliant star, shining alone in the night sky, and yet somehow, he lit the way forward for me. Compared to him, everything I had worked for before felt so small. Sterling paused, then continued. That's when I truly understood just how wide the gap between myself and real genius actually is. He's not only gifted but unshakably strong inside. He never backs down from difficulty. Every conversation with him left me shaken and inspired in a way I'd never felt before. Sterling's eyes snapped open. A resolve unlike anything before burned in them. Yes, the loss today was real, but standing before someone like that, How can I give up so easily? Every challenge is a test, every defeat is a lesson, even just getting a little closer to that level is enough. Otherwise, what kind of life would this be? This tournament, consider it my way of proving to myself that I'm serious. Master Taihua looked at him, surprised and quietly moved. He had never imagined that the usually steady, reserved Sterling could carry such fierce determination toward a goal. The scene shifted to Evan's quarters at the Azure Cloud sect. A sharp sword cry rang out across the wide, empty clifftop. A dazzling burst of swordlight tore through the air at ferocious speed, dragging a torrent of sword energy in its wake, dense with killing intent and cold pressure, and it came crashing down on a distant boulder. The impact was thunderous, like something catastrophic had been dropped from the sky. A massive wave of energy blasted outward in every direction, and the enormous boulder was reduced to dust in an instant. Evan calmly sheathed his sword. He had run through the training 72 times in full, and he had finally broken through to the second level of chi cultivation. So even just reaching the second level does this much damage? Evan stood in the clearing where the boulder had just been. Nothing remained where the rocket stood, only a faint ripple of spiritual energy still drifting through the air. The world of cultivators is something else entirely, Evan murmured to himself, his voice carrying the wide-eyed wonder of a child with a barely perceptible tremor underneath. That's enough for today. Big sister always says to balance work and rest. With that, Evan turned and headed back toward his small courtyard. What Evan didn't know was that shortly after he left, a shadowy head poked out cautiously from behind a nearby rock. It was Sterling. He tightened the black cloth wrapped around his head and muttered, "I absolutely cannot get caught. That would be humiliating beyond all recovery." After confirming that Evan had truly gone to rest, Sterling crept out and began studying the sword marks Evan had left behind during his training. Evan managed to figure things out from sword marks that were made up on the spot. These right here are the genuine article, real marks left by a true genius. They've got to help me break through the river flow sword art. Just as Sterling was struggling to make any sense of the sword marks, something caught his eye in the distance, a book resting on a far-off rock. It looked like the pirated copy he had given Evan earlier. The moon cast an inky light over the back mountain cliff. Drew sat alone at the summit, the way he always did late at night, lost in a heavy, aching kind of sadness. Just then, a familiar figure appeared. It was Sterling. "There's no need to comfort me, Sterling. I know how things are. I just want some time alone." "I'm not here to comfort you." Drew blinked, thrown off. "Then what are you here for? To laugh at me?" "Sterling, what right do you have to laugh at me? In front of Evan, you're just as useless as I am." His mood sank even lower. But before Drew could ask anything, Sterling planted both hands behind him, tilted his face up toward the sky, and struck a strange pose. Drew stared at him, baffled. What was that supposed to mean? Severe depression? Drew himself had taken a pretty devastating blow today, but at least he was handling it by sitting quietly alone. He never expected Sterling to have completely cracked under the pressure. Down below the cliff, Lily and Marcus watched the whole scene in silence. To think both of them had come up to the back mountain. What a perfectly matched pair of disasters. "Lily, whatever you do, don't ever follow their example. Big sister always said you're the one person in this sect who can actually be counted on." Lily glanced at Marcus, then turned to look up at Sterling and Drew on the clifftop. Her little brow knit even tighter. Her eyes were full of questions she didn't know how to ask. While Marcus Wang was quietly pushing himself through his training, Master Taihua returned with news that caught him completely off guard. He came back from outside the mountain looking travel-worn, yet there was an excitement on his face he could barely contain. "Marcus, your master went down the mountain today and signed you and young Evan up for the Greenreach Sword Tournament." Master Taihua pulled two finely crafted entry passes from his sleeve and held them up with a proud grin. "These are your entry passes, your tickets into the Greenreach Sword Tournament. 1 month from now, you two will be heading to Greenreach to show the world what you've got." Marcus slowly opened his eyes, and after hearing his master's words, he just froze. Then he shot to his feet like he'd been stung. "What?" Marcus stared at Master Taihua with wide eyes, completely in disbelief. "The Greenreach Sword Tournament? Are you serious right now?" Marcus felt the blood drain from his face and nearly lost his footing. "Come on, Master, you can't be serious. Wasn't that whole thing just me talking big?" Master Taihua furrowed his brow, giving Marcus a thoroughly puzzled look. "I was just showing off, Master." Marcus clapped both hands over his head and let out a desperate yell. He never imagined his master would actually take his bluster seriously. Did the old man have any idea how weak he still was? Walking into that tournament would be handing his head to someone on a silver platter. "That was just you showing off too?" Master Taihua finally caught on and his face fell. All of Marcus's usual composure had evaporated. "You know exactly what level I'm at. How could you do this?" Master Taihua scratched the back of his head with an apologetic wince. "Well, this is a problem. Submitting a fraudulent registration gets you thrown in jail by the Greenreach authorities." Marcus was practically hopping mad. Eyes red, voice cracking. "I don't care. Figure out how to cancel it, you old fool. Something like this can't just be canceled. You'll have to make do and compete." "Make do? Are you kidding me? You lunatic!" Marcus snapped completely and launched himself at Master Taihua like a man possessed. The scene shifted to Evan, who stood with his eyes stretched wide, one trembling finger pointed at himself. "Master, are you saying you want me to enter the Greenreach Sword Tournament?" Master Taihua wore a warm smile and gave Evan a gentle pat on the shoulder, his voice full of encouragement. "That's right. I've already registered you and Marcus. This is a rare opportunity. A chance for you both to see what the world beyond these mountains has to offer." Evan couldn't help but feel a knot of anxiety forming. He had barely been cultivating for 2 months, and already he was being entered into a major tournament. If he lost, the embarrassment would be hard to bear. "Evan," Master Taihua said, his tone suddenly firm and pointed, "what kind of cultivator is afraid of a single fight? If you're scared of everything, how do you ever expect to walk the path of cultivation?" "Master, it's not that I'm scared exactly. It's just after all this time training, I've only grasped the 4 Thunder sword forms. I'm worried about bringing shame to the sect." It wasn't that Evan was frightened. This kind of tournament was never fought to the death, just to first contact, but the thought of embarrassing the Azure Cloud sect weighed on him heavily. "Evan, don't worry about that. I'm not sending you to this tournament to win first place. I'm sending you to sharpen your spirit. You spend every day here practicing against that sword scar on the cliff, no matter how many techniques you figure out on your own. Without real combat experience, you will never truly grow. Remember this, Evan. Real enemies don't stand still and wait for you to kill them. They won't give you the chance to run through all your moves before fighting back," Master Taihua said seriously. "If you just sit on that cliff practicing by yourself, you'll only know theory. When it comes to a real fight, you might not even have the guts to draw your sword." "I understand, Master," Evan said, and he meant it. He felt that every word Master Taihua spoke today carried real weight. He had been spending his days at the base of that cliff studying the sword, alchemy, and formation arts. But without putting any of it into practice, he would never truly improve. He would remain nothing more than a theorist. After all, it didn't matter how sophisticated your knowledge was. If you lacked the courage to act when it counted, the path of cultivation meant nothing. That's my disciple. Truth be told, you haven't been doing as poorly as your senior brother Marcus makes it sound. He just says that to keep you pushing yourself. "I know, Master. Marcus has always looked out for me," Evan said with a sincere nod. He then took his leave of Master Taihua. With only 1 month left, he had to throw himself into training. He refused to disgrace the sect. Master Taihua knew he had to get word to Scarlet Zhao about the tournament. Without her backing, even Evan could be in serious danger crossing that woman's disciples. But with Scarlet watching from behind the scenes, there would be nothing to worry about. Watching Evan's figure grow smaller in the distance, Master Taihua let out a quiet sigh. "I really haven't been much of a master, have I?" Meanwhile, deep within an unnamed mountain range, the purple-haired woman from before was putting her disciples through their sword training. She gave a satisfied nod. "You've all made real progress. At the Greenreach Sword Tournament you should place well. The spots for the 10 Kingdoms Academy are on the line, and with them the future of our sect." Her young disciples exchanged glances and laughed with easy confidence. "Relax, Master. Taking the top spot in a little Greenreach tournament, that's nothing for us." The purple-haired woman's expression darkened instantly, and she laid into them. "You think Greenreach is only as strong as what you can see? The most powerful sects you know about are only the ones they've chosen to let you know about. I've come across intelligence that within Greenreach itself there is a hidden sect, the Great Sun Sword Sect. Their strength runs deep. Even the Supreme Void Sword Sovereign, the strongest figure you know of, wouldn't even qualify to guard their front gate. But their power grew so great that it alarmed the Emperor of the Grand Xia dynasty, who moved swiftly to break them apart into 7 branches. According to reliable sources, one of those branches is lying low somewhere in Greenreach right now, waiting for the day they can restore the Great Sun Sword Sect to its former glory." The purple-haired woman let out a cold snort, her voice cutting like a blade. "Against a hidden sect like that, do you honestly think you can win?" Within the territory of the 4 Thunder Sword sect in Greenreach, a middle-aged man in a dark robe spoke with unreadable calm. "The princess of the Grand Xia dynasty has run away and fled into enemy territory, placing herself in great danger. By order of the Xia Emperor, I have 1 month to bring her back. Intelligence suggests she is currently hiding somewhere within your jurisdiction in Greenreach." "The princess? Do you mean the first princess who has been missing for so long?" The Four Seasons Taoist lowered his head, his wide robes drifting in the breeze. The corner of the middle-aged man's mouth lifted slightly, a quiet laugh escaping him, though there was a flash of something sharp in his eyes. "What are you thinking? It's the 10th princess. The first princess reached a level beyond anything you or I could touch long ago. She could stand perfectly still and let the 2 of us attack her all day without taking a scratch. Where's the danger in that? Remember, this must be handled in complete secrecy. Once it's done, your sect's relocation to the Grand Xia will be all but guaranteed." The Four Seasons Taoist's eyes lit up instantly, blazing like lightning in a dark sky, his excitement barely contained. "Rest assured, my lord, this is a once-in-a-generation opportunity for the 4 Thunder Sword sect. I will give everything I have to see it done, and I will not disappoint the Emperor or yourself." The scene shifted to a pawn shop in Greenreach, where the faint scent of sandalwood hung in the air. Antiques and scroll paintings lined every wall, and the warm candlelight made everything feel timeless and refined. A strikingly beautiful young woman with snow-white hair and a purple dress stood before a painting, still as a lotus flower blooming in undisturbed water, her eyes sparkling like the brightest stars in a night sky, utterly transfixed by the handsome portrait of Marcus Wang hanging on the wall. Just then, a clean-shaven middle-aged man in an embroidered robe approached the shopkeeper, Jin, and spoke in a low voice. "My mistress has taken a liking to this painting. What are you asking for it?" Jin's face immediately spread into a flattering smile. To be honest with you, I paid a considerable sum for this painting from a reclusive master, and had every intention of keeping it as the crown jewel of this shop, something to be passed down for generations. But seeing the two of you, clearly people of refinement and taste, and given my great personal admiration for the Azure Lotus Scholar's work, I suppose I can bear to part with it. As it happens, we're in the middle of our anniversary sale. You can take this painting home for just 100,000 taels of gold. The man froze on the spot, his mouth falling open without a sound coming out. He simply could not believe what he had just heard. A painting worth 100,000 taels of gold? The man drew a sharp breath, his chest heaving like an enraged lion, and stepped right up to Jin, eyes burning with fury. Has this man lost his mind over money? 100,000 taels of gold for one painting? This is outright robbery. Who do you think we are? Easy marks, you can fleece however you please. Felix, mind your manners. The white-haired woman in purple spoke up gently, her voice flowing like a clear stream, carrying a quiet, undeniable authority. A moment later, that same clear and melodic voice came again, calm and unhurried. I do like this painting, and it is indeed a new work by the Azure Lotus Scholar. But you can't use my fondness for the artist as an excuse to name any price you like. That's hardly fair dealing. She slowly turned around, and her face was something otherworldly, every feature perfectly formed, her skin aglow with a soft radiance, her brows like distant mountains, and her eyes like still autumn water, dimming everything else in the room by comparison. Her pale violet eyes shone like two flawless amethysts, brimming with intelligence and spirit, as though they could see through every pretense in the world. How about 30,000 taels? That should be a fair price. The man's expression shifted to pure panic. He crossed the distance in 2 quick strides and leaned close to the woman, his voice dropping to a hushed, strained whisper. Your Highness, have you lost your mind? 30,000 taels of gold for a single painting? The woman raised her pale violet eyes calmly. You don't understand, this is art. And how many times have I told you, don't call me your highness out here? Out here I'm the ink fairy. Of course 30,000 taels it is, Jin said with a satisfied smile. Will that be a deferred arrangement or cash on the spot? A painting he had picked up for 10,000 taels had just flipped for 3 times that. The woman smiled just as contentedly. Another masterpiece by the Azure Lotus Scholar was hers. It wasn't a pure landscape, which was a little disappointing, but anything from her idol was enough. Even if she failed to get into the 10 Kingdoms Academy, this trip away from home had already been worth it. At the same time, deep within the purified soul range, the sky hung heavy and dark as ink-soaked silk, thick clouds churning without rest, and a searing bolt of blue-white lightning split the heavens like a blade wielded by a god. With devastating force it punched straight through a colossal red-faced baboon the size of a small mountain, and the bolt, unspent, slammed into the earth below, reducing countless boulders to fine dust. The one who had unleashed that lethal strike was a young, striking man whose brow carried an air of unruly pride. A white-haired elder came up slowly behind him, his voice full of admiration. Impressive, truly impressive. To have fully mastered all of the 4 Thundersword forms in less than a year, even across the whole Jin Kingdom, that marks you as a genius among geniuses. The young man's expression didn't shift. His sharp gaze stayed fixed on the scorched forest ahead, his voice carrying a note of mild disdain. The monsters in Greenreach are pathetically weak. One hit and they're gone, no challenge at all. The purified soul range is barely enough to test the full power of the 4 thunder forms. That said, the real credit goes to your teaching, master. Without your guidance, I could never have grasped the heart of the 4 thunder sword art in such a short time. As he finished speaking, Victor sheathed his sword smoothly, the blade meeting the scabbard with a clean ring, then bowed to the elder with composed formality, a gesture carrying genuine respect. The elder waved a hand, a gentle smile on his face, his tone easy and warm. Save the flattery, your growth is what matters most. A flicker of puzzlement crossed the young man's eyes and he gathered his courage. Master, there's something I've never quite understood. The sword arts of our great Sun Sword sect are far superior to the 4 Thunder Sword art in every way, in power, in depth, in everything. So why have you had me learn this lesser technique at all? Victor, listen carefully. Our sect was once unrivaled. Even the Supreme Void Sword Sovereign, the greatest sword master across all 10 kingdoms, once came to us to learn. But because we grew too powerful, the Grand Xia dynasty used every means at its disposal to bring us down completely, and I have been hiding here in this small corner of Greenreach ever since. All of it in hopes that one day our sect might rise again. But to restore our former glory, you must first obtain the great sun demon slaying sword art. The art has long since vanished from the world, but if you can enter the 10 Kingdoms Academy and find the demon slaying scripture, inside it you will find the location of our founder's burial place. Once that's in your hands, the great sun demon slaying sword art can be brought back into the world, and the great sun sword sect can be reborn. To keep your identity as the last heir of the sect hidden, you must compete using another sect's techniques to earn your place at the 10 Kingdoms Academy. Fortunately, that shouldn't prove too difficult for you. I understand, Master. Victor paused, then continued with complete confidence. As for the Greenreach Sword Tournament, I don't say this out of arrogance, but I could take first place with one hand tied behind my back. The elder shook his head. Against ordinary cultivators from Greenreach, perhaps you could, but don't let that breed blind arrogance. There is always someone stronger out there. Don't let yourself lose to some newly risen cultivator. The scene shifted to the rear cliffs of the Azure Cloud sect, where Evan staggered to his feet, shirtless and covered in wounds and dried blood. Not enough. Still nowhere near enough, he muttered, staring ahead with quiet resolve. With only 1 month left before the tournament, he had to grind every waking moment. His natural talent was limited. If he didn't make up for it with sheer effort, what chance did he have against others? His body refinement, his alchemy, and his immortal apertures were holding steady, but his grasp of the Four Thunder Sword intent and his senior sister's supreme tree cultivation art were still far too rough. Still at the second stage of QI cultivation, how was he supposed to compete like this? This tournament isn't about proving how great I am, he told himself. It's about not letting down the people who have worked so hard for me. You've got this, Evan, push through. There's a lot that can be done in 1 month. Just as Evan tightened his grip on his sword and prepared to keep training, Master Tai Hua came rushing over in a panic. Terrible news, my disciple. The organizers just sent word the tournament has been moved up. It starts the day after tomorrow. Come with me. We need to leave right now. The color drained from Evan's face, a flash of pure panic in his eyes. Master, you must be joking. I haven't even started to prepare properly. The moment it sank in that the tournament had been moved up, Evan completely fell apart and flatly refused to participate under any circumstances. But Master Tai Hua, citing that withdrawing after registration would bring punishment upon the sect, grabbed Evan by the back of his trousers and hauled him out of the sect. In the pale light of early morning, the first rays of dawn cut through the eastern sky like a blade, painting the rolling mountain ridges in flowing gold, and a breeze rolled over the peaks carrying the clean scent of leaves and grass, sweeping away the last threads of night mist. Sunlight filtered through the lingering haze, lighting up the winding mountain path and the somewhat disheveled figures of master and disciple making their way along it. Evan looked over at Master Tai Hua with a puzzled expression. Master, where's Marcus? Wasn't he supposed to come with us to the tournament? Master Tai Hua didn't turn around, only quickened his pace, his wide robe snapping in the mountain wind. Forget about him. He waved a dismissive hand, his voice thick with scorn. He lost his nerve and backed out. A registered sect only needs one person to show up anyway, and having a talent like you is more than enough. Between you and me, I genuinely think none of your senior or junior brothers come anywhere close to matching you. Evan's brow creased slightly as he gazed at the mountains sharpening in the distance, a tangle of emotions stirring inside him. Marcus had always looked after him. His sudden absence felt wrong. Master Tai Hua seemed to sense the silence and just kept rambling on to himself. The people running this tournament have no respect for schedules, changing the date like that, throwing everything into disarray. But we need to pick up the pace, my boy. If we're late and miss the registration, that'll be a real problem. As the sun sank behind the western peaks and the last glow of dusk was swallowed by mountain mist, the forest began its most mysterious and solemn transformation. The colors of the sky faded as though drawn away by an unseen hand, leaving behind a deep blue violet that slowly deepened into full night, and the wind moved through the trees cool and carrying the clean scent of the forest. After a full day of hard travel, Master and disciple finally reached the outer edges of the purified soul range. Master Tai Hua swept his gaze around them and spoke with forced lightness. We've entered the purified soul range. From here we need to be careful. The monster lords in these mountains are no joke. Even powerful cultivators who have reached the core formation realm have been known to meet their end here. That said, I know a very safe secret passage. Just stay close to me and you'll be fine. Wander off though, and you won't even make it to the tournament. You'll end up as monster droppings. He burst into laughter at his own joke, the sound cutting jarringly through the silence of the forest. Evan watched him coldly, a glint of something sharp passing through his eyes. His voice came out low and steady, carrying a chill that seemed to frost the air around them. You're not actually my master, are you? Who are you really? The laughter on the man's face froze solid. Something flickered in his eyes and he slowly turned around. I had you pegged as the dullest disciple that old man had. It seems I was wrong. He paused, a glimmer of curiosity in his eyes, a knowing smile playing at the corner of his mouth. Tell me, how did you figure out I wasn't the real thing? Evan took a slow breath and said calmly, I haven't spent that much time with my master, but I have never once heard him speak badly of any of my senior brothers or sisters behind their backs. He's always been like a quiet, steadfast father figure, someone who genuinely cares about all of us without needing anyone to notice. He would never single me out for praise at the expense of the others. Details like that kept piling up along the way, so I decided to call your bluff, and it turns out I was right. I never imagined the day would come when I'd be seen through by a kid. The pretense dropped, the form of Master Tai Hua dissolved like a bursting bubble, and in his place stood the purple-haired woman who broke into genuine laughter, a trace of reluctant admiration in it. Never said a bad word about his disciples. That stubborn old man is actually decent to you all, useless as you lot are. But what difference does it make that you figured me out? Evan instinctively stepped back and asked in a flat, cold voice. From the sound of it, you're an enemy of my master. Are you here to kill me? My enemy? He's not even worth that. The purple-haired woman threw her head back and laughed, a sharp fractured sound that sent every bird in the surrounding trees bursting into panicked flight, leaving behind nothing but scattered feathers and startled cries. These days he's just the self-proclaimed leader of a hollow fake sect, none of the glory he used to have. Back then, every female cultivator was lining up to be his partner, a genius among geniuses, the future of the Jin kingdom. What a joke that all turned out to be. I threw away every bit of my pride and all I got back was, I've always thought of you as a friend. Evan stood in stunned, uncomfortable silence. He had never had any interest in prying into his elders' personal lives, and certainly not a mess of heartbreak and obsession quite this dramatic. The purple-haired woman paid no attention to the look of barely concealed distaste on Evan's face, and went right on. Look at him now, nothing but a waste who can't even measure up to an ordinary cultivator. She suddenly turned to face Evan directly, her gaze burning with a warped sense of triumph. And me? I'm an elder of the Fourth Undersword sect, the top sect in Greenreach. The positions have switched. I'm the one on top now. She took a sharp step forward, gliding across the ground like a phantom, and stirring up a cold gust in her wake. Her lips curved into a crooked smile, her eyes gleaming with an unsettling, feverish intensity. And from that position, I get to make him watch his disciples fall one by one into hopeless situations, and be completely powerless to stop it. Only then will he truly accept, deep down, that he's a failure. I'm the ultimate villain turned winner. She burst out laughing. A sharp, piercing sound as though she were standing at the top of the world, her eyes blazing with something close to madness. My original plan was to kill you all one by one and let that worthless master of yours really feel what true despair is. Then she reined in the laughter, her tone shifting to something playful and deliberate. But you've got some spark in you, kid. I find myself a little intrigued. How would you like to come under my wing as a registered disciple? I am an elder of the Fourth Undersword sect, the top sect in Greenreach. My abilities are in a completely different league from that worthless master of yours. Not interested, Evan said, looking at her coldly with quiet contempt. Please, however strong the Fourth Undersword sect might be, can it really top a hidden sect that produced a swordsman as extraordinary as my senior brother Marcus? The moment Evan's flat refusal landed, the woman's expression darkened instantly. Those eyes that had been blazing with feverish excitement now went cold and venomous like a serpent's eyes frosted over with ice, and she touched her toe lightly to the ground, graceful as a falling violet leaf, and slipped backward like a shadow. In an instant, she was behind Evan, a sharp purple dagger appearing in her hand from nowhere, its blade flickering with cold light and faint violet mist coiling around it, giving off a deeply ominous feeling. The purple-haired woman stamped the ground hard. The earth buckled under her foot, and she shot forward like a bolt of purple lightning, blade aimed straight at Evan's backside. At the last possible second, Evan sensed the mortal threat coming from behind him, and twisted aside with fluid ease, letting the attack pass cleanly. Evan instinctively shielded himself and let loose at the woman without holding back. What kind of dirty, underhanded move was that? A sneak attack and going straight for the rear? If that had actually landed, I'd be finished. The purple-haired woman felt not a shred of shame. She wore it as a badge of honor, flicking out her tongue and running it along the flat of the blade with a kind of twisted, elegant madness, her lips curling with smug satisfaction. This is called strategy, kid. All's fair in a fight, and the ruthless always win. Take notes. If the rear is the most vulnerable spot, why wouldn't I target it? Evan opened his mouth and found his throat completely stopped up. He had no idea how to argue with that logic. All he managed was a flat, sullen reply. No wonder my master never liked you. You had it coming. A woman as vicious as you will never find anyone who loves her. You're going to die alone. The purple-haired woman went rigid, then began shaking. That was too far. How could you say something like that to a woman? You don't even know what happened. What gives you the right to make a judgment like that? Like a wounded animal, she broke down mid-sentence and crumpled to the ground, burying her face in her hands and sobbing loudly, tears streaming down her cheeks. What girl doesn't start out just wanting something simple and beautiful and happy? Evan's brow knotted tight, his throat working 3 times without producing a single intelligible word, leaving only a dry, strangled sound. Maybe I was too harsh. Was there something that happened that made you he never got to finish? The grief on the purple-haired woman's face snapped away like a broken mask, instantly contorting into a grotesque grin, the corners of her mouth cranked upward at an inhuman angle, her laughter coming out with a grating metallic edge. Of course not. I was born this devious. You walked right into it and there's no dodging this one. She let out a serpent-like hiss of a laugh, her violet hair cutting through the air in strange arcs as she flickered behind Evan like a ghostly flame. The hair on the back of Evan's neck shot up. Before he could turn, he heard the shriek of something cutting through the air, and the dagger, glowing with a sickly violet poison light, came down aimed directly at the base of his spine. Millennium Venom Dragon Strike. Evan was launched clean off his feet and crashed hard into the ground a good distance away, while the Venom Dragon dagger in her hand twisted itself into a spiral, still hissing and smoking. She jumped back like she'd been burned, letting out a stunned shriek. What? That was a spiritual energy-infused blade. How on earth did it just break like that? Are you completely out of your mind? You're a total psycho with absolutely no shame. Evan had completely lost his patience and was letting her have it with everything he had. Are you kidding me? What are you made of back there? I've been fighting for decades and I have never seen anything that tough. Are you wearing iron underwear or something? While the purple-haired woman was still hopping in place and ranting about iron underwear, Evan suddenly went completely still, reaching back to touch the spot where the Millennium Venom Dragon Strike had landed, where there should have been a torn, bloody wound. There was nothing. Not a scratch. This is insane. Marcus's ancient god-demon art is far more powerful than I ever imagined. While Evan was still reeling from the revelation of Marcus's strength, the purple-haired woman decided she was done playing games. She channeled every last drop of spiritual energy from this projection body into her palm, and drove it forward with a crack like shattering glass. A violet flame handprint the width of a small house tearing through the air, the lightning crackling through its lines flooding the entire area with blinding light as the massive palm crashed down toward Evan with the intent to destroy him completely. The dust and smoke settled slowly like evening clouds, and there stood Evan, upright and still, his robe spotless, a current of golden energy flowing around him like liquid sunlight, deflecting every last trace of the violet flame and lightning. No way. The purple-haired woman's pupils contracted to pinpoints, her lips trembling beyond her control. No spiritual energy fluctuation at all. He just tanked my killing blow with his bare body. Is this what they call a solidified body? And they're telling me this kid is only at the second stage of chi cultivation? The moment she saw that terrifying golden light emanating from Evan, the purple-haired woman dropped every trace of her earlier condescension. She never would have believed that Master Taihua had actually taken in a prodigy of this caliber, a body-cultivating talent that only appeared once in 100 years. He cannot be allowed to live. He has to die, she thought, her anger sharpening into cold resolve. But at that moment, faint wisps of violet mist began rising from her body. Damn, the projection isn't going to hold much longer. Right, the beast frenzy pill. A grin spread across her face as she pulled out a dark red pill and crushed it between her fingers. A wave of dark red mist erupted outward and spread across the outer reaches of the purified soul range, and countless monsters throughout the mountains caught the scent and let out a deafening unified roar toward the sky. Enjoy my little gift, sweetheart. The next time we meet will be the last. The purple-haired woman's lips curved into a chilling smile, then her body dissolved slowly into the air like smoke. Evan stared at the fading violet mist, genuinely baffled. What was all that actually about? Had she dragged him all the way out here just to make speeches and declare herself his enemy? At that moment, monsters from the outer reaches of the purified soul range came tearing through the trees, frenzied, driven mad, their eyes blazing a bloodthirsty crimson, the wave of savage energy crashing from their ranks hitting Evan like a hammer to the chest. But Evan didn't panic. He stood like an unsheathed blade, an invisible pressure radiating outward from him thick enough to still the air, slowly tilting his head to one side, the killing intent in his ice-blue eyes solidifying like frost, cold as a drawn blade splitting through empty space. The instant the monsters were about to reach him, a breathtaking flash of swordlight appeared, peerless, as though it had stepped down from somewhere beyond, light as a startled swan, swift as a leaping dragon, brilliant without being showy, graceful yet powerful, and the moment the sword left the scabbard, the world was reduced to 3 colors. The killing intent burning in his blue eyes, the ice-blue arc traced by his blade, and the red mist spraying as the monsters came apart. His strikes weren't linear, they fanned outward into a sweeping field of death. The movements were so fast the monster's nerves couldn't register the pain before it was over, his sword light spreading like a net cast over the entire battlefield. Even the most agile shadow wolves couldn't evade in time, and could only freeze in place, and watch their ghostly flames be shredded by the blade. When the last monster fell, time seemed to resume its flow, and pieces of monster rained down around him. Master keeps saying the sect is broke, he thought. Makes sense, all those powerful cultivators never leave the mountain and staying home doesn't pay the bills. Since I'm already out here, I might as well pitch in, and it's the perfect chance to get some real combat practice at the same time. These things went down so easily, they must be the bottom rung type, wild spirits barely worth calling monsters at all. Not even worth collecting. If I actually want to earn anything, I'll have to push deeper into the forest. His mind made up, Evan didn't linger and stepped forward into the depths. Meanwhile, deep within the purified soul range in the monster lord's territory, powerful creatures held undisputed dominion over their respective domains. What those monster lords, who had ruled the purified soul range for 1,000 years, did not yet know was that before long, an unremarkable young boy would come to this lawless and brutal place and turn their entire world upside down. The moment Evan stepped into the monster lord's territory, he was spotted. A monkey beast's eyes gleamed with cunning, the faintest smirk tugging at the corner of its mouth. The monkey saw Evan let his guard down and lunged with a sneak attack, but Evan was faster. Before the monkey could even process what was happening, Evan had already struck it dozens upon dozens of times. The monkey wasn't dead. Evan figured that any creature resorting to a sneak attack was probably near the bottom of the food chain, so he hadn't drawn his sword, he hadn't meant to actually harm it. But there was one thing he absolutely could not stand: being attacked from behind. A sneak attack? I'll show you a sneak attack! Evan raised his sword and began hammering the monkey with it like a club. Getting hit from behind had left a real mark on him. He now had a deep-seated psychological aversion to it, and every muscle in his body tensed up at the thought. He kept beating the monkey for a solid 15 minutes before his nerves finally settled. The monkey beast dropped to its knees, whimpering weakly that it was wrong and begging for its life. The monkey ached all over, its spirit utterly crushed. Of all the rotten luck, running into someone like this, there hasn't been a powerful human anywhere in this whole region. Could this be that great Sun Sword sect disciple everyone's been talking about lately? But he doesn't look the part. Having vented his frustration, Evan had no intention of actually killing the monkey. It clearly had some degree of intelligence. In his mind, any monster he could drop in one hit wasn't worth much anyway. Better to press on deeper into the purified soul range. Please don't kill me, big brother. I have money, a whole cave full of spirit stones. It's all yours, just please spare my life. Evan, who had been about to let the monkey go, couldn't help but laugh. What kind of money could one scraggly little monkey possibly have? If a mountain monkey actually has real money, I'll eat my own shoe. Then Evan saw the cave, flooded wall to wall with dazzling golden light. He stood completely dumbstruck. No way, this has to be fake. You're messing with my head, some kind of illusion, right? Undo it right now. Evan grabbed the monkey and gave it another thorough beating. He simply could not wrap his head around the idea that an ordinary wild monster could be sitting on this kind of wealth. Please, big brother, let me explain. There's actually a reason for all of this. Back at the Azure Cloud sect, Master Taihua noticed his left eyelid wouldn't stop twitching. Left eye for money, right eye for trouble. Maybe my luck is finally turning. The words were barely out of his mouth before he laughed at himself. Dream on, old man. A broke man's fate is a broke man's fate. The scene cut back to the monkey who pressed its palms together and fixed Evan with the most ingratiating smile it could manage. So, big brother, here's the thing. In the purified soul range, there's an incredibly rare medicinal herb,